Hi, welcome back guys. Before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. We bring our attention to a bar on Dawn Island where our protagonist, Monkey D. Luffy, a 7-year-old boy who is currently being laughed at by a red-haired man. You can't be a pirate if you can't swim, kid. Not being able to swim would be your greatest weakness, the man said, laughing. This red-haired man was the infamous red-haired Shanks, captain of the red-hair pirates and one of the Yonko, although Luffy didn't know that bit. Luffy had just cut his cheek earlier in order to convince Shanks to take Luffy with him. Of course said action did not convince the man. Hey, that's not true. As long as I stay on board I'll fine. Plus my fighting's real good. I've rigorously trained before. My punch is as strong as pistol fire, Luffy said, thrusting his arm forward as an example. Pistol? Wow, really? Shanks said sarcastically, rolling his eyes, clearly not believing the kid. All that did was piss Luffy off. What kind of tone is that? Luffy shouted, a vein throbbing on his forehead. Luffy, you seem unhappy. Be happy to face anything. Yeah, a pirate's life is great. The sea is so deep and wide. You can go to any island and seek adventure. Nothing is greater than freedom, was the consecutive replies of Shanks' crewmates. That instantly got Luffy's attention though as he turned from angry to excited and awed, causing Shanks to groan. Don't give him dumb ideas, guys, Shanks said. They then tried to convince Shanks to let Luffy go, but as soon as he said Luffy would take one of their places they changed their mind, frustrating Luffy. Look kid, the most important thing of all is that you're too young. Wait at least 10 years and then I'll consider taking you with me, Shanks said. AGH, darn it Shanks, I'm not a kid anymore, Luffy said. Shanks grabbed a cup that was filled with a liquid that Luffy recognized as apple juice. Don't be mad, here have some juice, Shanks said. Don't mind if I do, Luffy said, downing it in one go, causing Shanks to immediately laugh. You really are a kid. Pirates don't drink juice, Shanks said, laughing. Damn it, you tricked me, Luffy yelled. Sulking, Luffy got off the stool and wandered over by another one of the crewmates, the first mate of the pirates, Ben Beckman. Beckman tried to explain that Shanks was trying to protect Luffy from the dangers of being a pirate. However, Shanks mocking Luffy at the same time did not help at all. A while later Luffy was eating next to Shanks, asking him how long he was going to stay. Shanks said he was thinking about taking a few more trips before they headed north. Great, by then I'll have learned how to swim, Luffy shouted. Immediately after that a shady-looking man smashed the gate doors open and asked for 10 barrels of sake. Makino, the bar's owner, informed the man that they were all out of sake. The man then demanded to know what Shanks and his crew were drinking then. Whom told them it was sake but offered the man the last bottle. The man however smashed it, causing the liquid to go all over Shanks' face. Shanks groaned and asked for a cloth to clean up the mess, but the man smashed the plates that were on the table. Shanks however laughed at this, causing the man to scoff and leave, calling Shanks a coward. The crew then broke out into laughter, which made Luffy break into a rage. Why are you guys laughing? That was disgraceful. Why didn't you fight him? Even if he had more men you still should have fought. You're not a man nor a pirate, Luffy yelled. Shanks looked a bit shocked at the outburst but smiled at Luffy. Look, I know how you feel but it's just a bottle of sake. There's nothing to get worked up over, Shanks said. I don't want to see you again, coward, Luffy said, beginning to walk away. Oh come on, don't go Luffy, Shanks said, grabbing Luffy's arm. What everyone didn't expect to happen was Luffy's arm to stretch. This caused everyone to spit out their drink in shock. His arm, it's stretching, Shanks yelled in shock. What's happening to me? Luffy started screaming in a panic. It's gone. The rubber fruit we took from the enemy. Lucky Roo. A round man yelled, looking into a box that held a fruit in it. The man instantly walked up to Luffy and showed him a picture of a round fruit that had swirls on it. Did you eat this? Roo asked. The desert. Yeah, but it tasted awful, Luffy said. Luffy, that was the Gomu Gomu no Mi, the rubber fruit. It's one of the devil fruits. Whoever eats it will be able to turn into rubber and won't be able to swim, Shanks yelled. What? Luffy yelled, before going into a sulk. Don't worry Luffy, it's not that bad, Roo said, holding the box that the rubber fruit was in. Luffy spotted another fruit in the box. It was a pure white apple-like fruit with the same symbol all over the fruit, a triangle with a circle in the middle bisected by a line. Ew, desert, Luffy yelled, before grabbing the fruit with his new rubber powers and eating it. The fruit tasted exactly the same as the rubber fruit, like liquid ash, which tasted extremely disgusting. It was not 2 seconds later that everyone else realized what happened and began panicking. No, he ate a second devil fruit. He's going to die, Roo yelled, panicking. What do you mean he's going to die? Makino yelled. People can't eat 2 devil fruits. They fight each other for dominance in the body, which ultimately ends up burning the person out, Shanks said with a sigh, expecting Luffy to scream out in agonizing pain. However, that didn't happen. Luffy's eyes instead were blank, as if something was happening behind those eyes. In fact, something was happening behind those eyes. Memories of another life were flashing before Luffy. Memories of a life as a lonely kid wizard with messy black hair and the most stunning green eyes. Memories of a man named Harry James Potter, the man who conquered, the master of death. Death, that was a term that flashed up a lot in Luffy's mind. Not death as in the state of being dead, but death as an entity. It wasn't until near the end of the man's life and after his death that Luffy understood why that kept coming up. Because at the end of the memories was a vision of a figure cloaked in black robes speaking to him. Young master, you've lived through quite a lot and have sacrificed a lot as well. Even your death was a sacrifice for the future of your world. So, I am giving you a gift. Monkey D. Luffy, you young boy who is seeing this, you are the reincarnation of Harry James Potter. Yes, that is my gift to you, the gift of a second life. I give this to you so you can live a life free from the expectations of others. For isn't that the meaning of being a pirate? Freedom. The Shi Shi No Mi, or death fruit, did not happen upon you by chance, as I encouraged events to bring it to you. This fruit bestows upon you once more the title Master of Death. However, this fruit, like the other devil fruits, grant you certain abilities you did not have as a wizard. Some of them I'll let you figure out on your own, but mainly it lets you access the three hallows once again: the wand, the cloak, and the stone. This means you will once again have access to your magic, but use it wisely, as a lot of your spells won't work on certain people. Now, this isn't the last time you will hear from me, but beyond that I wish you luck and hope you have a wonderful life. Immediately after that message ended, Luffy's eyes returned to focus before he shook his head. Whoa, that was trippy, Luffy said, a London accent slightly tinting his voice, although nobody really noticed it. You're still alive, Shanks yelled, picking Luffy up and swinging him around. Wow, Luffy said, getting dizzy. What was that devil fruit anyways? Rue asked. I don't know. It hasn't been documented before, but we knew it was a devil fruit from how weird it looked. Shanks said. Shi Shi No Mi, Luffy said, saying that without thinking. Death fruit. That's a really ominous name for a devil fruit. Shanks said. I don't know, Luffy said, before holding his arm out to the right instinctively. Suddenly a black and red jack cloaked itself around Luffy. A brownish-black stick with bumps appeared in Luffy's stretched-out hand. And on Luffy's ring finger a silver ring with a pitch-black stone appeared. Shanks said in shock. The Elder Wand, also known as the Death Stick or the Wand of Death, said to be undefeatable, Luffy said offhandedly, flicking the wand at the broken dishes, causing them to reform and repair themselves, shocking the pirates and the bar owner. The Cloak of Death, also known the true Cloak of Invisibility, said to allow one to turn invisible and become undetectable by smell, sight, or hearing. Luffy said before pulling up a hood from the cloak that appeared out of nowhere, suddenly disappearing from sight before he reappeared by pulling down the hood that disappeared. How do you know all this? Shanks muttered, as usually people had to learn how to use their devil fruit abilities. Lastly, the Resurrection Stone, also known as the stone that listens to the dead, said to allow one to pull a spirit or soul of a person from the afterlife and speak with them. Luffy said before using his other hand to turn the stone on the ring 3 times. Suddenly a red-haired woman with vivid green eyes faded into the room, seeming shocked to be there. That is before she saw Luffy. Harry, she asked, tentatively. I'm known as Luffy here, although this isn't the best time to be talking, Luffy said, before dismissing the woman. It took about 2 minutes before Shanks spoke up again. What the hell was all of that? People aren't supposed to automatically know what the powers of their fruit are, Shanks said. Shi, I guess you could say that it's an instinctual devil fruit. Or maybe memory-based, Luffy said, laughing. And why did that woman call you Harry? Rue asked. I did say it was memory-based. I got all the memories of this guy, Harry James Potter, reincarnation or something, Luffy said. Well, that would explain how calm you are, Shanks said, offhandedly. You believe me? Luffy asked. Well, I've been to the New World, so I've seen weirder things, Shanks said. Shortly after that, the red hair pirates left to go on another trip, leaving Luffy to his thoughts. I mean, am I Luffy or am I Harry? I guess I'm both. Gah. It doesn't help that Luffy wasn't the brightest bulb in the toolbox. And boy can I eat. Seriously, how am I not fat by now? Luffy thought as he was walking down the street, a few weeks later. Over the past few weeks, Luffy had been experimenting with both of his fruit powers. He really liked the rubber fruit's abilities because it lessened blunt force damage, which saved him from his Gramps' fist of love. The death fruit, however, was a different story. Beyond Harry's memories of magic and its various disciplines, Luffy wasn't entirely sure as to what the other abilities of the fruit was. It was interesting enough using the Resurrection Stone again later, though. Being mothered was a new feeling, although he didn't want to disturb Lily Potter that much. Of course, as his thoughts said, it was hard to adjust to the sudden boost in intelligence. He could admit that he wasn't smart at all prior to eating that fruit. Thankfully, now he had Harry's level of intelligence, which meant that Luffy was no longer oblivious to a lot of things, like how his Gramps, Monkey D. Garp, in past memories had skirted around the topic of his father whenever Luffy had brought it up. How Luffy didn't even have a name. Although judging by how Gramps acted, Luffy could assume the man was still alive, which made it even worse for him because that meant he had an absentee father. Currently though, Luffy was heading to the bar to get a meal from Makino. When he got there, Makino gladly served him a plate of meat that he gladly scarfed down before talking with her about when Shanks was coming back. Quickly after that, Haguma, the man that had assaulted Shanks, came barging in with his bandits, demanding to be fed, feeling a bit childish, partly because of Luffy's side of the merged personality. He slyly materialized the Elder Wand and flicked it towards Haguma, casting the tripping jinx. That turned out to be a bad idea as it caused Haguma to turn to Luffy, and let's just say it didn't turn out well. It ended up finding Luffy kidnapped and being yanked and prodded at by the bandits. While this was happening, Luffy was attempting to think of a way to get out of this. First thought was his rubber abilities, but he quickly nixed that idea as he couldn't fully use those abilities yet, having only just got them recently. The next idea was wandless magic, but that was quickly thrown out too, as having just got his magic back he wouldn't be able to do wandless magic. In order to do such magic, one had to train their magic to be able to do that, and Luffy as of right now had no training. So basically all of his options were exhausted, so he had to hope that someone would come to save him. His wishes were granted when he heard Makino come with the mayor, who begged Haguma to release Luffy. Haguma laughed at the man and outright refused. That was when Shanks arrived. That explains why nobody was at the port to welcome us, Shanks said, glaring at the man who held Luffy captive. Haguma once again laughed, but this time at Shanks, and asked what a coward like you are going to do about it, having one of his bandits point a gun at Shanks' head. Instantly after that, Roo shot the man in the head, shocking everyone. Although Luffy was in awe because his childish thoughts of Shanks being a coward were hopefully going to be proven wrong. Ben asked Shanks if he could take over, which Shanks approved of gladly. In about under half a minute, Ben easily took down all of the bandits but Haguma. That, however, was because Haguma had disappeared, taking Luffy with him. Minutes later, Luffy found himself on a tiny boat with Haguma, who was talking about how he had killed many people for insulting him. Luffy just glared at the man, who quickly picked Luffy up and threw him over the ship. As Luffy was falling to his watery death, he saw the Lord of the Coast, a sea king that lived by the village, chomp at Haguma and his boat, swallowing the man. Soon though, Luffy hit the water and the parts of his body that was submerged instantly locked, being unable to even move, so he frantically moved his arms, trying to stay afloat. Sadly, that didn't last long as the Sea King swam at Luffy and opened its mouth. "Luffy!" Shanks shouted, swimming towards Luffy. Sadly, Shanks didn't make it in time as the Sea King's teeth chomped down on Luffy's body, scattering lots of blood everywhere, making Luffy black out. When Luffy opened his eyes, he was in a garden where he saw the same black-robed being looking at the plants. The being turned towards Luffy and chuckled. "You know, I didn't expect you to be here this soon. But then again, this world is a lot more dangerous than the last," the being said. "Where am I?" Luffy asked. You're in limbo. I guess it's time to explain one of the additional abilities of your fruit. You cannot die either of old age, disease, or wounds, that is, you cannot pass on. Well, pertaining to old age, you'll just stop aging when you reach 21. The being said. "I can't die," Luffy asked. But there is a drawback to this. Each time you die, the length of time it takes for you to return to your body lengthens. Because it's your first time, it should only take about 30 minutes maybe. After that, a day. Then 2, then 4, then 8, and so on and so forth. However, if you go time without dying consecutively or within the cooldown, then it goes back down. Death replied. "Well, that does make sense, I guess. Almost every power has a drawback." Luffy hummed. Suddenly everything started to dim, causing Luffy to get confused. "Oh, it's been 30 minutes already. I keep forgetting time is weird here. Please don't return here anytime soon. I'd like you to stay alive for a good amount of time," Death said before everything blacked out for Luffy. Elsewhere, Shanks had dragged Luffy's body onto the port and everyone had tears in their eyes, looking at the body. However, suddenly something began to happen. Luffy's wounds began to knit back together perfectly, leaving no scars. "This has to be a power of that fruit," Shanks said. "What are we going to do, Captain?" Roo asked, sniffing. "Wait and see," Shanks said. And so they did, and not 30 minutes later did something happen. Luffy suddenly bolted upward, gasping for air, holding his chest. "God fucking damn it, what is with this trippy stuff?" Luffy swore before being whacked upside the head by Shanks. "Language," Shanks said. "Language? Why the hell are you hitting a person who just came back?" Luffy yelled, a tick on his forehead. Suddenly Shanks broke out into laughter before taking off his straw hat. He then promptly put it on Luffy's head. "Here, kiddo, it's yours," Shanks said with a smile. While Luffy said, confused, "Come and give it back to me when you became a great pirate," Shanks said. Suddenly overwhelmed by emotion, Luffy smiled as tears fell from his eyes. Later that day they partied all night long, and about a month later Shanks and his crew left for the north, Luffy promising to become the best pirate there is and beat Shanks. The next 10 years was a whirl of events for Luffy. First of all, about a few weeks after Shanks left, Gramps took Luffy and dropped him at the mountain bandits to be trained and raised by them as Garp had to go back to the main marine base. It was there that Luffy met the soon-to-be two most important people in his new life, Porcas D. Ace and Sabo, his new brothers. Well, actually, to be honest, it was a trip and a half getting Ace to warm up to him. The older boy was a grumpy person who would glare at Luffy. Well, actually, practically everyone but Sabo. Luffy, from Harry's experience as a Legilimens, which currently, since he had no experience in said magical skill translated as being able to read people, could see that Ace was filled with self-loathing. One Piece knows why, but Luffy was determined to break him out of his shell. It actually took Luffy using a body bind, which he practiced very hard for this purpose, and yelling at the boy for him to snap out of it. It involved pushing Ace to snap and actually tell Luffy what was wrong. Ace then revealed that he was the son of Gall D. Rogers, the Pirate King, and that Luffy should hate him for being the son of a devil. "You're stupid," Luffy said, after a few seconds, causing Sabo, who was watching, to break out into laughter. "What did you say?" Ace yelled, struggling even harder to get out of the invisible binds. "I said you're stupid. For one, you're not your father. Nobody is unless they purposely aim for that. I mean, do I resemble some person that I never got to know? I sure hope not," Luffy said. Ace was staring blankly at Luffy. "And for two, having Rogers as a parent would be really cool. I mean, seriously, what could be better than the Pirate King himself as a father?" Luffy said. "You're weird," Ace said, a small hint of a smile on his face. "Thank you, now enough moping. We gotta find more treasure if we're gonna be famous pirates," Luffy said. About a short time after that, all three became brothers by sharing a cup of sake. They then spent their time together, gathering treasure, but soon their peaceful time was interrupted when they were attacked by the Blue Gem Pirates. It turns out that Ace had stolen some treasure from them, which provoked them. They kidnapped Luffy, who refused to tell them where the treasure was hidden. Thankfully, Den Den, the leader of the mountain bandits, and Luffy's brothers managed to save them and beat back the pirates. The boys thought that everything was going to be peaceful until about 5 months later, Sabo's father, who turned out to be a world noble, demanded him to return to them. In a hastily planned idea, Sabo set out to sea, hoping to draw the nobles away from Luffy and Ace. Sadly, he was shot down by the nobles, who apparently wanted to get rid of their shame. "No, Sabo," Ace yelled, starting to cry. Now, Luffy would be crying, but he had to have solid proof, so he brought out the resurrection stone. "What are you doing, Luffy?" Ace asked, sniffling. Without answering, Luffy took the stone and turned it 3 times in hand, waiting to see if something happened. When nothing happened, he gave out a sigh of relief. "Why are you so relieved?" "Sabo's dead," Ace yelled, getting ready to punch Luffy. Without missing a step, Luffy pulled Ace close and hugged him real tight, using his rubber abilities to wrap his arms around Ace even more. "Ace, he's still alive. I couldn't summon his spirit with the stone," Luffy said, happiness in his voice. "Wait, Sabo's still alive. How do you know this?" Ace asked, confused and his tears starting to dry up. "I told you before, I somehow was able to eat 2 fruits, right?" Luffy asked. Ace, not knowing where this was going, nodded. However, since he was currently still being hugged tightly by Luffy, he vocalized his assent. "Yeah, the rubber fruit and the death fruit. Although you never told me what the second one did besides let you use that magic crap that you keep pranking me with," Ace said, furrowing his eyebrows when he remembered Luffy coloring his hair pink one time. "Well, one of the things it also gives me is this stone called the Resurrection Stone. It lets me summon any spirit as long as they're dead. I couldn't summon Sabo's spirit, which means he's not dead," Luffy said, releasing Ace from the hug. Slowly, Ace realized what Luffy was saying before he cheered and started dancing around with Luffy. Later that night, when they were exhausted and looking up at the stars, Ace proposed something. "You know what, Luffy? Let's become the best pirates there ever was, and whoever finds Sabo first gets to take the other into their pirate crew," Ace said with a smile. "What if one of our crew members find him?" Luffy asked, as that was entirely possible too. "It still counts. After all, your crew members are Unikama and your family, right?" Ace said. "Yeah, alright then. First to find Sabo gets the other," Luffy said before Ace had them seal their deal with a drink of sake. In the years following that eventful night, Luffy and Ace trained hard together and under Den Den. Luffy, deciding that he hadn't trained enough with his rubber powers, decided to train it some more, aiming to create some awesome moves, in his own words. Although that wasn't to say that Luffy neglected his magical abilities. Rather, he spent time mastering one-less battle magic, primarily Pratigo, Pratigo Maxima, Stupefy, Defindo, and Reducto. He got it to the point where he could use Pratigo to reinforce his rubber shield that he had learned how to make or reinforce his punches, making them slightly stronger and protect him from damage while he punched. Also, since a lot if not all wandless magic came out of the user's hands, combined with his rubber abilities he could aim his spells wherever he wanted. About 5 years later, Ace had found his own devil fruit, the Mira Mira no Mi, the flame fruit. As the name said, it was a loja fruit that allowed Ace to turn into flames and manipulate them. And not 2 years later did Ace leave on his own adventure to start his own pirate crew, the Spades Pirates. Although Luffy did laugh at that name, as Ace had gotten the nickname Ace of Spades from gambling a lot rather than fighting. Of course, those 10 years came to an end, and it was Luffy's turn to go on his adventure. Using his magic and the help of one of the shipwrights in the village, Luffy made a decent-sized small ship rather than the raft that he had initially planned. With that, he set off on his adventure to become the greatest pirate. The first event to happen on Luffy's journey occurred about 10 minutes into it. Out of the water rose the Lord of the Coast, the Sea King that had killed Luffy 10 years ago. Of course, this time Luffy was ready. "Oh no you don't. Gomu Gomu pistol," Luffy yelled, twisting his arm back using his rubber abilities before launching a punch forward, sending the Sea King flying. "Shi Shi, that'll teach him. Now, I heard that there's an amazing pirate hunter in Shell's town. That's gonna be my first stop," Luffy said. Luffy soon enough though encountered a giant whirlpool. Despite his limited ship steering skills, he managed to avoid it, but it set him off course by a bit. That was when he encountered an island that had goats all over the place. "That's a lot of goat," Luffy said, staring blankly at the island before turning his ship towards the island, being pressured by the part of him that really liked meat. Soon enough he landed on the island, mooring his ship on a nearby beach. From there he gathered up 3 goats and quickly turned them into meat and packed most of it away before cooking up the portion he set aside to eat right away. After eating his food, he heard voices coming from the nearby forests. "Come on, Kobe, indulge a little," a voice said. I don't want to," a young voice said. Luffy made his way to where he heard the voices and found a couple of men harassing a younger boy who had pale pink hair. Not liking this, Luffy quickly used his rubber powers to knock the men out. That seemed to have freaked the boy out, who started to freak out. "What are you doing? If Alvida gets here, she's gonna kill me." The boy panicked. "Hey, that's not how you introduce yourself. My name's Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy," Luffy said. "I'm Kobe, but I'm being serious about Alvida." Kobe started before they heard a shout. "Who's this brat?" a female voice yelled. When they turned to the voice, they found that it was a large woman wearing a cowboy hat wielding a giant mace. "The Alvida-sama," Kobe said, bowing his head. "Hey brat, I'll let you live. You tell me who the most beautiful woman in the world is," the now named Alvida said. Beautiful? Not the word that Luffy would use, but Luffy wasn't entirely interested in looks at the moment. Despite his experience from Harry Potter's life, he was kind of oblivious to things like that. Of course, it probably had to also do with the fact that Harry himself was oblivious to said things as well. However, despite her attitude, she seemed to be pretty strong if by how she wielded that mace said anything. So, then Luffy had a brilliant idea. "Hey, so you want to be the most beautiful woman in the world?" Luffy asked. "Yeah, what of it?" Alvida asked, raising an eyebrow at the brat. "Well, if I make you the most beautiful woman in the world, would you join my crew as my first mate?" Luffy asked. "What the hell are you asking her that for?" Kobe asked in an action that was far from character. Well, what Luffy had observed in the 2 minutes he knew the kid. Suddenly Alvida broke out into laughter before setting her giant mace down. Sure, why not, kid? I'd like to see you try. If you do this, then sure, I'll disband the Alvida Pirates and join you as your first mate," Alvida said, curious as to what the brat was going to do. Smiling his usual large smile, Luffy pulled something off his neck that was tied to a white string. Suddenly it grew in size, showing to be a small chest. Luffy sat it down on the ground and opened it, shocking the other two by its contents. "Are those devil fruits?" Kobe shouted. Sure enough, the chest had around 5 different weirdly shaped fruits in it. However, Luffy just pulled one out before closing the chest and shrinking it again, then returned it to his neck. The fruit he had in hand seemed to keep slipping around in his hands, making it hard to keep a hold of it. Carefully he handed it to Alvida, trying to not lose it. Your solution is a devil fruit. What is it anyways?" Alvida asked. "Well, at most I'll tell you it's called the Sub No Mi, the slip fruit. You'll see why I'm giving you this if you eat it," Luffy said. "This better not be a trick, brat," she said before eating the fruit, grimacing at its ashy taste. The effects happened instantaneously. Suddenly all the fat on Alvida's body dropped to the ground, slipping off of her body and making her really skinny. If one were to look at Alvida, they'd see that she now had a perfect figure and not a single ounce of fat, but seemed to retain all her strength despite not having any visible muscles. Quickly Luffy produced a mirror from seemingly nowhere and showed Alvida her reflection. Instantly the woman squealed and hugged Luffy before he slipped out of her gasp due to her new devil fruit's powers. "Oh boy, do I look amazing." "Well brat, a deal's a deal then," she said before telling them to follow her. She led them to her ship, which was much larger than Luffy's current ship. It was probably large enough to hold about 250 people. It was there that Alvida told her ex-crew that the Alvida pirates were disbanded, and if they wanted to continue then they were to join Luffy. Despite the fact that almost all of the ex-crew members were afraid of Alvida, they instantly said yes to join Luffy, primarily because of Alvida's new look. All of them were scrambling to genuinely tell Alvida she was the most beautiful woman they've seen. Luffy chuckled in the background when he saw Alvida smirking at her ex-crew. Shortly after that, Luffy had them set sail to Shell's Town. Having some of the crew pilot Luffy's smaller ship, he didn't want to lose it after all, as it was a gift from the village. What are you heading there for, Captain? Shell's Town is a marine base. Not the best place for a pirate to be, Alvida said, leaning against the rails of the ship. Well, for one, Kobe here told me he wanted to be a marine. And while that means he'll end up being our enemy, he still should get to experience his dream, Luffy said, causing Kobe to get stars in his eyes. Oh, thank you, Luffy, Kobe said with a cheer. Oh, how nice of you. But what's the second reason? Alvida said, having mellowed out due to the loss of weight and having people fawning over her genuinely. I've heard that the pirate hunter Roronoa Zoro is there. I know you're my first mate and all, but with my plans to beat my brother in our competition you'll need help. I'm planning on making this a divisional crew, Luffy said. Brother, competition? Alvida asked, confused. Oh yeah, I haven't told you guys. My brother's Portgas Ace. Me and him are competing against each other to form the best pirate crew, Luffy said, causing the other two to sputter. Portgas Ace? Isn't that Fire Fist Ace, one of Whitebeard's division leaders? Alvida shouted. Yup, that's my big brother, hence why a divisional crew. If I'm the leader like Whitebeard, then I've totally beat my brother who's just a division leader, Luffy said. Luffy was especially proud of his brother though for reaching such fame in 3 short years, although that meant he had to train harder to beat him to finding Sabo. You keep saying divisional crew, but what does that mean? Kobe asked. I'll explain this, Captain. A divisional crew is a crew that's separated into different divisions based on their specialties. Speaking of said specialties, what does that make me? Alvida asked. You'll be the heavy combat division leader. From what I can see, you're pretty handy with that mace, and with your slip fruit you'll be even stronger, being able to dance or slip around your enemies, Luffy said with a smile. I'll be sure to beat my subordinates into shape. Can't have them looking bad on me, Alvida said with a grin, hefting her mace. Great. I'll be asking the crew members over the next week or so on what they want to specialize in. Though since we're short division leaders, if they want a certain one other than heavy combat, they'll have to train on their own for now, Luffy said. Alvida nodded with a smile before going back to what she was doing earlier, training with her new ability. While she was doing this, Kobe turned to Luffy with a question in his eyes. You want to form a divisional crew for another reason, don't you? Kobe asked. Shi Shi, you caught on to that, didn't you? Luffy laughed, sheepishly rubbing the back of his head. It helps that I can kind of read people, Kobe said. Well yeah, there's a second reason. Whitebeard was a genius for his idea. I mean, your whole crew is your family. That sounds like a wonderful idea. You'd never be lonely ever again. But them specializing in certain things, it'd give them something to aim for, to be proud of, Luffy said with a smile. You must have been pretty lonely as a kid, Kobe asked. Yeah, I mean, I had Makino, the bar owner, and Shanks, but Makino was only one person and Shanks left after a while. Then I guess I had my brothers, but I mean, I still felt the fear of being lonely, Luffy said. When Luffy thought about it, Harry felt pretty lonely too, having grown up at the Dursleys, who didn't really like him, and Dudley, who kept as many friends away from Harry as possible. So it was pretty understandable that Luffy had the fear of being alone. Enough sad talk though. Alvida said it shouldn't take too long to reach Shell's Town, about maybe another 3 hours, Luffy said with a smile, causing Kobe to smile too. Sure enough though, they reached Shell's Town 3 hours later. The place seemed like a calm town, but Luffy had learned to never judge a place or person by their looks. Luffy had the crewmates restock the ship and get supplies while him, Alvida, and Kobe headed out to go learn about where Zoro was being kept. Why not that restaurant? They're usually good places to gather information, Alvida said. Sure, why not? Plus it'd be a good idea to get something to eat. I have a feeling we're gonna run into some trouble later, Luffy said. They made their way into the restaurant, which was a really decent place and had great food. The food though brought up something that Luffy really needed to think about. Speaking of food, we're gonna have to get a cook. Your ex-crew members are good cooks and all, but none of them have the quality that the chef division leader needs to have, Luffy said. I guess you're right, but where would we look? Alvida asked. Isn't there a floating ship restaurant filled with pirate chefs? Kobe asked, causing a glint of recognition to flash in Alvida's eyes. You're speaking of Baratie. It'd be a good idea to look there, but I don't know if any of them are going to join us, Alvida said. That'd be a good idea then, Luffy said. About 20 minutes later, Luffy decided to speed their information search up. I wonder where they're keeping Roronoa Zoro, Luffy said. that had an instantaneous reaction as everyone in the restaurant freaked out before they started whispering. Luffy caught snippets of names like Captain Axe Hand Morgan and Helmeppo in Marine Main Base, causing him to smile. Why are they whispering about Captain Morgan? Isn't he the lead Marine here? Kobe asked. Kobe's reaction had the people in the restaurant even more panicked and fearful. Why are they afraid of a Marine? Aren't they the good guys? Kobe asked, confused. Kobe, I'm a pirate and I'm not bad, am I? Luffy asked. No, not at all. He shouted. Then it stands to reason that not all Marines are good then. This Morgan is probably a ruthless person which led the citizens to fear him. Luffy said. That's understandable. There's a lot of corruption in the Marine ranks. For every good and honorable Marine, you're bound to find one who will take a bribe to look the other way. Alvida said. Well, we should get going then. We know where he is now. Luffy said. They paid and made their way to the Marine main base, which looked really gaudy, Luffy voicing that opinion. Boy, does this place look hideous, Luffy said, grimacing at the horrible paint job. I agree. These Marines have no sense of beauty, Alvida said. Luffy then instantly used his arms to pull himself up the gate to look around. Luffy, what are you doing? You'll get caught, Kobe said, panicking. Don't sweat it. I'm just looking for Zoro. Oh look, I think I see something, Luffy said before pulling himself off and running in a random direction. Soon enough, Luffy stopped at a part of the wall before suddenly 3 ladders appeared on the wall. Well, where did those come from? Kobe asked. Alvida wasn't confused at all because since she was Luffy's first mate, he explained to her his abilities so she wouldn't be confused. Instead, she picked a ladder and started climbing. Luffy did the same, causing Kobe to reluctantly do the same. Lo and behold, in the center of the yard tied to a cross was a green-haired man wearing a black bandana, a white shirt, black pants, and a haramaki. The man seemed to notice them as he spoke to them. Hey, you there. Could you come untie these ropes? I'll catch a fugitive for you and give you the bounty. Zoro said. You're not going to really do that, right, Luffy? Kobe asked, turning his head towards where Luffy was before seeing he wasn't there. Kobe whipped his herd towards Zoro and saw that Luffy was heading towards Zoro. What are you doing, Luffy? Kobe shouted, causing Alvida to chuckle at Kobe's reaction. Hey, Roronoa Zoro. I'll let you go and find a way to retrieve your swords if you join my pirate crew as my other first mate and swordsman division leader, Luffy said with his wide smile. That's blackmail, Zoro shouted. Yeah, but it'll be great, Luffy said with a smile. What the hell? I don't think that Helmeppo brat will keep his promise. Fine, I'll be part of your crew, Zoro said. Great, Luffy said with a smile. The Elder Wand slipped into his hand and he muttered a relatio twice, causing the rope chaining Zoro's hands to the cross to snap and retract. Zoro fell to the ground, rubbing his wrists before getting up. Well, that was interesting, Zoro muttered. So, what was that promise you were talking about? Luffy asked. Oh, that. I had killed Helmeppo's. That's the brat of the captain here, Pet Wolf, who kept scaring the citizens and almost attacked a little girl. So Helmeppo had me arrested but promised that if I survived for a month without food that he'd release me. But knowing him, he probably never meant to keep it, Zoro said. There were 3 thuds behind them, causing them to turn around and see Kobe and Alvida getting down and joining them, Alvida helping a little girl over the wall. Brother, you've escaped, the little girl said. It's you. What are you doing here? Zoro asked. I was bringing you food. You hadn't eaten in 9 days. The girl said. So you were going to assist a known criminal, and you people let him out. I'll have my father execute you. A whiny, spoiled-sounding voice came from to their left. It was a spoiled-looking brat with curly blonde hair. Luffy assumed this was Helmeppo. He looked spoiled enough for a marine brat. You must be Helmeppo. Is it true you weren't going to release Zoro here if he made to a month? Luffy asked. Not at all. It was going to be executed in 3 days, Helmeppo said with a sneer. You little brat, Zoro yelled. Kill them, Helmeppo ordered, causing the Marines with Helmeppo to start shooting at them. Instantly, Luffy jumped in front of everyone and expanded himself using his rubber powers. As soon as the bullets hit Luffy, they rebounded, bouncing off of the rubber like flesh. What are you? Zoro muttered behind him. I'm a rubber man. Of course, I'm also a death human, but I'll explain that later. Now, Alvida, would you kindly fend off these Marines? I have business with Helmeppo here, Luffy said. It'd be my pleasure, Captain, Alvida said with a smirk as she hefted up her mace. As Alvida started to slip and slide around her enemies, Luffy ran and grabbed Helmeppo before running off with him. I'm so sorry, but I need to borrow you, Luffy said with a smirk as he ran off into the base. What are doing? Helmeppo yelled, flailing as Luffy dragged him through the base. Suddenly, as they were heading through the base, they blindsided a large man who seemed to have an axe for a hand, but Luffy didn't stop and continued to run. That was my father. Run faster, idiot, Helmeppo yelled, no longer struggling. Why are you willingly coming with me now? Luffy asked, curious. My father is a cruel man, damn it. Now that you've ran into him while holding me, he'll kill us both, Helmeppo yelled. Alright then, so I can save your ass. Where are Zoro's swords? Luffy asked. They're in my room. Down that hall, Helmeppo shouted. Sure enough, Luffy ran down the hall and into a room Helmeppo pointed to, and there they were, 3 swords on the wall like a trophy. Quickly Luffy grabbed them and looked out the window, surprised by the fact that the courtyard that everyone else was in was right outside the window. So that being said, Luffy grabbed Helmeppo tightly and jumped out the window with the swords as well. Helmeppo screamed, causing everyone to look at them. Luffy scanned the courtyard and saw all the Marines unconscious, with Alvida smirking happily. Yo, co-first mate Zoro, I got your swords right here. You might want to get ready cause we're about to have company, Luffy said, throwing them to Zoro, who grabbed all 3. What did you do, Captain? Alvida said, feeling something ominous in those words. I may have clotheslined Captain Morgan on my way here, Luffy said sheepishly. You what? Kobe shouted. Well, may as well get it over now. I didn't think we'd get off this island without any trouble anyways, Alvida said. Surround the base. Don't let that Straw Hat Kid escape, a gruff voice yelled, followed by the sound of people moving. They turned towards the voice and saw Captain Morgan and a bunch of Marines aiming guns at them. This again? Luffy asked, sighing. Kill the intruders, Morgan yelled. Once again the Marines shot at the group, and once again Luffy reflected the bullets, causing the Marines to dive out of the way. You must be one of those people who have eaten a devil fruit, Morgan said, scoffing. He's eaten one of the ocean's treasures, shouted one of the Marines, the others looking nervous. What are you standing there for? Get them, Morgan yelled. They all looked unsure until one of them pulled out their sword, causing the others to do the same. If he can't be harmed by bullets, then we'll just cut him, one said as they all charged at Luffy. Suddenly they were all stopped by Zoro, who blocked all of their swords with his 3 swords, one in each hand and one in his mouth. All of you better not move or I'll kill you, Zoro said, causing all of the Marines to sweat nervously. Ooh, that's so cool, Luffy said excitedly, Alvida nodding. My goal is to be the greatest swordsman in the world, so I guess it'd make sense for me to join the man whose goal it is to be the greatest pirate in the world, Zoro said. Shi Shi, that's a great goal. If you couldn't even manage that, then I'd be embarrassed. Of course I'd help you though, Luffy said, laughing, causing Zoro to laugh as well. What are you guys doing just standing there? Kill them, Morgan shouted, a tick on his forehead. Hey Zoro, duck, Luffy yelled as he took a ready stance. What for? Zoro yelled as he started to duck. Gomu Gomu, Luffy started as he brought his leg back. Leg sweep, he yelled as he swung his leg, it stretching and mowing down all the Marines surrounding Zoro. Gah, we can't beat them, one Marine said. Whoever said that? I order you to kill yourself, Morgan yelled, causing Luffy and his friends to grimace in disgust. The Marines started to raise their guns to shoot themselves, but Alvida stopped them by sliding over to them and knocking them out. Luffy at the same time charged at Morgan. People like you have no right to lead others, Luffy yelled, punching the man in the face, causing him to fly into the nearby fence. You brat, you have no status. You have no right to talk to me like that, for I am Marine Captain Morgan, Morgan shouted. Well, hello there, I'm Monkey D. Luffy. Nice to meet you. Not really, Luffy said. You brat, go to hell, Morgan said, swinging his axe hand. Luffy skillfully dodged it, although skill wasn't really needed when the man was so slow. He then followed up by swinging his leg at the man, sending him flying again. Really? That's it? Seriously, this is all it takes to be a Marine captain? What the hell did you do to gain this rank? Luffy asked with a roll of his eyes. I beat the captain of the Black Cats, Kuro. I have earned my rank, you brat, the man shouted, swinging his axe again at Luffy, who dodged once more. That has got to be a lie. Judging by the required amount of effort to reach Marine Captain on training alone, that captain had to be real strong. And I'm sorry, but you don't reach that required strength, Luffy said, punching the man again. Wait, don't hit him again or I'll shoot your little friend, Helmeppo yelled, holding a gun to Kobe's head. Luffy sighed, rolling his eyes, holding a hand out to Helmeppo. A Kyo gun, Luffy said in a deadpan tone. Suddenly the gun flew to Luffy's hand, shocking Helmeppo. Behind Luffy, however, Morgan was about to cleave Luffy in two with his axe, but suddenly he was knocked unconscious. Ah, just in time, Zoro, Luffy said with a smile. Leave it to me, Captain, Zoro said with a smirk. The captain's been defeated, a Marine said. Are you gonna try to arrest us now? Alvida asked, getting ready for a fight. We're free. We're out of Morgan's control. Victory, shouted the Marines, throwing their weapons in the air. They must have really hated Morgan, Luffy said, sweat dropping. Yeah, to have that kind of reaction, but hey, you freed a town and Marines, Kobe said. Suddenly Zoro passed out, Luffy assumed from not having eaten in 9 days. So the little girl took them to her house where her mother gladly fed them all. Woo, eating after 9 days is so fulfilling, Zoro said with a sigh. You do realize that means you wouldn't have survived for a month, Luffy said, chewing on a piece of meat. Ah, hush you, you're eating more than I am, yet you're so scrawny, Zoro said. Hey, even I can't help eating a lot. This is really good food, Alvida said, enjoying her bowl of rice. I'm sorry we're eating a lot, Kobe said, bowing to the woman. I don't mind, you saved us after all, the woman said with a smile. Brother, you're so strong, the little girl said to Luffy. Yup, I've gotta be strong if I plan to be Pirate King, Luffy said. Speaking of Pirate King, what are your next plans? Zoro asked. Long term the Grand Line and then the New World. Short term, I heard about a town called Orange Town where my friend Shanks' old buddy Buggy is holding up, Luffy said. What? You're going to the Grand Line? But you won't be able to survive there. The strongest pirates are there, Kobe shouted. Hey, if we're aiming for One Piece it wouldn't hurt to head there, since well, it is in the Grand Line, Zoro said. You're still saying that? Kobe asked. Why are you so worried? It's not like you're coming, Zoro said. Yeah, but even though I'm not coming I can still be worried, Kobe said with a sigh. Luffy smiled at Kobe and patted him on the back. The kid worrying about them was nice and made Luffy feel warm inside. But of course he had no need to worry. Luffy was planning to become the strongest there is. Don't worry, we're friends. Friends trust in each other, right? Luffy asked, causing Kobe to blush. I've never had friends before. When I was younger people would pick on me a lot. But you three have taught me to be stronger and live by my dream, Kobe said. Yeah, why do you think we're heading to the Grand Line? Luffy asked. Captain here can't become Pirate King without reaching One Piece, Alvida said. I guess I understand then, Kobe said, before being tapped on the forehead by Zoro. Still you should worry about yourself first. Even though you were a cabin boy for Alvida here they'd still consider you a pirate. Don't underestimate the Marine's ability to dig up information, Zoro said. A voice rang out by the door shortly after that. Excuse me, we are wondering if you really are pirates, the Marine leading the others said. Yeah, I got my 2 first mates here, Luffy said. I see, even though you guys are pirates, you actually saved this town and the base and for that we are grateful but we need you to leave this town, the man said. Okay then we'll leave. Thanks for the meal ma'am, Luffy said, getting up with the others. Aren't you with them boy? The man asked, causing Luffy to answer. He was but only to join the Marines. He was a cabin boy but, yeah, Luffy said. If that's so then he won't be able to join the Marines. Policies of course, the man said, causing Kobe to panic. Well, that shouldn't be a problem really. Gramps should be able to clear everything up, Luffy said. Gramps? Alvida asked. Yeah, I'm the grandson of Monkey D. Garp. He'll vouch for the boy, Luffy said. Wait, what did you say your name was? The Marine asked. I didn't, but my name anyways is Monkey D. Luffy, Luffy said before walking out of the room. Hearing the Marine accept Kobe into the Marines under probation and then fully after checking with Garp. Hey, who's Monkey D. Garp and why are they falling all over each other about that? Zoro asked. Monkey D. Garp's one of the vice admirals and considered the hero of the Marines, Alvida said. Yeah, he got that title from capturing the Pirate King himself, Gul D. Roger, Luffy said, shocking the other two. Soon enough they reached their ships where everyone was waiting for them. The crew waved at them with a smile. Big brother, big sister, you're back, one of the crew members said, causing both Alvida and Luffy to raise an eyebrow. Big sister, Alvida asked. Yeah, we overheard Big Brother here talking about how he thinks of his crew as his family and figured what best than being brothers and sisters. Captain and his commanders are the older siblings while we're the younger ones, the crew member said with a smile. Shi Shi, I like that. Big Brother Luffy, Big Sister Alvida, and Big Brother Zoro. They have a nice ring to it, Luffy said, laughing. Alvida smiled and nodded as did Zoro. One big family, it's a great idea, especially considering you're too young for us to be your children, Alvida said, thinking of how Whitebeard treated his crew. Hey, I like siblings better. You can play around and have fun with them, but as a father you have to discipline them and be responsible, Luffy said. It also didn't help that Harry had wanted a big family and never had any kids in his life. Plus Harry had never been sure that he'd be a good father if he even had kids. I guess that's a nice way to put it, Captain, Zoro said with a smirk. Anyways, onward to Orange Island, Luffy said, pointing in the direction he knew it to be. On their way to Orange Town, Luffy gathered Alvida and Zoro in the ship's conference room for a meeting. Alright, first meeting of the Straw Hat family begin, Luffy said eagerly. Straw Hat family, Captain, Alvida said, amused. Hey, it's a great name. Plus most if not all crews are named after their captain's epithet, right? Plus we're a family, aren't we? Luffy said with a smile. I guess we are. You know, that day I never thought I'd end up with a family after all was said and done. You're a weird pirate, but that's not bad, Zoro said. Anyways, what's the first order of business, Cap? Alvida asked. Oh yeah, first order of business. It considers your training, Luffy said. Our training, Zoro said, curious. Yeah, we all gotta get stronger, right? Everyone's going to be a lot more powerful than we are now in the Grand Line, Luffy replied. I guess that's true, but aren't we supposed to train on our own? Alvida asked. Not at all. We're a family so we help each other train. Plus I got a training regimen for all of you. It's called Monkey D. Garp's Training of Hell Regiment, Luffy said with a wide smile, causing Alvida and Zoro to back away nervously. Training of Hell. I'm afraid to ask, but what is it? Alvida asked. It's a regimen designed by my gramps to increase a person's strength and speed. In fact, before we left I bought the items required for training, Luffy said before dropping something really heavy on the table. What that something turned out to be was a bundle of training weights ranging from 5 pounds each to 50 pounds each. Weights, was Zoro's comment. Yup, you're to wear them every hour and every second of the day. When the weight becomes normal to you and you don't have to put an effort to move you up the weights by 5 pounds. There's one for each of your arms and each of your legs, Luffy said. Why aren't you wearing them? Alvida asked, narrowing her eyes at Luffy's lack of weights on him. Shi Shi. Gramps tried it with me, but my rubber man qualities didn't help it at all. Whenever I wore them it'd make me stretch by default because it'd be pulling on my arms and legs. So he tried something different which involved carrying a lot of things, Luffy said. Ah, that makes sense I guess, Zoro said. The next thing Luffy pulled out was a giant bag of rocks. That made the two look questioningly at him as they had no clue as to why he would need a giant bag of rocks for their training. What are those rocks for? Zoro asked. Observation haki training, Luffy said. Explain it to us as if we don't know what haki is, Alvida said, though she actually didn't know what it is. Oh, sorry, I forgot that most people outside of the Grand Line don't know what haki is. Let's see if I can remember the explanation that Gramps gave me. Haki is a power that lies dormant in all the world's creatures' presence, fighting spirit and intimidation. Those are the 3 types of haki known as observation haki, armament haki, and conqueror's haki. However, only 2 of the hakis are available to everyone, Luffy said. Why are only 2 available to everyone? Alvida asked. Well, nobody knows to be honest, but the common belief is that the third one, Conqueror's Haki, is only available to those who are fit to be king. Ironically enough, I can use Conqueror's Haki. Not well enough to consciously use it yet, but still, Luffy said. Why haven't you trained to use it? Zoro asked. Well, it's because to learn Conqueror's Haki comfortably you have to have someone who can use it teach you, and the only person who could use it well enough that I knew left before I found out I could use it. Also, I can't use Armament Haki yet because Gramps told me I wasn't exactly ready to use it, as you have to be at least 16 or 17 to use it, as your body is still developing prior to that, and it's dangerous to use armament while your body is developing, Luffy said. Ah, so what does each of the Hakis do? Zoro asked. Well, first is the one I'm teaching you, Observation Haki. Observation Haki is the Haki of presence. It allows you to sense people's life force and their strength, as well as to an extent predict how a person's going to attack you. In short, it teaches you to dodge and tell where people are, Luffy said. That sounds really useful. Why doesn't everyone learn it? Alvida asked. Because most of the time Observation Haki is unlocked when you're in a do-or-die situation. But the way I'm training you, you're going to unlock it by necessity of not wanting to feel pain. Also, Observation Haki isn't perfect. If you don't have the needed speed to dodge, then you're still going to get hit, Luffy said. Ouch, we're going to be bruising, aren't we? Zoro asked. Yup. Anyways, the second Haki, Armament Haki, is the Haki of fighting spirit. Using it allows you to strengthen your body to withstand damage or to deal a lot more damage than normal. Telltale signs of someone using Armament Haki is usually the blackening of skin. Lastly is the third Haki, Conqueror's Haki, is the Haki of intimidation. Using it allows one to enforce your will on another being. This can lead to straight out knocking out a person or even killing them if they're really weak-willed. It can also be used to tame beasts. Advanced users of it can single out people to knock out rather than inexperienced users who affect everyone, Luffy said. Wow, that's something there. How does someone who has potential for that skill even unlock it? Zoro asked, knowing that something like that had to have a catch. Yes, to unlock Conqueror's Haki you have to face desperation or fear of the highest quality, or determination to face the depths of hell and move on. I unlocked mine when me and my brothers were attacked by pirates and it seemed like we were going to die. Anyways, are you ready to get started? Luffy asked. With a sigh of resignation, Alvida and Luffy nodded. From there it was hell for Alvida and Zoro. Luffy had them wear the weights and attempt to dodge the rocks using their budding Observation Haki. Let's just say they ended up with a lot of bruises that were treated by their fledgling doctors. Thankfully, at least for Alvida and Zoro, they reached Orange Town within the week. When they got to the town, they had anchored their ships on the other side of the town, away from where Buggy's ship was, as to not get shot down by it. Zoro, you're staying on the ship to watch over everyone, Luffy said. What for? Zoro asked, a bit miffed. Because Buggy has the power of a devil fruit that allows him to section parts of his body, so your sword technique will be useless against him. Also, it's just in case someone decides to attempt to attack the ship, Luffy said. Well, I guess that makes sense. Just don't have too much fun without me, Zoro said. From there, Luffy and Alvida made their way off the ship and into the streets. What they found entirely odd about the place, though, was that it was completely empty and devoid of people. Ugh, Buggy must have taken over the town. Shanks did say Buggy was always overzealous. Luffy groaned. So, what are we going to do then? Alvida asked. I guess just keep looking around until we find someone, I guess, Luffy said. Sure enough, they found someone, but she was running away from a group of pirates with what seemed to be a map in hand. She, however, stopped in front of the two and smiled mischievously at them. Hey bosses, thank God you came here to save me, she said before running off. Is that true? Are you this girl's bosses? The men asked. Luffy and Alvida looked at each other before nodding and then swinging their weapon of choice at the men, knocking them out. Wow, you guys are really strong. Thanks for saving me there, the girl said, sitting on the roof of one of the buildings. The girl then led them to the inside of one of the houses. The name's Nami, pirate treasure thief, Nami said, introducing herself. Ah, I'm Monkey D. Luffy and this is Alvida, Luffy said. MHM, hey, want to team up together? We could get a lot of treasure that way, Nami said. I'm not exactly sure if that'd work. Hey, are you a navigator? Luffy asked. Yeah, I'm really good at it too. I can predict weather by reading the environment, Nami said. That's perfect then. I want you to join my crew as my navigator and navigation division commander, Luffy said. Wait, you're pirates, Nami said. Yeah, but we're not like Buggy and his crew. Just a few days we freed a town from an oppressive marine captain who randomly executed people, Luffy said. You may say that, but I really hate pirates. There are only two things I really like, money and tangerines, Nami said. How about this? We'll prove we're not like the horrible pirates you seem to think of by saving this village from Buggy, Luffy said. If you do that, then I'll definitely join your crew, Nami said, not really believing they could do it. Shake on it then and say it formally, Luffy said, planning something. Okay, Nami said, confused. Nami grasped a hold of Luffy's hand and firmly shook it, but Luffy kept a hold until she said her promise. I, Nami, vow to join Monkey D. Luffy's crew if he and Alvida save Orange Town from Buggy, Nami said. Suddenly after that, green chain-like smoke appeared on Luffy's and Nami's arms, binding them together tightly before disappearing quickly after. What was that? Nami asked, panicking. Ah, that was what I like to call an unbreakable vow, Luffy said. What's an unbreakable vow? Nami asked. Not liking the sound of it. It basically makes it so that you can't renege on your deal. If you attempt to, it will put you in pain until you go forward with the deal. The pain starts out small, but as you further refuse, it gets bigger, Luffy said. Didn't think you'd have insurance for something like that, and how the hell did that even happen? Nami asked. That's a secret I'm not telling you until you join my crew. Now where is Buggy located at? Luffy asked. He's at the bar in town, Nami said. And with that they made their way to the bar, where Luffy pulled all three of them up to the roof with his rubber powers, shocking Nami once again. Yo Buggy, I'm here to evict you from this town, Luffy said, causing everyone to sweat drop. Who the hell are you, brat? A clown-faced man yelled. I'm Monkey D. Luffy. Nice to meet ya, Luffy said. Ugh, get him boys, Buggy said, waving his hand, not even bothering get up. Alvida, I bet I can beat more than you, Luffy said. Huh, we'll see, Captain, she said. With that they charged forward, swinging their mace and fists, beating on Buggy's crew members. It was pathetically easy to knock them out, as if they were all simply just cannon fodder, pun not intended. After knocking most of them out, there were really only two left plus Buggy. One of the two was sitting on a giant lion and had a weird hairdo that made it look like he had a mane of fur. The other was a weirdo sitting on a unicycle with two swords in hand. Ugh, Shanks was right. You take the clown theme way too far, Luffy said, face-palming. So you know that bastard Shanks? Did he send you after me? Buggy asked. Yeah, I know him. He gave me this hat. And no, he didn't send me after you. If he wanted to fight you, he'd come after you himself, Luffy said. I thought that hat looked familiar. Moji, take care of the brat, Buggy said. My pleasure, Captain, the man on the lion said. Moji charged forward on the lion, which then jumped, mouth wide open and ready to eat Luffy. Oh no, you don't, I'm not becoming food for something again, Luffy said before spinning his arm and releasing the tension on the lion. Said attack sent the lion and the tamer flying into and through the wall, landing them in the ocean behind the bar. Next please, Luffy said. Kabaji, kill the brats, Buggy yelled, getting mad. This time Alvida stepped forward, brandishing her mace. I got this one, Captain, she said. Go for it, Luffy said with a smile. Alvida calmly walked forward and readied herself with her limited observation haki training. Alvida, would you be Alvida the Iron Club? You look a lot different than your wanted poster, but nevertheless it'll be a wonderful payday for me, Kabaji said before wheeling forward on his unicycle. Kabaji wheeled forward and started swinging his swords at Alvida. However, what shocked him was when she managed to dodge every single swing just barely. This just made the man mad and blow fire in her face. Quickly, before she could get severely burned, she slipped into the splits before swinging her mace into the man's unicycle. The man had to wheel back fast so as to not get the unicycle smashed to pieces. Of course, that didn't help at all, as Alvida was quickly back on her feet and swung her mace at the man, who was now on the defensive. Gah, this is so frustrating, the man started before the mace slammed into his head, knocking him out. Seriously, That's all you got? Luffy asked. AGH, take this Bara cannon, Buggy yelled, launching his fist off his body with a dagger in hand. Luffy simply jumped to dodge it, however Buggy then threw multiple daggers at Luffy while he was midair. To combat this, Luffy grabbed a hold of one of the support poles on the roof and yanked himself towards it, dodging it. Then using the momentum he gained from the launch, he spun around on the pole and launched himself at Buggy. Bara emergency escape, Buggy yelled, scattering his body parts. Luffy, however, didn't lose his flow and instead grabbed one of the scattered body parts, which just so happened to be one of Buggy's hands. He then smiled and turned to Alvida. Hey Alvida, wanna play some baseball? Luffy asked, causing her to smirk. Why not? We have some time, she said, readying her mace. WW, what are you doing with my hand? Buggy yelled, panicking, rushing his head towards Luffy. However, Buggy was too late as Luffy launched the hand at Alvida, who swung and hit the hand with her mace. That resulted in Buggy yelping in pain and the hand going flying off the roof and far away from them. As it was flying, it suddenly fell to the ground, as if it couldn't float anymore. You have a limit of 200 meters, Luffy said, causing Buggy to pale as Luffy picked up the other hand and launched it at Alvida, who once again hit it out of range. Stop launching my body parts away, Buggy whined, which had no effect as Luffy then proceeded to launch the man's feet at Alvida, who again hit them out of range. Now for the last part, Luffy said before picking up Buggy's head, which had attached itself back to its body. Luffy then flung Buggy at Alvida, who had a scary glint in her eyes. Let's go for a home run, she shouted as she swung the mace, launching Buggy out to sea. NOOO, Buggy yelled as he disappeared into the distance. After Buggy disappeared, there was a gasp behind them. They turned and saw it was Nami, who seemingly now had 2 bags of treasure in her arms. She seemed utterly surprised at them. You guys actually beat him? Wow, I actually didn't expect this, Nami said, looking a bit nervous. It wasn't that hard to beat, although it may have to do with the fact that he dumbly separated all his body parts, Alvida said. There is that, Luffy said before turning to Nami with a giant smile. You're one of us now, Nami, Luffy shouted. I won't be able to join you. Not that I don't want to, but I'm trapped in another crew, Nami said, wincing after the first sentence. How about you come back to our ship and explain? We might be able to help you, Luffy said. With that, they made their way back to the ship. On the way there, though, they spotted a dog sitting guard in front of what seemed to be a pet food store. Luffy stopped before the dog, squatted and began to pet the dog. You leave Shushu alone, a male voice yelled. They turned around and found a man wearing armor glaring at them. But I just want to pet him, Luffy said. Who are you? Alvida asked, considering her captain was distracted at the moment. I'm the chief of this village. Are you with Buggy? The man asked. No, we just expelled Buggy from your village, so you guys are free now, Alvida said, causing him to freeze. Wait, you freed us from that pirate? The man asked. Yup, although, if you see any hands or feet lying around, tie them up and keep an eye on them, Luffy said, no longer distracted by the dog, having gotten his fill of petting it. That's an odd request, the man said, sweat dropping. There's actually a reason for it. They're Buggy's body parts. He can separate them at will, but he can only control them at a certain distance. So at some point he'll come back for them. When he does, just blackmail him for them back to stay away from you guys, Luffy said. Okay then. We must repay you somehow though, the man said. Well, we need someone to see if our ships need repairs, and maybe a restock of some of our supplies, although we can get those at our next stop, Syrup Village, Luffy said. Syrup Village? That's a quiet little town. Why are you heading there? The chief asked. Well, the son of my friend Shanks Sniper is there and I want to recruit him. Usopp told me that he taught his son Usopp everything he knew, Luffy said. That's actually a good idea. We do need more ranged fighters, Alvida commented. After that, they departed to the ship where, as promised by the chief, they were met with shipwrights to help repair the ship. Thank the blue they did, because it turned out that both ships were slowly accumulating damage from their trips, so it was great that they repaired everything. While that was happening, Luffy had everyone meet in the conference room so Nami could explain everything. I can't join you guys because I'm forcibly part of the Arlong pirates. I joined so I could buy my village, Kakoyashi village that is, Nami said. Arlong pirates. I've heard of Arlong from Gramps. He said the fishman's a cruel person who hates humans. I'm actually shocked that he would allow you on his crew, Luffy said. Well, he let me on because I'm really good at making maps and navigating. But now you see why I can't join, she said. Nah, you can still join. We'll just free you and your village from Arlong's control. It's that easy, Luffy said. But Arlong's really strong. He's a fishman for Blue's sake. That makes him 10 times stronger than a human, Nami shouted. I don't care. You're part of our crew now, which means you're family now. And family helps each other, Luffy said. Yeah, leave it to us, sis, Zoro said with a smirk. Yeah, leave it to your brothers and sisters to take care of this for you, Alvida said, putting a hand on Nami's shoulder. Slowly but surely a smile grew on Nami's face and a tear ran down her cheek. Thanks everyone. Really? Thank you, Nami said. No problem. Now, first of all, I've decided to make you the commander of 2 divisions. Luffy said. Wait, what? Why? Nami asked, now confused. Yeah, why does she get to lead too? Zoro said, a bit jealous. Well, because for one, she's the best person for the 2nd command spot and I doubt we'll run into many people with aptitude for it. She's going to be the commander of the finance and the navigation divisions. Luffy said, finance division. I get to keep track of all the money. Cool, Nami shouted, making Luffy think he saw belly signs in her eyes. I guess she is good for that spot. She doesn't seem like the person to let us overspend. Zoro relented. Second topic. It'll be a tiny bit before we go rescue your village from Arlong. This is for 2 reasons. 1. We have 2 stops to make before Kakuyashi village and 2. We need to train you up so you can fight alongside us. I mean, I'm sure you'd want to mete out some of your own punishment onto Arlong. Luffy said. Fight. But I don't have a specialty like you guys. I can't wield heavy weapons or swords. Nami said. Au contraire, you can predict the weather, therefore I have the perfect gift for you. Luffy said, taking off his necklace and setting it on the table before enlarging the chest. You're giving her a devil fruit cap? Alvida asked. Yup, this one's perfect for her. Luffy said as he opened up the chest and pulled a fruit out. The devil fruit had a cloud-like shape to it and was completely grayish-black except for the patterns that seemed to be rain, snow, and lightning. Say hello to the devil fruit of class Loja, the Den Den Mushi, or simply the weather fruit. Eating this fruit will allow you to control and change the weather as well as transform into a storm cloud. This fruit will make you a weather or storm human. Now be warned, your ice attacks will not be stronger than someone who ate the ice Loja fruit but will be stronger than someone who ate the lightning Loja fruit. Luffy said. I guess that would make sense. The strongest ice is formed on land rather than in the sky and the other way around for lightning. Nami said offhandedly as Luffy handed her the fruit. Well, down the hatch it goes, Nami said as she ate the devil fruit, grimacing at the disgusting taste. Ugh, that tasted horrible, Nami said. Yeah, but bad taste is a nice price to pay in exchange for being able to protect yourself and others, Luffy said. Suddenly Nami gasped and looked around. What is it, sis? Alvida asked. I can sense the weather in the sky. It feels so warm and nice. I feel like I can change the weather to anything I want, she said with a content sigh. Great, that means it worked. Although I'd advise you against doing that. We do like this calm weather, sis, Luffy said. Oh, don't worry, I like this weather too. I'm keeping it like this for now, Nami said. Cool, now let's see. Hey guys, what weapon do you think would suit her? Luffy said. It was actually Nami who spoke up instead of Alvida and Zoro. I can use a bow staff actually, Nami offered. I think we have a bow staff in storage, Alvida said. Good, then we can get started on your training, Luffy said with a smile as Alvida and Zoro paled, which Nami noticed. Gee guys, why are you paling? Guys, Nami yelled in a panic. The 4 days that it took them to reach Syrup Village was utter hell for Nami. Before joining the Straw Hats, she hadn't really trained that much, relying purely on her skills as a thief to get by. Now, she was forced to wear weights on her arms and legs, dodge rocks, and tell the minute changes in the weather all at the same time. Granted, even with such little time she was seeing the improvement. For one, she had a lot of energy now and it took a lot more to tire her out than it used to. Second, she was slowly being able to dodge the rocks being thrown at her. Sure, she still got hit like 80% of the time, but the other 20% she could dodge using her haki. Lastly, she was slowly getting a grasp of her powers because, as Luffy said, if you know the weather then you know your powers. Of course, other than that training there was one other training that Luffy was forcing her to go under. Although she guessed that on the plus side Alvida and Luffy were training with her in it as well. Luffy was having them and him train in water using what he called Agumenti. Now one may wonder why water, since as devil fruit users they couldn't even move in water. Well, Luffy had theorized that the reason they couldn't move in water was because their devil fruits put them under the weight of the ocean. Of course, Nami at first disbelieved that notion, until they were slowly able to move their arms, if barely. So Nami guessed that the training was working, but boy was she thankful that she could take baths. By now she understood that she only lost her powers in bodies of moving water, like lakes, oceans, rivers, and the such, and also only if it went above her knees. Losing the ability to take a nice hot bath would have devastated her. During one of the every other day meetings, Zoro decided to ask a question. Hey Captain, what other devil fruits do you actually have? Zoro asked. Sheesh, you don't have to keep calling me Captain, Luffy's fine, Luffy said with a groan. I call you Captain cause it's fun to say, Alvida commented. Luffy then took out the box that held the fruits in them and opened it up. Inside were 2 more fruits, which shocked the others. How the hell did you get that many fruits? You had like 4, Alvida asked, confused. Shi Shi. Well, actually, 2 of them I found on my island. That'd be the Sub No Mi and the Den Den Mushi. Luffy started out. Next he pulled out a white fruit that had splotches of rainbow colors as well as a silver-looking fruit that seemed as if it was really hard. These two I liberated from pirates who assaulted me and my brothers who didn't even know they were devil fruits. This rainbow-colored one is the Nuru no Mi, or the paint fruit. This fruit is a Loja class fruit that allows one to become a paint human. With it they can control paint and become paint at will. This silver one is the Teku no Mi, or the steel fruit. It is a Paramecia class fruit that allows one to become a steel human. With it one can turn one's body into any kind of steel. And no Zoro, that doesn't mean they can turn their body into blades. That's the Supa no Mi, Luffy said, saying the last part before Zoro could even say anything. I wasn't going to say anything, Zoro protested. That's a lie and you know it, Alvida said with a chuckle, causing Zoro to glare at her. By the way, Luffy, how do you even know what each fruit is without using them? Nami asked. Well, my friend Shanks gave me an encyclopedia on devil fruits, and since they've existed for as long as anyone can tell, almost all of them are in here, Luffy said. That's an interesting book. Can I see it sometime later? Nami asked. Sure, why not? I've already read through it a dozen times, Luffy said. Soon enough, though, they managed to reach Syrup Village, which was in the Gecko Islands. Syrup Village was a quiet little place that only had two ways to even get into the place, as it was completely and utterly bordered by cliffs. So, you could only enter the village via the north or south ends of the village. So they decided to get off on a skiff and make their way to the south end. The rest of the crew would hide the ship in one of the tiny caves under the cliffs and wait for Luffy or one of the others to call them to pick them up via Den Den Mushi. Boy, was Luffy thankful that Orange Town had a few of them. When they landed on the beach shore, they were halted by a male voice. They turned towards the direction of the voice and saw a man with sharpshooter goggles and had a very long nose. Stop. I am the great pirate fleet leader Usopp. I am the leader of this village security, for they call me Captain Usopp. It's best if you don't attack this village because my 80 million men won't forgive you, Usopp said. You really need to work on your lies. Your father lies much better, Luffy said in a deadpan. How did you know? Wait, you know my father, Usopp? Usopp asked, panicking before becoming very interested. Yup, he visited my village often with the crew he's part of often before heading north, Luffy said. You have to tell me about him, Usopp said before practically dragging him by the shirt to somewhere, Alvida, Zoro, and Nami promptly following. The place that Usopp dragged them to was a tavern in the town called Meshi. It was a quaint little place that had nice cheap food. Of course, the cheap food was what lured Nami in, as she loved to save money. It was the food in general that lured everyone else in. Immediately, though, after they entered, something happened that Luffy expected to happen. Men and some women started to fawn over Alvida, making her facepalm. Sure, she loved the attention and people calling her beautiful, but really, it was getting hard to do things without people fawning over her. Thank the blue that the crew members calmed down about it, or someone was going to get special one-on-one training her, and not the nice kind. Who are you, my beautiful princess? Begged one of the women. Your beautiful princess. She's mine, one of the men yelled. Very quickly, Alvida was getting ticked off, and it didn't help that Luffy, Zoro, and even Nami were laughing at her. Soon she couldn't take it, and she swung her mace and planted it in the ground. If you're going to grovel and praise me, then do something worthy of my attention instead of throwing words around, Alvida shouted. Alvida was thanking the blue that the people stopped shouting over her, but she wasn't entirely sure what they did instead was better. Instead, they bought her and her siblings a lot of food and drinks. Alvida was glaring at her siblings, who were still chuckling at her. I'm sorry, sis, but that reaction's always hilarious, Luffy said, wiping a tear away. Yeah, it's hilarious seeing them throw themselves over you, Zoro said, finally easing his laughter. Alvida turned to Nami and raised an eyebrow, as if asking her what her excuse was. Hey sis, you're the one who wanted to be the most beautiful woman in the world. This is what it gets you, Nami said with a smile. Usopp looked at them questioningly. Oh, are you all siblings? I don't see a resemblance, Usopp said. Nah, the Straw Hat Armada is a family, Luffy said, wrapping an arm over Zoro's shoulder. Yeah, brothers and sisters in arms, Zoro said, wrapping his free arm over Alvida's shoulder. Always helping each other, was Alvida's reply, wrapping hers over Nami's shoulder. And never alone, for we are always there for each other, Nami finished, all four of them smiling. When they finished, Usopp was staring at them with stars in his eyes. That was so cool. Did you plan it? He asked. Nope, not really. It's how we really feel, Zoro said lazily. That was true, though. In their opinions, you couldn't go through weeks of Luffy's training hell and not form a bond. Plus, the way that all the crew members were familial with each other helped. Ah, that sounds wonderful. So, you said that you knew my father, Usopp said before turning his attention to Luffy. Yeah, when I was little, Shanks and his crew, the Red Hair Pirates, visited my village often. One of the members of his crew, his sniper to be exact, was your father Usopp. Usopp would tell me all sorts of stories about you, clearly proud of you, Luffy said, causing Usopp to smile. A sniper? I'm a pretty good sharpshooter with my slingshot, Usopp said. Hey, no offense, but you'd be better off with a gun, like a sniper rifle or a musket. Luffy said. Why? And what's a sniper rifle? Usopp asked. Well, for one, you usually can't get the projectile speed required to actually hurt someone, so you'd have to compensate with special projectiles. If you were to use a gun, you could actually hurt someone easily and keep going because guns usually have magazines, which hold more than one bullet. With your slingshot, you can only really load 1 to 3 before having to get more, and even then, you'd have to probably shoot them all at once. And to your second question, a sniper rifle is a newer gun that was designed about 5 years back. It has a scope that allows you to see further away, and the gun itself has a very large range, much larger than what your slingshot would have. Luffy said. Ew, that actually sounds neat, and I guess I understand what you mean by my slingshot not necessarily being the best thing to use. Usopp said. Yeah, listen to Luffy. Usually he knows these kinds of things, although some have said things we don't understand how he knows. Alvida said. Luffy totally wasn't going to tell them that he knew about guns because when he was Harry he had used them extensively when he was older. For what reasons? Well, let's just say a war that never should have happened and leave it at that. So, what are you guys doing here in Syrup Village? It's a pretty quiet town for pirates to visit. Usopp asked. Actually we're here to recruit you and possibly somebody else if there's anyone interesting here. Luffy said, shocking Usopp. Wait, you're here to recruit me? The great Usopp. Usopp asked. Your father actually had talked about how you seemed to be a shooting prodigy when he was with you. So I figured why not, let's recruit the guy. Luffy said. I actually don't know what to say though. If you're here to also recruit someone else, I have someone in mind. Recruiting her would probably cement my agreement. Usopp said. Oh, who is it? Alvida piped in. Well, here in town there's a mansion up the hill that belongs to a wealthy family. Though, while I say wealthy family, it is owned by a young girl our age. That young girl is the one I want you to recruit. Though it may be hard considering she is really sick and people don't actually know why, as she seems healthy otherwise. Usopp said. Why would we want to recruit a sick girl? Not meaning to be harsh or anything, but it doesn't seem beneficial. The ever pragmatic Nami. Well, she's considered a prodigy doctor. While she's still learning, she's almost nearing being better than our town's doctor. Usopp said. A few minutes passed before Luffy stood up and turned towards the door. Where are you going? Usopp asked. I've decided. We're recruiting the girl, Shi Shi. Luffy said, laughing, making Usopp smile big. On their way there, Usopp told them the girl's name was Kaya and that she was a really nice girl that he told various stories to. The stories were lies, of course, in order to cheer her up. However, when they got to the mansion, it was being guarded by 2 bodyguards. Ugh, Klahadore must have put them there. Usopp said with a groan. Klahadore? Luffy asked. He's Kaya's caretaker and he hates me and hate the idea of pirates. Although, he gives me some bad vibes, Usopp said before directing them around part of the wall and over it. What was on the other side was a large tree and a bunch of windows. One such window Usopp walked over to and knocked on it. It was opened by a girl their age with blonde hair wearing a white dress. Oh, Usopp, I'm really sorry I can't greet you like a proper guest, but Klahadore won't let me. Kaya said. It's alright, Kaya. I've brought these people with me and they have a request that you'd like. Usopp said with a smile. Oh, a request? She asked, looking over Luffy and his siblings. Not that she knew that. Yeah, we wish you to join our crew, our family. Luffy said. Wait, what crew? Kaya asked, confused. Our pirate crew, the Straw Hat Armada. We heard you're a good doctor in training here from Usopp here. Alvida said. But I'm not that good. Kaya said. Yes, you are. You've helped many people even while you're sick. Usopp protested. That's it. I'm sick. I can't go with you if I'm sick. Kaya said. Suddenly a male voice rang out. Who are you? You can't barge into the mansion like this. The voice shouted. They turned and saw a black-haired male wearing glasses and wearing a black suit. T the butler. Usopp muttered, although Luffy said something else. Do I know you? Luffy asked, shocking the man. What? Klahadore said in surprise. Yeah, you look awfully familiar. Luffy said. No, I've never seen you before, so therefore you can't know me. Now get out of here. The mistress needs her rest. The man yelled, pushing up his glasses with the palm of his hand. That action further cemented Luffy's belief that he's seen the man before. This whole process was giving Luffy an ominous feeling. Quickly, Luffy grabbed Usopp and gestured for the rest to follow. When they got outside of the mansion and a bit further, he let Usopp go. When he turned to the man, Usopp had a mad look on his face. Why did you listen to him? Usopp yelled. Luffy ignored him and pulled a backpack off his back that Usopp hadn't realized was there until now. Luffy started to dig through the bag before he pulled out what seemed to be a book of papers. What is that? Usopp asked. SHH, Luffy said, leafing through the papers before pulling one out and putting the rest back in the bag. Does this look familiar to you? Luffy asked, presenting the paper to Usopp's face. The paper had a picture on it. Above the picture was the word wanted and below it was a price for 16 million belly as well as the name Kuro of 100 plans. However, what shocked Usopp was the picture. The picture was of a black-haired man with glasses and really sharp claw-like weapons. At first it didn't look like it, but when Usopp took a second look it confirmed it. "TT, that's Clahador," Usopp shouted, face paling. "Wait, what?" the other yelled, grabbing the wanted poster before gasping. "How did you notice that, Luffy?" Nami asked. "Well, I had seen the wanted poster before. That book of papers is a book of wanted posters. I keep a collection of them, but Kuro was supposed to be dead. Let me see that there's information on the back," Luffy said before grabbing the paper and flipping it over. "Captain Kuro of the Black Cat Pirates, captured and killed by Lieutenant Morgan of the Marines, who was then promoted to Captain Morgan." "Morgan, that idiot. Well, that explains why he's here. I bet Morgan didn't check the body," Luffy said. "Wait, the guy from Shell's Town was the one who captured and killed Kuro?" Zoro asked, not really believing it, apparently, but I still think he didn't. The likeness is too coincidental, Luffy said. "We should tell Kaya," Usopp yelled. "Shi Shi. Well, it's a good thing I have something to help sneak us in there." "Huddle up, everyone," Luffy said, taking off his cloak and putting his backpack back on. Luffy then grabbed a hold of the bottom part of the cloak before throwing it above them. Everyone else watched in awe as the cloak unraveled into a large cloth that enlarged and covered them. "What is this supposed to do?" Usopp asked. "You'll see, now follow me," Luffy said, taking them back to the mansion. When they got there they saw the two bodyguards in the front again. When Luffy started leading them in their direction, Usopp started whispering furiously that they're gonna get caught. However, those protests died quickly when they slipped past the guards who didn't see them at all. "Why didn't they see us?" Usopp asked. "This is an invisibility cloak. It turned us invisible," Luffy said. Usopp turned to the others who didn't seem to be shocked at all, unlike him who was gaping at the idea of it. "Why you guys aren't shocked?" Usopp whispered. "Nope, brother showed us it when we each joined the crew," Nami said with a smirk, as if getting vindictive pleasure out of it. "Why didn't you tell me about it?" Usopp asked furiously in a whisper. "Because we like to see the shocked look," Zoro said, proving why Nami was getting vindictive pleasure out of Usopp's shock. "You freaked out, didn't you?" Usopp said, flatly staring at Nami, causing her to glare at him, proving he was correct. Fortunately for Usopp, Nami didn't have time to reply as they soon reached Kaya's window, to which they had Nami unlock and open from the outside. They then snuck inside and saw Kaya sitting on her bed. She was shocked when Luffy pulled off the cloak and revealed themselves. "What are you guys doing here?" she asked. "We have something to show you, Kaya," Usopp said, handing her the wanted poster. Is this a joke?" she asked, not understanding it. "It's not. It has the marine seal at the bottom that is made with a tiny bit of sea stone, which makes it impossible to replicate, as only the marine admirals know the process of turning sea stone into that seal," Luffy said. "Seriously, how do you know these things?" Nami asked, frustrated. "Shi Shi, my grandpa, Vice Admiral Garp, told me," Luffy said, shocking the people who didn't know. "You're related to a vice admiral?" Usopp shouted. "No time for that. What are we going to do?" Alvida asked, stopping any explanations before they could even start. Well, Luffy started before the door was opened, revealing Kuro in his Clahador disguise. "I thought I told you pirates to leave," Kuro yelled. "Stop it. We know you're Captain Kuro, Clahador," Kaya yelled, showing him the wanted poster. "TCH. I knew that poster was going to get me in a bind if anyone here ever saw it. And the plan was going so well," Kuro said with a sigh before there was a click and blades slid out of his gloves. "You know, it wasn't even your looks that truly gave it away, Kuro," Luffy said, readying himself. "Really, brat? What was it then?" Kuro asked, curious. "The way you push up your glasses. At first I thought it was a weird quirk and all because people have them, but then I thought about it. Nobody would have that kind of quirk without a reason behind it, as people usually push their glasses up with their fingers and not their palms. Then I remembered your wanted poster. You wear your claw weapons all the time and they're activated by bending your hand downward. If you were to push your glasses up with your fingers, you'd stab yourself by accident," Luffy explained, shocking everyone. He deduced all that just by a simple quirk. Alvida thought in shock. What kind of thinking does he have? Not even I would have picked up on that. Nami thought. HMPH knew he was smarter than most people, but seriously this? Zoro thought. Wow, he's truly worth the title of captain, was Usopp's thoughts. Kuro, however, started clapping with his claws still activated with a smile on his face. "Congratulations. That was a deduction worthy of genius. If I had you on my crew, you wouldn't have been treated like I treat my old crew members, like the trash they are," Kuro said in an arrogant voice, disgusting the Straw Hat group. "You're not worth the title of captain if you treat your crew like that. They're supposed to be your nakama and your family," Luffy shouted, getting mad at the man. Nakama, family. The crew is meant to be the pawns of the captain, like one big chess game where the captain is the king," Kuro sneered. "Well then, I think it's checkmate for you, Kuro," Luffy bit back, causing Kuro to laugh out loud. "No, my friend, it's checkmate for you. You're too late. My old crew is advancing on the northern entrance of the village to attack." Of course, I still need to get that will from Kaya, Kuro said, shocking Kaya. That's why you've been pressuring me to write my will, she said, coughing occasionally. Yes, I've been aiming to get your wealth the entire time. With your death I will be rich, Kuro said. Did you kill my parents? Kaya yelled. Actually, no, their deaths were truly an accident and never supposed to die, Kuro said. Kuro charged forward, intending on capturing Kaya, but Luffy tackled him to the ground. Go, stop the pirates at the beach. I'll handle Kuro, Luffy yelled. They all nodded, Usopp helping Kaya out the window as they ran to the north slope. Meanwhile, Kuro charged at Luffy, intending to slice at him. Luffy, using haki, could just barely dodge. Damn, is this guy fast, Luffy thought as he kept dodging. Luffy, though, soon had enough of the man's incessant attacking and discreetly materialized the Elder Wand and used Glacius to freeze the floor below the man's feet, causing him to go flying into the wall. Gomu Gomu pistol, Luffy yelled, stretching his punch at Kuro in the opening that the ice spell gave him. The punch landed and smashed Kuro through the wall, leaving a giant hole open into the hallway. However, that victory didn't last long, as Luffy was soon set upon once again. This time, however, he reacted reflexively, putting up a wandless protego that stopped the attack temporarily. However, that short time that it gave him, Luffy used his other hand to use the Elder Wand to cast a Defindo that sliced the entirety of the blades off the weapons, leaving Kuro without a sharp weapon to use. Ugh, how did you do that? You know what, it doesn't matter, I still have my fists, Kuro said as he lunged at Luffy with his fists. They started to trade blows for a while before they heard something outside. It was the sound of a thunderstorm approaching. That seemed to confuse Kuro big time. What? It was supposed to be clear weather all day, Kuro said, but stared at Luffy when he started to laugh. Oh, well, your plan's done with, Luffy said. What did you do? Kuro yelled. Oh, not me, Nami, the orange-haired girl. She ate a devil fruit, the Den Den Mushi, also known as the weather fruit, Luffy said. What? She's the one doing this, Kuro shouted. Yes, and this is her Ask Vader dance, Luffy said before the entire room was illuminated by ungodly lightning. Kuro was staring in shock at the giant plume of water that had bits of a broke ship in it, proof of the destructive power of the lighting. Killer illusion, Kuro yelled. Oh no you don't. I'm not getting sliced to bits, thank you very much, Luffy said, knocking out Kuro before he could even start. About 30 minutes later they were in the center of the village with Kuro and apparently his ex-first mate Django tied up. The group was laughing because the villagers were yelling and throwing rotten food at the men, saying things like, how dare you take advantage of a sick girl? Or we were wrong, Usopp's way better than you. It was safe to say that Usopp was very happy right now. However, Kaya soon turned to them. I'm sorry, but I can't leave still, I'm still sick, Kaya said. Luffy sighed before he started digging through his backpack. Hey Kaya, did you get sick after your parents died? Luffy asked. Yeah, how did you know? Kaya asked. Luffy then tossed her a book that read Love Sickness by Empress Gloriosa. Love sickness? But I'm not in love with anyone, so why would that be what I have? She asked. Turn to page 50, Luffy said. She did so and read it. Broken heart syndrome. She read. Yeah, normally BHS gives you a heart attack, but I think you have that mixed with love sickness. Thankfully, love sickness symptoms are mostly, if not all, psychosomatic, so if you face the problem then you'll get better, Luffy said. What problem? She asked, confused. That one, you haven't gotten over your parents' deaths, and 2, although I may be oblivious to feelings in general, I can see this, you like Usopp, causing Kaya to go bright red as well as Usopp. Well, she started before Usopp spoke up. You like me? I like you too, he said, blushing. Really? Oh, well, I guess I do like you, she said, stuttering. Suddenly Kaya's skin gained a better pallor as if she had quickly gotten better. Something like that shouldn't have that sudden of a recovery. Nami yelled. Well, the reason why it's fast is because, like I said, the symptoms are psychosomatic, meaning they're not exactly real in the sense that the body itself is causing it. Rather, the mind itself is causing the problems. When the mind is relieved of the burden, then the symptoms should ease, Luffy said. If you say so. I still believe it shouldn't be that fast, Nami muttered. So, Kaya, are you ready to come with us and be our commander of the medical division? Luffy asked. She nodded furiously. Of course, she said. Well, a voice yelled. They turned and saw Kaya's other caretaker, Mary, was coming to them. I have something to give to you before you leave. A ship. You're an armada after all, so you'll need more ships, Mary said. Mary then led them to a private dock at the south end and showed them the ship. It was a Caravel-class ship that had a sheep figurehead and it had a quaint feeling to it. I like it, Luffy said. Great. It's called the Going Merry, Mary said. Well, hello Going Merry, welcome to the Armada, Luffy said with a giant smile. Kaya's and Usopp's integration to the crew was smooth and flawless. The other crew members took to calling them Big Sis and Big Bro rather immediately, since they were the new commanders of the healer and the sniper division. When Usopp got on the ship, he asked for schematics for a sniper rifle and a shotgun, which Luffy gladly handed over. Not 2 days later did Usopp come out with a brand new sniper rifle and shotgun strapped to his back. Of course, beforehand, Luffy had introduced the duo to their new training regimen, though of course Kaya's was easier because her body was still recovering. Although it was still hell for her, Kaya, having no weapon training, allowed her new siblings to pick out her weapon. It was actually Zoro who ended up choosing for her, having believed her perfect for a sword. Lo and behold, Zoro was actually right and Kaya took to the sword like a fish to water. Although if you were to compare Kaya's style of sword fighting to Zoro's, it'd be like comparing a dancer to a dragon. Where Kaya was grace and fluidity, Zoro was pure brute force. Other than that, Luffy piled Kaya up with various medical books for her to study on so she could learn more and be the best doctor for the Armada. However, unlike with Nami, Luffy didn't offer them any devil fruits. He explained he had 2 reasons for it. The first was that neither of them fit their fighting styles, so it would be rather pointless for them to eat the fruits. The second was that they needed people who didn't have devil fruits as well, or all the commanders would be screwed if they fell in water. Which, if you thought about it, made complete sense. Beyond that, on their way to Baratie, Luffy decided to start doing the interviews for the various non-commanders and see what division they wanted to join. When Luffy first acquired Alvida's ship, speaking of that, they need to start naming the ships. They had 250 crew members. Now though, after saving Shell's Town, Orange Town, and Syrup Village, they had a total of 350, give or take a few. Out of those 350, 65 of them went to Alvida for the heavy combat division, which left 285. Out of those 285, 50 went to Zoro for the sword division, leaving 235. Then out of those 235, a surprising 110 went to Nami, leaving 125. Of course, then again 75 went to her for the navigation division and the other 35 went to her for the finance division. Of the remaining 125, 35 went to Kaya for the healer division, leaving 90. Of that 90, 20 went to Usopp for the sniper division, leaving 70. Of the 70 remaining were 20 who wanted to become cooks, 15 that wanted to become shipwrights, 15 who wanted to become musicians, 10 who wanted to become spies and help gather information, 5 who wanted to be researchers, and 5 who wanted to become assassins if needed. All in all, they had their hands full, especially for Nami, who suddenly had 110 subordinates under her thumbs and was staying up late at night to make teaching plans to teach her new little brothers and sisters. Of course, she would never admit it, but she wouldn't rather do anything else. She was happy here. Another topic Luffy had to consider was the flag design, because the crew wanted something they could get tattooed on their body to proudly represent their crew. At first, Usopp suggested a skull and crossbones with a straw hat on the skull, but Luffy felt it was too simple. So instead they went with a skull that had a straw hat, and superimposed behind it was the symbol for the Deathly Hallows. The crew had asked what it meant, and all Luffy replied was, "The last enemy that shall be defeated is death." Of course they loved it, although the commanders seemed rather confused, but let it go for now because they didn't have the grounds to even start asking. So with that being said, they made their way to Baratie. They would have stopped at an island for the tattoos, but Nami said there's a tattoo parlor in Kakuyashi village and it'd be great revenue for the village. I mean, come on, over 300 people getting tattoos that cost about 5,000 belly per hour, and considering how Luffy wanted the commanders to get the tattoos on their backs to mock his brother, that'll add up real fast. Nami estimated that for the small tattoos for the crew members it'd take about 2 hours, so together that's roughly 3,500,000 belly for the commanders, because the tattoo artists on Kakuyashi are actually rather good and rather fast. She estimated maybe 4 hours, and since they're picking someone up at Baratie, that'd make about 140,000 belly. So the total was 3,640,000 belly. And since most, if not all, the crew members were paying out of pocket, it wouldn't even make a dent in the belly that Luffy had gotten when he acquired Alvida or when they robbed Buggy. Anyhow, soon enough they reached Baratie, the floating restaurant. It was an interesting sight as it seemed to be shaped like a fish. However, the interesting part was not the ship, but rather the marine that seemed to be trying to talk to them. "I don't recognize your flag. I am Lieutenant Fullbody of the Marines. Who's your captain?" The man said. "That'd be me, yo." Luffy said, "You're really lucky that I'm on vacation or I'd have to deal with you guys." Fullbody said, "Somebody from inside the cabin on the marine ship seemed to be asking him to stop messing with them." So the man started walking away. That was not before the man ordered them to fire the cannon. "Hey Nami, how's your cloud road you've been working on?" Luffy asked. "I can only hold somebody for about 20 seconds. She said. "Good. Prepare to put one under me." Luffy said. When the cannon fired, Luffy jumped off the ship and turned so that he was facing the cannonball and the marine ship rather than the Baratie that he'd be forced to face or fall off. Luffy suddenly expanded and the cannonball hit him before being flung back at the marine ship, going straight through the cannon and into the cannonball room, causing it to explode. Luffy, however, safely landed on top of the fluffy cloud that Nami prepared for him before jumping off it and onto the ship before it could dissipate. The crew was then laughing at the Marine who had fired at them, who was cursing at them. They laughed even harder when they saw the woman on the docks of the Baratie laughing at him, because she was more than likely the woman he was on vacation with. Jokes aside, they docked at the Baratie and got off. From there they made their way off the ship and into the restaurant, leaving the crew to watch over the ship, as the Baratie couldn't handle 300 plus people. Entering, they saw the restaurant had plenty of people ranging from pirates to Marines to civilians. They were directed to a table where they all were seated and handed a menu. Nami of course told them not to get much, pointedly looking at Luffy. "Hey, it's not my fault I have a high metabolism." Luffy whined. "Yeah, well, we need to make sure you don't eat us out of our belly," Nami said. Soon enough though, they were approached by a blonde-haired man with a curling eyebrow wearing a black suit and black dress shoes. "Hello, I am Sanji, the assistant head chef, and I will be taking your orders today, beautiful ladies," Sanji said, only looking at Nami, Alvida, and Kaya, causing the guys to roll their eyes. Why aren't there any waiters?" Nami asked. "That's because they left yesterday for time off. We have enough chefs for them to take over the waiters' positions temporarily. Now what would you wonderful women like?" Sanji asked. Well, I actually have a message for Zeph, that is, first," Luffy said, causing Sanji to look at him. "Oh, you have a message for the old man. What is it?" Sanji asked curiously. "Can you tell him Shanks sent me?" Luffy asked. "Very well, but I still need your orders," Sanji said. Thankfully, they had already decided what they wanted. Luffy of course got a meat-type dish, Alvida preferring a noodle-type dish, Zoro wanted sushi, Nami wanted something made with oranges, Kaya really wanted pancakes, and Usopp simply wanted hamburgers. Quickly after that though, they were approached by a mustached man wearing a head chef hat and had a peg leg. "Oh, you're the one that kid sent," Zeph said. Well, when a crew member of mine suggested Baratie and later told me you ran it to get a chef, it reminded me of something that I had forgot. When I was a kid, Shanks said that you were the best chef there was, and that if I ever needed to get a cook for my ship to ask you." Luffy said. I guess he'd definitely send you to me since I trained the cook he has on his ship." "How do you know Shanks anyways?" Zeph asked. "He gave me this hat, Shi Shi. Told me to give it back to him when I become a great pirate." Luffy said. "Hey kid, what's your name?" The man asked. "Oh, it's Monkey D. Luffy," Luffy said, seeming to shock the man. "The wool of DA. Well, I'll see what I can do. I can't do much on short notice, but I'll try. For now, enjoy your dinner," Zeph said, before heading off. "What did he mean by the wool of D?" Nami asked. "Well, I actually have no clue, but certain people throughout history have had the middle initial D. In fact, my grandpa has it, my brother has it, Roger had it, Roger's wife even had it," Luffy said. "You're not blood related to your brother, right? You had introduced him as Porca's DA, so there's the chance," Alvida said. "Yeah, we're not related by blood, but we're as close as brothers can be. Although I guess the term would be brothers in arms. But I really don't know," Luffy said, looking off to the distance, wistful. That action was clearly noticed by the others, who filed that away for later because soon after their food arrived, being served by Sanji. Their food, of course, was really amazing, and they asked who cooked it. "Oh, that was me. The one who was going to cook your food was asked to prepare the Marine's food over there," Sanji said, directing his head over to the Marine and a woman who turned out to be Lieutenant Fullbody. "That jerk. He attacked us when he docked," Luffy said. "Might as well keep an eye on the man. I have to serve his food," Sanji said, sighing before leaving. As they enjoyed their food, Luffy kept an eye on Lieutenant Fullbody as Sanji served the food. When the man tried to guess the wine, and was proven wrong by Sanji, who then flirted with the woman, Luffy saw that the man was getting pissed off. About 10 minutes later, when the actual dinner appeared, Luffy saw the man put a fly in his dish and call Sanji over. "Waiter, what is this fly?" Fullbody asked, trying to hide his smirk. "I don't know, I'm not a fly expert," Sanji snarked, causing the man to get ridiculed even by the woman he was with. "And you're an idiot, Fullbody," Luffy said, standing up. "What did you saw? You're the brat who destroyed me ship," Fullbody yelled. "Yeah, and you're the idiot who purposefully put a fly in his dish just to embarrass the chef here," Luffy said before walking up to the man and grabbing him. Everyone in the restaurant watched as Luffy dragged the man out the doors and tossed him into the ocean. Luffy walked back in and dusted off his hands before stopping at Sanji. "Why did you do that?" "I was going to do something," Sanji said with a frown. "Because if you had done something, you would have gotten in trouble. I mean, the chefs and waiters aren't allowed to harm the customers, but other customers," Luffy said. "Well, I guess I thank you then. If I had done something, then old man Zeph would have yelled at me till morning," Sanji said with a sigh. "What happened here?" Another chef came in and yelled. That was me. One of your customers tried making fun of the chefs by putting a fly in his soup. I helped him outside," Luffy said, causing Sanji to smirk. "Well, I guess if he put a fly in his soup, then that would have been grounds to kick him out," the chef said before heading off. Shortly after, though, a man looking near dead came in and asked for food. However, the previous chef refused to feed him. So Sanji took the man to the back, where Luffy followed and saw Sanji feed the man. I don't want to be ashamed for having to resort to begging, but this is the best rice ever. The man said, I've decided. You're to be the commander of the cook division in my crew. Luffy said, seemingly shocking the man. Why I refuse? The Sanji said, I refuse your objection. After all, from what I've seen you don't really like it here that much. Luffy said, shocking Sanji even more. How did you know that? Sanji asked. Well, for one, it's in how you act around customers. You don't exactly pay attention to them and only pay attention to the women. While that may be you just being an unrepentant pervert, that doesn't explain why you completely ignore the men. Luffy said. Hey, Sanji said, sheepishly rubbing the back of his head as he smoked. Excuse me for interrupting, but I'm Jin and I work for the Krieg Pirates. What is your goal? Jin asked. Oh, my goal is first and foremost the largest family possible, and secondly One Piece, which is why we're making our way to the Grand Line. Luffy said. It's nice to have more than one goal. You said you're looking for a cook, so you can't have that many people. Jin said. Well, actually we have like 350 plus the 5 commanders and me. Luffy said. Wow, 350. That's a nice number, but it's still not enough. My captain's crew had over 5,000 and we were wiped out by one man. Jin shouted. Who was the man? Luffy asked. It was the Shichibukai, Mihawk. Jin said. Oh, Hockey. He won't be a problem really. Luffy said, causing Jin to gasp out in shock. Hockey? You call the Shichibukai Hockey? Jin shouted. Yup, he visited sometimes to visit Shanks. You probably woke him up from his nap. He doesn't usually attack pirates unless he's ordered to by the world government. Luffy said. You know, thinking about it, Don Krieg did yell at the man to move his boat. Jin said. That would have done it. Luffy said. I don't know if I should go back to Don Krieg. Jin said. Why not? Sanji asked, deciding to join in on the conversation. Well, the man's cruel for one. He orders us to kill anyone who gets in our way, including their families. It's not nice being his combat commander. Jin said with sigh. Why don't you join us? Luffy said suddenly. Wah. Jin said, shocked. Well, I mean you can't stay here for sure, and my crew is one big family. Secondly, we don't kill everyone, only when there's no other choice and it's not going to bite us in the back later. Luffy said. But what would I do? Jin asked. Well, I still need a vice commander for our heavy combat division. Alvida is starting to go stir crazy with all the paperwork. Luffy said. Are you sure? Jin asked. Yeah, I'm positive. Luffy said with his usual smile. All right, I'll join. Jin said with a smile too. This is nice and all, but I gotta go back in. Sanji said, pushing himself off the railing before heading back in. Come on, I'll introduce you to the others. Luffy said, heading back in too. The other customers seemed surprised that Jin came back in but waved it off. Luffy headed over to his table where his siblings were waiting. Hey everyone, I got a surprise for you guys, especially you Alvida. Luffy said. Oh, what is it? Alvida asked, interested. Luffy presented Jin to them before smiling. Meet your vice commander Alvida. Jin here left the Krieg Pirates for us. Luffy said. Oh, this is great. Less paperwork for me. Alvida cheered, causing the others to groan, though Nami's was suspiciously absent. Nami, do you actually like paperwork? Zoro asked, in almost horror. What? It's nice and calming, plus part of my paperwork involves me reading my subordinates' navigation charts and counting money. What's there not to like? Nami said, offended. Jin started to laugh, shocking everyone else. Haha, this is nothing like it was in my old crew. It's nice and comforting, I like it, Jin said with a smile. Luffy pulled him up a seat so they all could talk. So, Jin, what's your heavy combat specialty? Alvida asked. Oh, I use tonfas with iron balls the size of cannonballs on the end. Jin said. That's an interesting choice of weapon. Judging by the sound of it, you use two. How do you fight like that? I mean, I'm sure I can, but you, Usopp said, before getting hit on the head by Kaya. Usopp, what have I told you about lying if it wasn't to tell a story? Kaya asked sweetly. Not to, Usopp said hesitantly. Good boy, Kaya said. Well, I actually can use them pretty well. I've trained well enough to move and fight with them without problem. Jin said. Oh, well, I'll have fun putting you through the paces, Alvida said with a smirk. Soon enough, though, there came in running. The Shichibukai Mihawk is here. The man yelled, shocking everyone. Did he follow me here? Jin shouted in a panic. Luffy shook his head before replying. Probably not. Destroying the fleet was probably enough for him, Luffy said before heading outside, Zoro following behind fast. Lo and behold, there it was, Mihawk's small coffin-sized ship with him sitting in the center. Luffy didn't seem nervous at all. He even ran up to the docks and waved at the man. Hey Hockey, Luffy yelled, causing Mihawk's eyes to twitch. Luffy, I see you're still wearing Shanks' hat. Mihawk noted. Yup, I have to keep my promise to him after all. Luffy said. And who's this? He asked. Oh, this is the commander of my swordsman division. Luffy said with a smile. I wish to challenge you, Dracula Mihawk. Zoro yelled, causing Luffy to turn his head. You're not exactly at his level right now, Zoro. Luffy said. I know that. but I still have to try. My goal is to become the best swordsman in the world, Zoro said before charging at the man. In an instant, Mihawk was blocking Zoro's attacks with a tiny knife that couldn't even be called a dagger. Every strike that Zoro sent Mihawk's way was instantly blocked in an amount of speed that Zoro couldn't even comprehend. You're certainly tenacious, I'll give you that, but let's see if you can block me, Mihawk said before going on the offensive with a single strike. When the strike hit, Zoro was able to dodge enough using Haki to make it go off its intended target and strike at the right side rather than where his heart was. That caused Mihawk to give Zoro an approving glance. I see you've been training in Haki. You're not exactly that good in it yet, but you are good enough to redirect my attack elsewhere. Tell me, why are you not moving back? Mihawk asked. Because moving back is the exact same as losing. And if I lose, then how can I stand up to my captain, my brother? The same man who I told I would become the world's greatest swordsman by his side as he becomes Pirate King. I'd be going back on my promise, Zoro shouted, causing Mihawk to finally show a smile. Your crewmate is very willful, Luffy. I approve. For then I will use my best sword, the black sword, the greatest sword in the world, Mihawk said, pulling the sword off his back. This is it, Zoro said as he readied his 3 swords as he charged forward. Tri-element sword, Zoro yelled, charging forward and past Mihawk. Everyone was shocked when 2 of Zoro's swords shattered. They were even more shocked when he turned around and braced himself. What are you doing? Mihawk asked. It's shameful for a swordsman to be attacked at the back, Zoro said, smiling. Very well, Mihawk said, before striking Zoro. Zoro suddenly started spurting blood from the chest. Although it wasn't a lot, as the wound seemed to not be that deep, but it'd probably still scar. Mihawk turned to Luffy as if accusing him of something. What did you do, Straw Hat? Mihawk asked. I just made it so that he wouldn't need to be in bed for weeks. We do have someone to kill soon after all, Luffy said. Oh, and who are you going to kill? Mihawk asked, interested. Arlong. He hurt one of my siblings and for that he's going to pay, Luffy said. Seems like you adopted the same attitude as Whitebeard, though it might have to do with Ace, doesn't it? Mihawk said. Shi Shi, what do you think? Luffy asked, laughing. Well, I'll just head on in. I actually came here to kill some time by getting something to eat. Do take care of him. I'll look forward to the day he can actually beat me, Mihawk said before heading into the restaurant. Kaya then rushed up to Zoro and began to start taking care of him by first disinfecting the wounds and then cleaning them. Sheesh, Zoro, I'm going to have to engrave a bed in the infirmary with your name on it at this rate, she said, suddenly hitting Luffy with a memory from his past life. My lord, Mr. Potter, at this rate you're going to have your name engraved on one of these beds if you don't stop getting into trouble, Madame Pomfrey said to Harry. Hey, but it's not my fault that the Dementors approached me mid-match, Harry said sheepishly, causing Madame Pomfrey to scoff. Dementors. In a school, what are they thinking? I've had 40 different students in the past week come to me for Dementor exposure. At this rate, I'll have to pry some chocolate from Professor Lupin, she said with a sigh. Do you think they'll find Sirius Black? Harry asked, worried a bit for his life. Pomfrey sighed before grabbing a towel to start washing one of the bedpans. I honestly don't know. Sirius Black was always a resourceful person. Get some sleep, Mr. Potter, you'll need it later if you want to see your fellow Gryffindors. I heard they're throwing you a party, Madame Pomfrey said before Harry's eyes fluttered closed. Luffy, Nami shouted. Huh, what? Luffy asked. You seemed out of it, what's wrong? Nami asked. Oh, it's nothing, what did you want? Luffy asked. Well, Sanji over here said he wanted to talk to you, she said. Sure enough, Sanji was standing there, looking as if he wanted to ask him something. What is it? Luffy asked. Well, I was thinking about it, and old man Zeph talked to me about it, and I decided I want to join your crew, Sanji said. That's great, but I'm curious, what caused the change of mind? Luffy asked. Well, it was that Marimo. The way he talked about his dream and how dedicated he was to you, it kind of drew me in. Also, the problem that I had was taken care of, Sanji said. What was the problem, if I may ask? Luffy said. Well, you see, a long time ago when I was a kid, the old man saved my life and recruited me as a chef. I felt as if I still owed him a debt of gratitude, but he assured me, quite painfully if I might add, that it was already taken care of, Sanji said, rubbing his face in pain. Well, before you join I have one question. What is your dream? Luffy asked. I wish to discover the All Blue and make the most delicious dishes from it, Sanji said proudly. All right, that's a wonderful dream. Welcome aboard, Commander of the Cook Division and our new brother, Luffy said with a smile. After saying goodbye to everyone and getting back on the ship, Luffy had a meeting with everyone in the conference room. So, I actually have a question for you, Sanji, because this would only work with you, Luffy said. What is it? Sanji asked, trying hard to not flirt with the women present as they were glaring at him. Do you wish for your kicks to be as strong as steel? Luffy asked. Yeah, that'd be wonderful, but how would you do that? Sanji asked, curious. Luffy promptly brought out the now dubbed Devil Box and brought out the Teku no Mi and handed it to Sanji. That is the steel fruit. With it you will become a steel human. It is a Paramecia class fruit, meaning you can't control steel but you can turn into it. Luffy said, this will really work. I mean, the fruit I would have wanted the most would be the Shi Shi No Mi, but this would help my combat skills. Sanji said, what's the Shi Shi No Mi? Nami asked, I don't think you want to know. But yeah, it works. Luffy said, lest Nami unleash her wraith on Sanji again via zapping him with lightning. Alright then, I guess. Down the hatch, Sanji said before eating the fruit, gagging afterwards. Blue, is that awful? Sanji said, causing the others to laugh. Well, welcome to the crew, Sanji, Luffy said with a smile. The 2-week trip that it took to get to Kakuyashi village was filled with a lot of training, specifically for Sanji. The reason being that he had to learn how to control his transformation into steel, as not to randomly turn into steel when he didn't need to. For example, they've already had to repair the deck because Sanji jumped off the stairs and immediately turned to steel, crashing through it. Of course, despite the fact that they were having Sanji train a lot more than everyone else, he had it much easier than Alvida and Nami did. Alvida for the fact that she would slip and fall if she didn't have shoes on, and anything she'd grab would slip out of her hands, making it hard for her to eat at first. Nami, however, on the other hand, had a much different problem. Since she was a Loja type, she would have moments where she lost control of part of her body and it'd turn into differing types of clouds. That made it especially irritating for her because she'd be eating, then all of a sudden her hand turns into a rain cloud and soaks her food. She trained especially hard that day, frustrated that she couldn't eat. On top of that, Loja users generally had a harder time getting checkups from doctors. The main reason being that a Loja type user instinctively will turn into their element if they feel they're going to get hurt. It got to the point that they had to numb the part that they were going to draw blood from and have her look away so they get her blood work done. Besides training his Paramecia powers, Luffy had Sanji training in something else catered just for him, beating the gentleman out of him. Sanji was an unrepentant womanizer to the point that he wouldn't fight a woman. Of course, that wasn't to say that he thought women incapable. It's just the way he was raised was to not hit a woman. So what Luffy did was set him up to spar for long periods of time against Alvida. Why Alvida instead of Nami? Well, Alvida's looks distracted Sanji more than Nami's. Although, that may have to do with the fact that Alvida purposefully chose the tightest outfit she could find so that she wouldn't slip out of it and to enhance her beauty. Nami, on the other hand, had no reason to wear tight outfits, primarily because her penny pinching prevented that. Let it not be said that Nami didn't know how to save Belly. Anyways, it was safe to say by the time they actually reached the Konomi Islands where Kakuyashi village was, Sanji no longer was hesitant to kick a woman. Although he still flirted with every single woman, which was a point of contention between him and Zoro, who seemed to get irritated every time Sanji did so. Luffy believed there was something there, but it wasn't the biggest problem at the time, so Luffy let them be. Hey Luffy, I'm actually dropping us off at Gosa village, Nami said with her hands on the wheel. Why's that? Luffy said, sitting on the railing eating a snack that Sanji had prepared for all of the crew. Well, Kakuyashi village is actually really close to Arlong Park, and if they see the ships then they'd attack us right away. I'm pretty sure you don't want to fight fishmen on their home turf, Nami said. Luffy winced at that. He really didn't want to do that. He occasionally got a letter from his brother, Ace, and in one of them he talked about how he sparred with the fishmen of Whitebeard's crew and got wrecked when the man got in the water. Alright then, take the detour. I don't want any unnecessary casualties, Luffy said. Okay, everyone, we're heading to Gosa village instead, Nami said, speaking through a special Den Den Mushi that Luffy hooked up that allowed instantaneous conversation between the helmsmen. I still don't know how you made those, Luffy, Nami said. I told you before, magic, Luffy said with a laugh. I get that. You explained that to all us commanders, but how does your magic work? Nami asked. Well, do you want the simple answer or the long answer? Luffy asked. Long answer, we've got the time, Nami said, looking attentive. Well, how magic works is it uses the energies in the world to create an effect that normally would go against the laws of nature. In fact, devil fruit work in the exact same way. But the thing is, to create a spell it requires math. Luffy started. Math? Something like magic requires math? Nami asked, not believing it. Alright then, since I know you understand more than enough math, I'll show you the basis of one spell, Luffy said before pulling out the Elder Wand. Using the spell that Voldemort used in his second year, he started creating flaming numbers in the air. At first to Nami it seemed like it was a bunch of random calculus equations, but then she looked forward and saw a pattern. The numbers 7, 3, and 13 keep repeating. Nami said, that's a great eye there. Yeah, in magic there are magical numbers. 7 and 3 are powerful numbers used to enhance a spell. Now tell me what is known about the number 13, Luffy asked. It's a prime number, she asked. Not sure. Don't think logically, think superstitiously. Magic works usually on the beliefs of people, Luffy said. Ah, it's an unlucky number, Nami said. Yeah, so back to the equations, what are they? Luffy asked. Nami took a second look at the equations before realizing in shock. They're all equations for finding out acceleration due to gravity and weight, Nami said. Yep, now think real hard about what throwing 13 in there would do. Luffy said, let's see. If they're all equations for gravity and weight and 13 is considered universally a sign for bad luck, then this is a spell for levitating something or reversing gravity, she asked, smiling when she saw the approval on Luffy's face. Ding, ding, we have a winner. This spell is called Wingardium Leviosa and it allows one to levitate anything without any regards to weight or gravity. Luffy said, wow, so I guess there is a logic-based application for magic. Nami said thoughtfully, yeah, it's called arithmancy. Arithmancy is the art of using formula and magic to either divine the future to a point using probability, unfolding a spell, or create a new one. Luffy said, wait, divine the future? Nami asked, to a point. You can't completely divine a large event because probability doesn't really work like that. What it lets you do is predict the weather even further to even months down the road or predict the likability of somebody doing something. Like give me a second, Luffy said. Suddenly Luffy was generating new numbers in the air before he vanished them all. There's a 98% chance that Sanji's going to come out of the kitchen with a dish especially made for you and it made with tangerines and chicken, Luffy said, while Nami said before they heard a door open. Sure enough, it was Sanji, and in his hand was a chicken dish flavored with tangerines. Sanji walked up to Nami and bowed while keeping the dish upright. Nami Swan, I have prepared a dish for you. It is Sanji started. A chicken dish made with tangerines. Nami asked, H, how did you know? Sanji asked a bit shocked. Never mind that, thank you Sanji, Nami said, taking the dish, Sanji leaving afterwards. How? Normal probability doesn't let you predict things to a point like that, Nami asked. Well, short explanation, it's magic. Long explanation is that when dealing with the probability, magic helps nudge along the more specific details of what could happen. It uses what the person knows about the person they're predicting and suggests the most likely things. Luffy said, that's really neat. Wow, look at that, we're here, Nami said as they pulled into the port. However, they were shocked when they saw what happened to the village. Every house was flipped upside down and there was a giant gorge in the middle of the village. Arlong must have been here, Nami said with a sigh. Hey, sis, wanna see that spell I showed you? Luffy asked before pointing the wand at the houses. Wingardium Leviosa Maxima, Luffy intoned. Instantly the ground shuddered before all the houses lifted up into the air and were placed back on their right side. All the commanders were utterly shocked at the display. That was really cool, Usopp said, with everyone else nodding. I'm not done here. Terra Reformis, Luffy said, waving the wand. Following the gesture, the ground shuddered again before it began to straighten out and repair itself. About a minute later, the ground was as perfect as it probably was before the disaster. Luffy then began to walk into a house, gesturing for them to come on, leaving Jin on the ship to watch over the crew. I'm going to be repairing each of the houses so the citizens can return. I need you guys to help put everything back where it should be, Luffy said, before casting Reparo at the broken objects. So the commanders and Luffy did this for the next hour, taking breaks with Sanji preparing them food and drinks. When they were done, it looked as if the entire village hadn't been touched by Arlong. Suddenly, though, there were people coming into the village, led by a small boy. It was them, Nijiko-san. They repaired the village. The boy shouted to an orange-haired woman with a lot of tattoos on her right arm. Sis? Nami asked, before rushing forward, hugging the woman that the boy was talking to. Hey there, sis. Are you back from your thieving? Who are these people? Nijiko asked. Nami smiled and spun before gesturing with her arm to Luffy and the commanders. Meet my new family, my new crew, sis, Nami said. Nijiko seemed to be shocked but soon quickly smiled. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. I haven't seen Nami this happy in a long time. But what about Arlong, Nami? Nijiko asked. Well, Luffy said he'd help, Nami said, before everyone turned to look at Luffy. Well, for Nami, from here on out the Konomi Islands are under protection by the Straw Hat Armada. Our first act of business as such is the complete and utter removal and destruction of the Arlong pirates, Luffy said with a smile. That proclamation seemed to cause the villagers to cheer and rush the pirates, repeatedly thanking them for saving them and repairing their village. Luffy then had Sanji distribute some food as well as seeds for them to get back on their feet. They had a lot of food after all, since Luffy seemed to eat a lot. Before they left, Luffy saw Nami talking to a man who seemed to have a pinwheel on his hat. On their way to Kakoyashi village and then to Arlong Park, Nami explained that the man was named Genzo, who she and Nijiko saw as a father figure. When they reached Kakoyashi village, the few crew members that had followed them went to where Nami said the tattoo parlor was so they could see if it was any good. From there they stopped at Nijiko's house so they could go over the plan. Alright, so let's each say what we're doing in the plan. You first, Usopp, Luffy said. Right. I'm to sneak around and hide myself in the trees overlooking the compound and snipe whatever ones I can when the commotion starts, Usopp said. Luffy then gestured to Kaya. I'm to sneak around and steal whatever I can using this nifty bag you got me, she said with a smile, patting her tiny bag that was enchanted with an undetectable expansion charm. Alvida, Luffy asked. Right, me and Sanji are going to sneak inside and wait for the commotion to start and then take out any stragglers to prevent them from getting in, she said. Nami, Luffy said next. I'm to take you and Zoro as prisoners to Arlong, where you will get out of the cuffs you created for you and Zoro and attack Arlong. Nami said, where I will be getting rid of anyone who manages to get into the room. Zoro said, all right, let's go. Luffy said. Before they left for Arlong Park though, Nami dug up her chest of 93 million belly and had Kaya store it in her bag. From there they separated. Alvida, Kaya, Usopp, and Sanji made their way into the forest and Zoro and Luffy put on the handcuffs. Nami then led the two to Arlong Park, where the door to the area suddenly opened. Hey, it's Nami, one of the fishmen said. Hey, have you betrayed anyone today? Another asked. Luffy could see Nami's temper waning, but she then suddenly steeled her expression and smiled. Nope, but I do have 2 prisoners to bring to Arlong. Nami said. Oh, who are they? A fishman asked. Oh, just 2 idiots who tried to incite a rebellion among the villagers. Thought Arlong would want to handle them. Nami said. Haha, idiots. Alright, go on ahead. You know where Arlong is. The fishman said. Arlong Park was an interesting looking location. To Luffy it seemed like a lot of the structure of the place seemed to be human-based rather than fishman-based. For a bunch of people who hated humans, it seemed quite odd that they would use human architecture, especially since, according to Nami, Arlong believed that fishmen could do anything better than a human could. The area was surrounded by white walls that had sentry posts dotted across it. On one of the sentry posts, though, Luffy could see a dead fishman and Usopp set up with his rifle. In the center of the area was a giant pool that was more than likely connected to the ocean outside the park, and dotted around the area were bushes. In 2 different bushes Luffy saw Alvida and Sanji hiding, waiting for the signal. The place that Nami was directing them to was a giant pagoda-style building that screamed ego. According to her, the room that she was locked up in a lot to write navigation maps was on the top floor. Soon enough they entered Arlong's throne room, where Arlong himself was sitting. On the side wall, though, Luffy spotted a long pole that had long jagged edges like shark teeth and had a guard like a katana. Oh, Nami, you're back. How was your trip away from my favorite navigator? Arlong asked. Interesting. I have some people who want to see you. Nami said. Oh really? Who are these 2? Arlong asked. My name is Monkey D. Luffy and I'm here to kill you, Luffy said before breaking the flimsy handcuffs and throwing a Gomu Gomu pistol at Arlong, sending him flying into the wall, shocking all the fishmen there. The boss, he's gone too far, one of the fishmen, an octopus type, yelled. The fishman tried to attack Luffy, but Zoro stopped him with his 3 swords. I got these small fries. You deal with the bane of our sister, Zoro said. Hey, don't leave me out. I still have some anger to work out on them, Nami said, bringing out her bow staff as she and Zoro engaged the enemies. Well, it looks like it's me and you, Arlong, Luffy said, sliding into a ready stance. I guess it is Brat. I'm not going to let you take my navigator. She's better than any fishman, Arlong said before he ran forward to punch at Luffy. The 2 began trading blows as the background was filled with the sound of metal hitting flesh, and metal hitting metal, as well as in the far distance screams of panic. What did you do? Arlong growled as he threw a punch. Oh, my friends are taking care of your men outside, so it can be just me and you, Luffy said, dodging it with haki. How are you dodging? Arlong said, getting madder and madder as Luffy dodged each of the strikes. It looks like someone's getting mad. Maybe I'm just better than you, Luffy said, punching Arlong in the face. Arg, that's it, Arlong yelled before running to the wall and grabbing the sharp weapon Luffy saw earlier. Ew, that's Boss Kiribachi. He's totally going to win now, said the octopus who was fighting Zoro. Ah, shut up and fight or you're going to be too easy to kill, Zoro yelled, almost cutting off one of the octopus arms. Back with Luffy, he was dodging the man's wild strikes with the sharp weapon. Of course, with the weapon's long range, Luffy was still getting small cuts from it. Getting tired of dodging, Luffy swung back his arms, it stretching from his rubber-like quality, before he let it fling forward from the momentum. Gomu Gomu bazooka, Luffy yelled, striking the weapon. Arlong's eyes went wide when the Kiribachi shattered upon impact. How? Arlong yelled. Oh, Arlong, have you never taken a physics class? The more momentum an object has, the more power being it, Luffy said. Arg, Arlong growled before dashing out of the room, where Luffy followed. Luffy sighed when he saw Arlong jump into the water. He then nodded at Nami, who nodded back as well. Haha, you can't beat me now that I'm in my natural terrain, Arlong yelled. Arlong then swam around, gaining speed before he flew out of the water and flung himself, sharp nose first, at Luffy. Shark dart, Arlong yelled. Luffy quickly managed to throw up a pratigo to block it. Luffy was close because Arlong managed to penetrate a lot of the shield, his nose being inches from Luffy's face. You know, I feel like there's a dart game joke somewhere in here, Luffy muttered before using the Elder Wand to cast a Depulso, knocking Arlong back into the water. You idiot. What's the point of knocking me into the water? Arlong laughed. That's the point, Luffy said, pointing at the sky where there was suddenly a giant thunderstorm. Now Nami. Luffy yelled. Aye, brother. Ask Vader dance. She yelled, swinging her staff down. No, Arlong yelled, trying to escape, before lightning came striking down as if an angry god was smiting him from the thunderclouds. When the thunderstorm cleared as well as the water from the resulting explosion, it revealed a very hurt and unconscious Arlong floating on top of the water. That immediately caused the remaining fishmen that were alive, as there were a lot of dead bodies around them, to panic. Don't kill us please, the octopus yelled, along with some of the other fishmen. Well, what's your name? Luffy asked the octopus. Hatchin, but most call me Hatchai. Sir, Hatchai said. Well, your friends have two choices. You can either leave and never come back or join my crew. Luffy said. Wait, join your crew. I'd figured you'd hate fishmen. Hatchai said. Nah, we only hated Arlong. Plus, if you join our crew, you become part of our family. Luffy said. Would I be able to start my own takoyaki stand? It's been my dream. Hatchai asked tentatively. Why now? That's why we all became pirates, to achieve our dreams. We'd even help you. Luffy said. All right, I'll definitely join you. Hatchai said. That actually did it with the rest of the fishmen who agreed to join. It seemed that they were waiting on Hatchai's opinion before deciding. So, with that, Luffy had gained 15 new crew members, including Hatchai. Hatchai, however, asked if he could make his way over to Fishman Island to start his business. Luffy agreed and gave him a waterproof Den Den Mushi and told him to make weekly reports. Luffy then looked at Arlong's unconscious body inside. What's up, Captain? Alvida asked. Hatchai weighed up. Luffy said. Hatchai stopped from where he was turning to jump into the water and looked questioningly. Luffy reached into the pouch he always carried and pulled out 2 vials and walked over to Arlong. What are you doing? Nami asked. I'm giving him a second chance. Luffy said. Instantly Nami was furious at him for that. Why? You saw what he did to my village. Why does he deserve a second chance? She shouted. Luffy sighed before giving her a look. We're pirates, but we're not cruel. Arlong's circumstances were primarily because of the evil deeds of the celestial dragons. This time around he can be raised correctly. Luffy said. Raised correctly? What do you mean? Hatchai asked, confused. Luffy knelt down and pulled Arlong's body to the surface. Uncorking 2 bottles, he poured them into his mouth and made him swallow it. It worked rather instantly. Arlong's body began to shrink until he was the size of a 2-year-old. What did you do? Kaya asked, curious about the potions. The first one was a de-aging potion. This kind of potion only really works once because otherwise you'd be able to live forever. It made him about 2 years old. The second one is a memory eraser. I've wiped all his memories up to until he was 2. It'll be up to you, Hatchai, to raise him kindly this time, Luffy said, handing the now sleeping and fully healed 2-year-old Arlong to Hatchai. Hatchai gave him a curious look but accepted the bundle of baby fishmen and nodded. He then turned to the open waters and dove in, making sure not to jostle the sleeping child. Nami stared at Luffy for a few minutes before sighing. Fine, I guess I understand. I don't like it, but I understand, she said. From there they made their way to Kakoyashi village, where surprisingly everyone was waiting eagerly. Arlong's gun, everyone, Nami yelled, causing the villagers to break out into cheers. About 30 minutes later you could see everyone partying all over the village with food and drinks served by Sanji and his cooks. Of course, Sanji was spending that time flirting with any woman that he found, which seemed to be pissing of Zoro. That flirting led to Sanji being punched a lot or receiving compliments. Surprisingly, he didn't drop any food when he got punched. Also, during the party was when Kaya revealed what treasure she got from Arlong Park. The first thing she pulled out was a bunch of navigation maps. I figured you'd want to burn these, Kaya said. Everyone then watched as Nami burned all the maps with glee. Following that, Kaya began bringing out chests, making sure to leave Nami's in there. From what I counted, there's like 350 million belly in there. I'm assuming that that's from the taxes that Nami said he collected from you. Kaya asked. Why yes, but there should be more, Nijiko said. He probably spent a lot of it. Well, Nami wants to apparently give it all back to the village. Kaya said. No, you have to at least take 150 for saving our village. We can do perfectly well on 200 for ages, Nijiko said, the villagers nodding in agreement. Gee, thanks guys, Nami said with a smile. With that, Kaya put the 150 they said they could have back in the bag. She then began pulling out random items. The first one was an hourglass-like item, but instead the middle was round and there was a needle in it. At the base was the words Fishman Island. I don't know what this is, but this looks like a compass of some sorts, Kaya said. I know what that is, Luffy said. Really? Kaya asked, interested. Yeah, it's an eternal log pose. Shanks told me about these, Luffy said. What's an eternal log pose? Nami asked, now interested. Well, first you have to understand what a regular log pose is. A log pose is an item used in the Grand Line to navigate from island to island. This is because a normal compass gets messed up from each island's individual magnetic field, Luffy said. So we'll need a log pose before we can even think of navigating the Grand Line. Nami asked, Yeah, we should be able to get one in Logtown. I want to stop there anyways to see the execution stand. And we have to pick up the bounty. Anyways, an eternal log pose is a bit different. It's attuned to a single island permanently, unlike the log pose which changes after being on an island for a while. This one's attuned to the Fishman homeland, Fishman Island. Luffy said, "That's weird. Shouldn't the fishmen know how to get to their own island?" Usopp asked. Arlong had gotten that from when he was in the Sun Pirates. Each of the members had one to feel like they each had a bit of home with them. One of the fishmen that joined Luffy said, "I guess that makes sense." Nami said, "The other things that Kaya brought out of her bag were various swords and weapons as well as supplies." The villagers decided to split up the items and give half of the swords and weapons to Luffy and crew, as there were more weapons than there were villagers that could actually use them, and a fourth of the supplies to Luffy. That was all that Kaya had found other than clothing which there was really no use for. So, from there they partied on till morning. Luffy and gang had decided to stay in port for about 2 weeks so they could all get their tattoos done. After that was done, both the tattoo parlor and the crew were very happy. Each of the commanders and the one vice commander proudly had their tattoo on their back. Nami of course got another tattoo as well to go over her Arlong Pirates tattoo. It was a tangerine with a windmill to remember her sister and her father figure. Of course, before they left, Jin approached the commanders with 10 crew members of differing divisions. "Captain, why is Jin here with these men?" Alvida asked. "To Shi Shi, I asked him to test the crew members and find the 8 strongest fighters and the 2 strongest healers to stay behind after left so they could watch over the village." Luffy said, "Yep, and I found them. They're really good and have their observation haki down good enough for anything they'd encounter in the East Blue. Plus their fighting skills are really top-notch." Jin said, "All right, perfect," Luffy said with a smile. From there, Luffy handed them a special Den Den Mushi that could do long-range communications and couldn't be tapped, that he had enchanted using magic and runes. It would work for now until he finished his idea for a special project. They then made their way to their ship and set sail, waving goodbye to the villages and smiling at the flag that was raised high in the sky. It was time to go to Logtown and then to the Grand Line. About a week or so later, the commanders were lounging on the lush green grass of Nami's tangerine grove that she had brought from Kakoyashi. After seeing the fact that the Going Merry had lush grass on it, they decided to outfit the other 2 ships with it. On the Goddess Sticks, the name they chose for the ship that was originally Alvida's, the entire back part was outfitted with grass and dirt and was filled with a grove of Nami's tangerine trees as well as a garden off to the side. On the Going Merry there were tiny trees beginning to grow, having planted seeds in that one. On the Kerberos, the tiny ship that Luffy started out on, there was a small patch of grass that was also used for farming. The reason behind the gardens was for self-sufficiency. If they could grow a lot of their crops, they could cut down on how much they spent on food. Also, it didn't help that regulating the temperature and weather around the crops was really good training for Nami. The group was enjoying the nice weather that Nami was giving them, telling them that after they head out from Logtown, she'd make it rain so the crops could get some water. Soon, though, there was a bird with a pouch that read newspapers that was looking at Nami. "Oh, cool, it's here," Nami said, getting up and stretching before walking over to the bird. "What is it, Nami Swan?" Sanji said, laying on the lawn as well. "It's the newest newspaper. I usually get it to check the new bounties or what's happened in the past week or so." It seemed the bird finally managed to find me, Nami said before taking a newspaper, the bird seeming to want more money. "Gah, I swear if you keep increasing the price I won't buy from you," Nami said before paying the bird the amount it wanted. Opening it up, 6 pieces of paper slipped out on the ground, revealing what they were. They were 6 new wanted posters, each with familiar faces, because they were their own faces. The first one was Luffy's reading Monkey D. Straw Hat Luffy, and his bounty was surprisingly at 60 million belly. "What? That's an outrageous amount for a first bounty," Nami said. "Maybe the Marines are just frustrated that Luffy's been doing all the work they couldn't. I mean, he's been saving towns left and right," Zoro said. "To Shi Shi, I mean, that isn't false," Luffy said, laughing. The next one was actually Nami's and not Zoro's like the others thought. Hers read The Storm Witch Nami, and her bounty was at 50 million belly. "Wow, they got creative with the name," Nami said. "You're not surprised at the bounty?" Alvida asked. "Nah, if Luffy got 60 million then ours would have to be up there too. They probably made it 50 million because I'm a devil fruit user," Nami said. Following Nami's was Zoro's, which read Pirate Hunter Roronoa Zoro. Zoro's bounty was just below Nami's at 45 million belly. "They do know that Marimo's not a pirate hunter anymore, right?" Sanji asked, making Zoro mad. "Shut up, curly brow," Sanji snarked back. However, before the two could even start fighting, both Nami and Alvida slammed their fists on their heads. After Zoro's was Alvida's and Sanji's at 40 million belly. Sanji's epithet was Black Leg Sanji. "Thank the blue they changed my picture. This one looks so much better," Alvida said. "It looks as beautiful as ever, Alvida Swan." Sanji said, causing Alvida to roll her eyes. The last one was Usopp's, which read Usopp the Killshot Sniper. His bounty was only a tiny bit less than Alvida's, and Sanji's at 35 million belly. That's actually a really nice epithet, really fitting of an awesome sniper like me. Although why is it the lowest, and why doesn't Kaya have one? Usopp asked. It's probably because in a battle where somebody knows where you are would be one you might lose. Also, Kaya didn't get one because she wasn't seen really. The only thing she did was steal. Luffy said, lying back down on the grass. Should we throw a party for the bounties? Sanji asked, curious as to know whether he'd need to prepare a lot of food. No, we'll save it for after we get into the Grand Line. That way we don't exhaust our supplies by throwing consecutive parties, Luffy said, putting his hat over his eyes. So, Nami, how long do you think it'll be till we get to Logtown? Zoro asked, laying back down. Shouldn't be long actually. We should get there in maybe an hour. Nami said, speaking of Logtown, brother, how are we going to split up? Kaya asked, laying right by Usopp. Well, I figured that Nami could turn in the random bounties with Alvida and Kaya and afterwards make their way to the market to buy the necessities like medical supplies, toiletries, books and the such. Luffy started. That sounds like a good idea. We do need more medical supplies and the library needs more medical books. Kaya said, MHM, and Sanji can head off to get food supplies, and although I'll regret this, recruit someone for me. Luffy said, why would you regret it? Jin asked, having arrived a few minutes ago from finishing his training session with some of the heavy combat division members. It's probably because the person's a female. Zoro scoffed. Zoro's actually right. The person I'm having him recruit is his vice commander. Her name's Carmen, specifically 5-Alarm Carmen. Luffy said, why her? Alvida asked, curious. I heard she's been looking for a challenge and that she's a good fighter with her fan. Luffy said, you also probably want her to taper off Sanji's flirting with every female he serves food to. Nami said. Luffy gave a chuckle at that. Nami was telling the truth about that. Every time come food time, Sanji would flirt with the women and glare at the men. Carmen would hopefully balance that out. That too, Luffy said over Sanji's protests. Just be glad you got him out of the phase where he'd refuse to fight females. Alvida said. Hey, that was all you, Luffy said, causing Sanji to wince at the memories of Alvida beating the crap out of him. He still had bruises from the last training session. What about me, Usopp, Zoro, and you? Jin asked. Well, I'm actually going to have you and Usopp stay here. Logistically, you two are the best to guard the ship. Usopp because he can pick off anyone from the crow's nest. You because you can easily overwhelm anyone, Luffy said. Luffy then got up into a sitting position, putting his hat back on. He then gestured to Zoro. As for Zoro, he needs to pick up 2 new swords. The swords that he's been using from the ship's stock hasn't exactly been working for him, Luffy said, Zoro nodding at that. Yeah, they're a bit off balance, Zoro said. I'll be heading straight to the execution site. I want to have a look at it. Please try not to cause too much trouble. There are Marines here, Luffy said. Soon after Luffy finished saying that, one of the lookouts in the crow's nest yelled that they saw Logtown ahead. With that, they got ready, with Nami handing out a set amount of money, telling them she wanted them to make the most and hopefully come back with some left over. From there, they all went their separate ways. With Nami, Alvida, and Kaya, they quickly made their way to the bounty office. It was there they were met by a man sitting at a desk with wanted posters behind him. He seemed a bit shocked at first when he saw them, but gladly handed over the money for the random bounties that the crew had collected over the past month or so. Nami was just glad that the bounty office accepted other forms of identification other than body parts. Sure, Luffy could preserve them with a preservation spell, but it was the principle of the thing, you know. The three gladly walked out of the office 12 million belly richer. From there they made their way to the shopping district, where they first stopped at the nearest pharmacy. Let's see, what do I need? Kaya said, browsing the shelves. You're really smart, you know, Kaya. I can't even understand half of this, Nami said, causing Kaya to blush. But sis is the best at navigating and handling money. I wouldn't even know the first thing about those things, Kaya said. Well, we're all smart in our own ways. It's why Captain picked us to be commanders. Nami sis has got her skills in navigation and finances. Kaya sis has her skills in the medical field, and I have my skills in heavy combat, Alvida said with a smile, causing the others to smile. As Kaya was looking through the medicine section, though, she had a wistful smile on her face. You know, I'm really glad Big Brother picked me and Usopp up that day in Syrup Village. Life was never this exciting, and it's really nice having this big a family, Kaya said. Nami and Alvida smiled and nodded at that. Yeah, I'm glad Captain found me that day and gave me my devil fruit. Not only do I look amazingly beautiful, I also have a family as well, Alvida said. Same here. I don't know where I'd be if he'd never found me that day. I'd probably still be working for Arlong, Nami said. It didn't take long after that, though, for Kaya to find everything that she needed and purchased it all. Their next destination was one that Nami knew they needed before they even got on the Grand Line, log poses. So with that, Nami took them into a navigation store where they saw a large collection of log poses. There were even ones with 3 needles. That one, Nami decided to ask the manager what they were. "Hey sir, what's the difference between the single needle log poses and the triple needle ones?" Nami asked. "Oh, those. The 3 needle log poses are for the New World, the second half of the Grand Line. The islands there have much wilder magnetic pulls, so each needle will point to a different island." The man said. "Ah, thanks, that'll be useful to know for later. Well then, I think I'll take these 5 log poses, the stack of navigation paper, and the pens," Nami said, paying the man. After that, they made stops at different places to pick up various supplies for the ship, very thankful that Luffy had given them expanded bags to carry everything. Their last stop was the bookstore, as they knew it'd take them a while there. With Sanji, though, it was a bit different. Sanji made his way first to the food market so that he could stock up on food, also very grateful for the expanded bag. It was buying ingredients for food that he actually picked up a bit of information. "Did you hear that there's going to be a cooking competition in about 10 minutes? A woman said. "Yeah, there's about 5 minutes before the deadline to register," said the man the woman was talking to. "Well, I heard that 5-alarm Carmen was participating," the woman said. That caught Sanji's attention. He did need to see if he could recruit Carmen, so his best bet was to enter the cooking competition. With a sigh, Sanji made his way over to where the cooking competition was taking place and signed up. The first few rounds were a joke to Sanji. The opponents were pathetically easy to beat, probably entering just for the prize, which was a high-quality tuna which would probably make a wonderful dish. However, soon enough Sanji reached the final round where he met his target, a beautiful pink-haired woman wearing a stunning red flamenco dress. "You must be the beautiful Carmen," Sanji said, holding back his swooning. "I've been waiting for this moment, actually, to prove myself to be the best chef in the East Blue. I'd cement my place if I can beat the infamous Black Leg Sanji," Carmen said, waving her fan. "Oh, then how about a bet? If you win, I'll proclaim you the best chef in the East Blue, but if I win, you join my captain's crew," Sanji said. Join an up-and-coming crew. That does sound like a nice challenge. And if I win, the rumored second best chef in the East Blue proclaiming me to be the best would boost my popularity." "I agree," Carmen said. "Great. Your intelligence definitely matches your beauty," Sanji said, catching himself from swooning, again remembering the pain from the last sparring match with Alvida. The final match then began. Carmen dazzled the audience with her unique style of cooking, which consisted of dancing and catching the ingredients in the pan and chopping them mid-air with her fan, which seemed to have razor-sharp blades at the end. To Sanji, though, he was able to tell what her specialty was. Carmen's specialty was true to her epithet. She specialized in spicy-type dishes, though he could tell that she was good at other kinds as well. Sanji's style of cooking, however, seemed pretty simple to everyone, as he didn't really do any flair other than seemingly juggling and tossing in the ingredients. When they finished cooking, they presented their dishes to the judges. In the end, it was a unanimous vote, and they chose Sanji as the winner. "Well, I guess you are the best chef in the East Blue, and I guess I'm joining your pirate crew. What's my position?" "Low chef," she asked, expecting the worst. "Nope. A beauty like you, according to my captain, is getting the vice commander spot in the cook division. You'll be heading the division with me," Sanji said, shocking her. "I'm helping you lead a division. Your captain trusts me that much?" she asked. "Ah, well, Luffy's an easy, trusting person. While normally that'd get most people in trouble, he seems to know who to trust. Also, according to said captain, I'm supposed to give you this speech," Sanji said before rolling his eyes. Sanji stood straight and coughed before he spoke. "The Straw Hat Armada is a family, which makes us all brothers and sisters in arms. So, don't be shocked when the crew members call you Big Sis," Sanji said. "Oh, well, this seems like it'll be fun," Carmen said with a smile. Over with Zoro, the first thing he encountered was a woman managing to beat up 2 guys and then somehow trip on thin air afterward. What shocked Zoro, however, was the fact that the woman looked exactly like his childhood friend Kuina. He helped her up, to which she promptly thanked him. "Thanks, I don't know why I'm so clumsy. My name's Tashigi," Tashigi said. No problem. My name's Zoro," he said. He really was trying not to be uncomfortable with looking at this woman. The resemblance really was tripping him up. "Oh, you have the same name as the pirate hunter. What a coincidence. I see you're a swordsman," Tashigi said, looking at his sword. "Yeah, I'm looking for 2 more swords," Zoro said, feeling a tad bit uncomfortable around the woman who looked like his dead childhood friend. Yeah, his previous efforts to remain unperturbed from her appearance was not working. "Huh, you also used the same 3-sword style as him. Well, I know the perfect place. Follow me," Tashigi said with a smile. The woman led him through the crowd before they ended up at a sword store. The store was filled to the brim with different swords in barrels, racks, and even on the wall. At the counter was a black-haired man who seemed to recognize Tashigi. "Ah, Tashigi-san, you're here to pick up your sword?" the man asked. "Yes, Ipponmatsu-san. I'm sorry it was in the condition I brought it to you," she said, bowing. It's no problem, but you really need to stop being so clumsy, the man said. He had remembered how she told him how the sword had ended up like that. Apparently she had tripped and somehow lodged her sword in a wall, chipping it all over. It's not my fault I'm clumsy outside of battle, Tashigi whined. Well, oh, who's this? Ipin Matsu asked. Oh, this is Zoro. He said he needed 2 swords, Tashigi said. The man gave Zoro a calculating look before he nodded. Zoro was clearly a good swordsman judging by the 3 swords, he observed. It takes a lot of effort to be able to use that many. How much do you have? He asked. I have like maybe 600,000 belly. Though the person who watches the money in our group told me to make sure to come back with some money left over if I can. Zoro said. You won't be able to find 2 good swords for 600, maybe 1 good sword and 1 from the bargain bin over there, Ipin Matsu said, pointing over to a bin in the corner. While Zoro was looking through the bin, he overheard the shopkeeper talking to Tashigi. The conversation was consisting about talk about her boss. Your boss Smoker has made it hard for me to do business, saying it's illegal to do business with pirates. The man groaned. Well, pirates shouldn't be able to use swords anyways. They'll just use it for nefarious deeds. Swords should be in the hands of people who fight for justice, Tashigi said. But still, it's hard not to do business with pirates. This is Logtown after all. Pirates are here a lot, the man said. Which is why he tends to overlook a lot of businesses who are just trying to make a living, Tashigi said. However, Zoro soon found a sword that caught the attention of the shop manager. The man seemed to have a panicked look on his face as Zoro was reaching for it. I wouldn't pick that sword if I were you, the man said. Why not? Zoro asked. Well, it's the Sandai Kaitsu, a cursed blade. Anyone who's had that sword has ended up dead one way or another. I've been having a hard time selling it, the man said. Zoro just scoffed before speaking. Well, let's see whose luck is better, my luck or the sword's luck, Zoro said. Zoro then took the blade, unsheathed it and tossed it in the air, causing the other 2 to panic. However, the sword harmlessly missed Zoro and landed blade first into the floor. Well, it seems like it won't be cursed for me. I'll take it. How much? Zoro asked. Nothing. For a swordsman like you, it's free. Also, take this, the man said, heading upstairs before coming down with a sword. Zoro was really confused about it. Nobody just gave a sword they had in their attic to just anyone. What's this? Zoro asked, telling it was a good sword by the quality. It's a family heirloom, Yubashiri. A swordsman like you would do it proud, the man said, handing Zoro the sword. Thanks a lot, Zoro said, bowing and taking the sword, holstering it on his hip with his other sword and Sandai Kaitsu. From there he said goodbye to the 2 people and left the store, making his way back to the ship. Luffy's journey to the execution stand was uneventful. When he got there, it was surrounded by people who seemed to be chatting to each other. With a smile, he launched himself up onto the stand with a smile and sat down at the edge. That seemed to shock everyone there, causing people to stare at him. Not 10 minutes later was he surrounded by Marines who were yelling at him to get off. Soon enough, though, a gray-haired man smoking a cigar with a large sword at his back was walking forward. Straw Hat, I've been looking for you, the man said. And you might be, Luffy asked, swinging his legs at the edge of the execution stand. Captain Smoker of the Marines, the man said, staring firmly at Luffy. Let me ask you a question then, Smoker-san. Why are you a Marine? Luffy asked. He was hoping he'd get a good answer from the man. I mean, there has to be good Marines, right? From personal experience, the world wasn't as black and white as people wanted it. To capture pirates like you for justice, the man said gruffly. Suddenly there was a dark laughter coming from Luffy. This wasn't the answer he was looking for at all. In fact, it was complete opposite. This was a man who bought into the justice of the Marines but didn't question the ideals themselves. Justice. You fight for justice. Is it your justice or the justice of the people like the world government who condone slavery and cruel experiments? Luffy said, as a memory flashed in his mind. By order of the United Nations, all magicals are to be either enslaved for experiments or put to death. Anyone caught aiding a magical will be executed in kind. The justice of the Marines isn't like that, Smoker argued. Luffy scoffed at the man, rolling his eyes. The man was half-heartedly trying to argue against him. But Luffy was pretty damn sure that the man knew he was right. You're just lying to yourself. Most citizens know that the Marines answer to the world government, who in turn answer to the Tenryubito, the celestial dragon. Why do you think so many citizens choose to become pirates over Marines? Luffy asked, as another memory flashed in his head. We, the citizens of this world, will not let this inhumanity stand. We will free the magicals who are people just like us, just with special skills. We will not let the United Nations, no the 20 kingdoms stop us, the Great Kingdom. But still, Marines help people, Smoker yelled, getting desperate as the citizens around them seemed to be agreeing with Luffy. While Smoker had a point, it wasn't enough, especially because Luffy knew that things can end bad if you end up helping a person that becomes an enemy of the government. Help? What good does that do when you end up helping the wrong person who ends up a target of the world government because they're doing something like help slaves? What happens when you end up getting executed for helping that person? Luffy said, another memory flashing in his mind. For their crimes against the world government for helping the threat called Magicals, these traitors will be executed in public in 3 days. Carl D. Rogers was a martyr to inspire the freedom and rebellion against the world government, you know. Luffy asked, everyone listen. I have completed a ritual that will have mass changes in the environment on the earth. It will change the lands and seas and will erase the history of the past 100 years and make anyone unable to speak of, remember, or write down that history except for a select family that I have picked. With my execution, I, Harry James Potter, will activate the ritual and end the war. That ritual had changed everything. But at the same time, it seemed to change nothing. Powerful magic like that had a drawback, and it seemed like it picked the 20 enemies that Luffy had, as Harry, to remember as well. But nevertheless, it did its job and the threat was less than it was back then. What does that have to do with anything? Smoker asked. Simple. Will you fight for your own justice or fight for the corrupt justice of the world government? A long, long time ago, a young man fought a war that was being fought between two groups. One group wanted to enslave and experiment on or execute the people that the other were protecting. In order to end the war, the man willingly allowed himself to be executed in order to save everyone. With his death, the war was ended and billions were saved, Luffy said. But at the same time, a lot of people were dead. It was times like then that Luffy wondered if the rewards outweighed the consequences. Why would the war end if the man was executed? Smoker asked. Because, with his death, something had happened that caused everyone to forget what the war was about. Of course, the second group was thrown to the winds, but at least the war had ended. Now, that first group used to be the governmental body of the world. Would you have fought with the second? Luffy asked. Luffy was really hoping that the man would choose the right option. Of course, Smoker yelled. Shi Shi. Well, Smoker-san, you're better than most Marines. While this was fun and all, I'm sorry to say, but I must get going, Luffy said, standing up on the stand. Luffy then smiled, spun on the spot, and suddenly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes, shocking everyone there. Elsewhere, while everyone was back on the ship, the crew and commanders jumped in shock when a loud crack rang out and Luffy appeared on his ass on the ship. Well, how the hell did you do that, Captain? Alvida asked. Magic. And oh boy, do I have to get used to apparition again. It's been forever since I've actually used it, Luffy said, groaning and dry heaving. He hadn't used it since he was a kid back with Ace and Sabo. Well, more like since he was with Ace. He remembered using apparition to escape people chasing after them. Ace never did like it. Sabo somehow got used to it in a day. That had prompted an angry spar between the two because Ace was jealous. Sabo, of course, won. But anyways, 3 years of not apparating tends to make the body forget the procedure. Apparition. If it's that bad, why do you use it? Nami asked. Apparition is the magical ability of being able to teleport from one place to another. In order to use it, you must understand the 3 Ds. Determination, the want or need to be in that place. Destination, you must have the location firmly in mind and know what it looks like. And deliberation, you cannot do it in a rush or you will risk splinching, Luffy said. Boy, was Luffy grateful that as a kid he made sure to prepare potions that could heal splinching. He can't really remember the amount of times he ended up splinched when he was retraining his body to apparate. What's splinching? Kaya asked. As it sound like something medical? It's basically losing a piece of your body in the process of apparition, Luffy said, shocking the others. Really, it wasn't that bad. You'd think they'd realize that with magicals, if there's a problem they'd use magic to solve it. Then you shouldn't use it, Kaya shouted in shock. However, Luffy just waved her off. It's not that bad. I know a potion and a spell that fixes it, Luffy said. Potions? Kaya asked, curious. Oh yeah, I forgot I have something for you. Give me a second, Luffy said before disappearing into the ship. About 10 minutes later, Luffy came back with 2 journals and handed them to Kaya. The first one read Monkey D. Luffy's Guide to Magical Plant Interaction, while the second one said Monkey D. Luffy's Guide to Potion Making. It had taken him a while to make these, and hilariously it was actually Sabo who had written the books. Despite the years he had mentally, his handwriting still sucked. Having Sabo write the books was interesting because every other line Sabo would ask a question about how it worked. Luffy was glad at that moment that he had learned everything about potion theory after leaving Hogwarts. Wouldn't I need magic to make these? She asked. Nope. Potion making is the one aspect of magic that actually doesn't need it, Luffy said. Then what makes it magic? Usopp asked. Not understanding. It's the plants, isn't it? Kaya asked, glancing back at the first book. Luffy gave her a smile, as she had gotten it right. Yes, for reasons I won't exactly explain yet. Every single plant and animal in the world has magic in it, Luffy said. Why won't you explain? Nami asked, perturbed by lack of information. Let's just say I'll explain when we get closer to the new world. The information is rather life-changing, Luffy said. Luffy really didn't want to tell them yet. It wasn't just the fact that the information was life-changing. It was the fact that if he told them and the world government found out they knew, then the world government would waste no resources trying to kill them. However, the commanders and crew didn't like it, but they agreed. They knew that if Luffy wouldn't tell them something, yet he had a good reason for it. Anywho, Jin, Usopp, did you have any problems while we were gone? Luffy asked. I don't know if it's noteworthy, but there was this guy named Buggy who kept demanding to see you so he could kill you. I just batted him away with my weapons. I was shocked when he split into pieces, Jin said, causing Luffy's mouth to twitch. Wait, you batted him like a baseball? Luffy asked, Alvida's and Nami's mouths twitching. Yeah, why? Jin asked, not getting the joke. Suddenly Luffy, Alvida, and Nami all broke into laughter, all muttering the words Buggy and baseball. Soon they calmed down, but when they looked at each other they broke out into laughter again. I don't get it, why are you guys laughing? Carmen, the new vice commander, asked. Well, when me and Alvida here first met Nami we fought Buggy. And Luffy started. Haha, we got rid of him by batting his body parts away. Luffy was the pitcher and I was the batter, Alvida said with a giggle, dropping formality for a second. That caused the rest of the crew to laugh too. After that Carmen walked over to Luffy and saluted. Carmen reporting for duty, sir. She said, to Shi Shi, you don't have to be so formal. Sanji did tell you we're all family here, right? He didn't just flirt with you the whole time. Luffy asked. No he did. Actually, surprisingly, he did both. But I guess I didn't fully understand it, you know, she said, smirking when she saw Alvida and Nami smack Sanji for being a pervert. They were really trying hard to tone it down. Sure, you could be a slight pervert and admire women, but when it gets to you being a womanizer and thinking you had to protect every woman and not fight them, well, Alvida and Nami were just happy that Sanji wasn't a pervert who thought of every woman as a piece of meat to be drooled over. His perverseness was more of the extreme admiration, gentlemanly kind. Well, basically, we're all brothers and sisters. To the crew members you're their big sister, but to us you're just our sister. Although Kaya seems to call me big brother, Luffy said with a smile aimed at Kaya, who turned beet red. Hey, I figured since you're the captain that you'd be our big brother, Kaya said, causing Usopp to chuckle. Usopp thought it rather adorable when Kaya got flustered. Kaya-chan, I don't think brother minds at all, he said, before giving her a kiss on the cheek, having not moved that far in their relationship beyond pecks on the cheek and hand-holding. Well, I guess I understand now, big brother, she said with a smirk and a wink to Kaya. Kaya smiled at her, glad to have something to distract herself from. Of course, that's not to say that Usopp's cheek kiss wasn't enough. Shi Shi, great, Luffy said. Hey, before we leave you forgot to explain the reason you still use apparition, Kaya said, using her doctor voice that the entire crew dubbed. Kaya as a doctor didn't have the scariness that they normally had when they used their doctor voice. Rather, she had a voice that commanded respect and attention rather than fear. Luffy liked that better because fear was no way to get the attention of your patients. The only way that a person will flinch is if they do not have the visual of the place fully in mind or are looking at a picture of it, if they aren't determined enough to go there, or if they rush the apparition. Luffy said. Then why were you dry heaving? Kaya asked. Well, thing of apparition is being pulled through a tube at high speeds. It doesn't hurt the body or mind, but it's still very disorienting. I was dry heaving because it had been a while since I used it, so I wasn't used to the disorientation. I'll be training it back up to shape though, Luffy said. He really needed to, because apparition is dead useful when you need to escape, and he was sure at one point he'd need to use it consecutively and dry heaving wouldn't help at all. Alright, though I want someone to be with you when you do this, or I will put you on bed rest with only soup and no meat, Kaya said sternly. Why yes ma'am, Luffy said, stuttering a bit. While Kaya wasn't scary, she did know what to say to get people to agree. Forcing Luffy to stay put and denying him meat was the best way. Anyways, so you can apparate with just a picture? We'll need to get Den Den Mushi that can take pictures and send them to each other. Just in case we get separated, you can teleport another person with you, right? Nami asked. Yeah. It's called side-along apparition. I'll however only use that in emergencies because it's extremely disorienting on the passenger. And on the topic of something that can take pictures and send them, I might have an idea, but I'll need Usopp's help, Luffy said. A certain piece of technology from the past would really come in handy. Why my help? Usopp asked, confused. Because it requires making something, and I'm not exactly the best when it comes to making what I'm thinking about. But one thing, if Usopp manages to make this item, do not let it fall into enemy hands. Although I'll be putting a failsafe on it that'll destroy it if it falls into the hands of someone other than us. Better safe than sorry, Luffy said. He really didn't need that piece of technology to be reverse engineered by the Marines or anybody else really. Why do you not want it to fall into enemy hands? Zoro asked, interested. Because it's a very advanced piece of technology. One that probably doesn't exist. And no, I can't explain how I know about it, as it has to do with the reason why magic exists in plants and animals, Luffy said. The crew sighed but agreed yet again. Whatever Luffy refused to tell them had to be big as there was a lot of information involved. With that, however, everyone set off to their positions on the ship as they set sail to leave Logtown and make their way to Reverse Mount, the place where they'd enter the Grand Line. The crew knew that it'd take about 2 weeks to get to Reverse Mountain, so they went about their daily tasks. It was with this that Luffy was in the cargo hold with Usopp surrounded by piles of random bits and pieces of technology and a large blueprint on the floor. Usopp was currently fiddling with something in his hand, turning it around occasionally and adding something new. So, if you know what this looks like, then why can't you just conjure it like you do with other stuff? Usopp said. Well, for one, this is a piece of technology that normally runs on battery power, and magic and electronics don't work well together. And secondly, to conjure something complicated like this, you have to understand exactly how it's made and how it works down to the last screw. Luffy said. And something simple like a ladder or a glass is easy. Usopp asked. Yeah, since those items don't really have tiny pieces to them, they're easy to conjure. In fact, there are spells designed to transform an animal into any kind of glass. Luffy said. That sounds really useful. Usopp said. Yeah, it can save you a lot of time if you need water but have nothing to hold it in. Luffy said. It was silent for a bit besides the sounds of Usopp tinkering with the item. Usopp soon, however, spoke up. I have a question, Usopp said. Luffy hummed. Why is it that only you can use magic? Usopp asked, as that had been bugging him for a while. Well, part of it, like I told you guys when each of you joined, is because of that second devil fruit I ate. There's more of a reason for that, but that will have to wait till I explain everything later in the Grand Line. Luffy said. Can you at least give us a reason why we have to wait? Usopp asked. I guess I can give you guys the simplest answer. It's because you're not strong enough. If I were to tell you guys, then the entirety of the world government will be after you. Luffy said, shocking Usopp. What? How could it be something that dangerous? Usopp asked. Well, let's just say from what I read, they executed an entire town just because a few people knew a tiny bit of what I'd tell you. Luffy said. Why would they even do that? I mean, I know the world government is bad, but Usopp trailed off. Well, if this information were to get out, then it'd throw even more flames on the rebellion and it'd be chaos. Luffy said. Then why would you even think about explaining it to us? Usopp asked. Luffy stood up and faced the wall before sighing. You know I lied a bit to Nami about arithmancy. Luffy said. What does that have to do with this? Usopp asked, confused. Arithmancy does have the ability to divine large events, but not to the degree that you know what exactly will happen. Luffy said. So? Usopp asked, not getting the point. Luffy then gave Usopp a grim look. At one point, after we fought Arlong, I used arithmancy to see how our adventure go, so I can be forewarned if something bad would happen. However, the results said that an astronomical disaster will occur in a few months. Luffy said with a sigh. Why are you telling me this? Isn't it the future, so you can't do anything about it? Usopp asked. Not exactly. Arithmancy shows a possible path, but it's been decided that the event will have an impact on the world at large. Not necessarily that something bad is going to happen, but something huge. I'm telling you because you generally know how to strategize on the spot, Luffy said, sitting back down, causing Usopp to smile. Usopp wasn't used to being relied on, but Luffy doing this made him happy. You know I'm touched that you trust me with this and in my skills. Nobody's ever believed in me that much. So, what you're saying is that we'll need to plan? Usopp asked. Yeah, we'll need to plan big time. When the event comes, we have to be ready, I know that much, Luffy said. Alright then. Well, first of all, you'll have to up the training of all the crew members. While they're not bad fighters, if what you said is going to happen, they'll need to be stronger. Usopp started. That's what I was thinking. I was actually thinking about changing the observation haki lessons I've been teaching the commanders to ship-wide, Luffy said. He hadn't done it at first because teaching it in general was rather difficult, but since they were getting more and more commanders, it'd be easier. That'd be a good idea. Hey, is there any way you could get information on how to learn armament haki? Usopp asked. I could ask 2 sources, but I'd be more comfortable with one of them over the other, Luffy said. Why's that? Usopp asked. Well, Shanks is less likely to lose and forget the message than my brother Ace. In fact, knowing Ace, he might accidentally burn it, Luffy said. Ace was a nice and reliable brother, but he was rather forgetful and lost things easily. Sure, you could trust him to remember things about you and important things, but when you give him something on the spot, unless you are there to stress the importance, he'll forget it. That would work, though it may take a while to get a message to him, Usopp said. Not really. I can send a near instantaneous message to tell him to contact us via Den Den Mushi, giving him the frequency number and have him relay the information to me that way, Luffy said. Sometimes your responses don't even shock me anymore, Usopp said, shaking his head before picking up another tiny piece. What else do you think we need to do? Luffy asked. I'd say recruit more people, but at the moment we don't have enough ships for that. Although we do have more room for more commanders, Usopp said. Well, we still have a while to plan. Luffy said. Suddenly though, Usopp cheered and danced in spot. It's done, Usopp said, presenting Luffy with the finished item. There it was as Luffy remembered it from his memories as Harry. In all its glory was a flat-looking item with a glass screen that had a button at the bottom of the screen, one button on the right, and two buttons on the left. On the back of the item was a square-looking thing that had a camera lens on it. Sure, it wasn't as high-tech as the ones from back then, but that's cause they lacked the internet. Luffy was pretty sure that his ritual had destroyed the satellites that allowed the internet to work. Though, if I may ask, why did you only want me to make one? Usopp asked. Because, despite me being unable to conjure one, I can still do this, Luffy said before tapping the item with his wand and saying Gemino Perfectum. Instantly there were 2 exact copies of the item. Luffy continued doing this until there were 20 in total. I thought electronics and magic didn't mix, Usopp asked. They don't, but what Gemino does is briefly scan the item short enough that it won't explode and then duplicates it. Also, it helps that they're not running on electricity at the moment, Luffy said. So, what now? He asked. Luffy hummed and thought for a second before answering. Now I find somewhere to sit with these and a slightly thick needle and begin my part of the work, Luffy said. Well, Nami finished watering the crops earlier this morning, so it should be nice and sunny outside, Usopp said. That'd be perfect, Luffy said, getting up. Luffy and Usopp made their way up to the lawn where Nami and Carmen were laying. Ah, big brother, Carmen said, being the first to notice him. Oh, hey there Luffy, hey Usopp, Nami said, looking up from her book. Hey, Usopp suggested we come up here to finish the project me and him were working on, Luffy said. And I see it was a wonderful idea, as always. Nami, you're a godsend with your weather abilities, Usopp said, sighing as he laid on the nice warm grass, enjoying the breeze. Luffy, however, sat down and set the items on the ground and conjured a needle that was thicker than normal. He then got to work, carving the runes needed onto the back of the items. From the Norse runes for receive, send, touch and sound to the Celtic runes for receive, send, touch, words, letters, pictures to even the Japanese kanji runes for take, touch, and pictures, and finally the Greek runes for time, date, and location. Linking all these runes together was rather difficult, but in his life as Harry Potter, his best friend Hermione Granger had drilled all this into his head. The last piece of the puzzle was a rune that he and Hermione had made together. It looked like a giant D, but what it stood for was magic. He tied all the runes together to this rune. When he finished 2 of them, he pushed magic into them. Suddenly they flickered on and showed a time and date, as well as the fact that the 2 phones were in the east blue. Usopp saw this and cheered at it, catching Nami and Carmen's attention. What is it? Nami asked, curious. Luffy just finished the project. Can we test it, please? Please, Usopp begged. Shi Shi, of course. Nami, gather everyone onto the deck, Luffy said, handing one of the items to Usopp. Luffy quickly explained how to work the item. That when the item began to make noise, he would have to take his finger and swipe the green icon that appeared to the right. He then said he'd explain the rest later. With that, he had Usopp head to the lowest level of the ship and wait there. Soon, though, everyone was on the top floor, looking to Luffy. Well, after about 4 days, me and Usopp finished our project and we're here to test it. Right now I'm going to call Usopp using this item and we'll be able to talk with him in live time and see his face and the stuff around him, Luffy said, causing the crew to ooh and ah. Soon enough, though, Luffy pressed the icon on the screen that said video call. There was a dial tone before the screen went blank and then revealed Usopp's face, sitting in the cargo hold. Wow, this actually works. I can see everyone. Hey guys, Usopp said, waving. Everyone on deck was cheering at the success of the item. So, can I come up now? It's rather cramped down here, Usopp asked. Shi Shi, sure Usopp, Luffy said, laughing, ending the call. So, Captain, what do you call that thing? Alvida asked. It's called a phone, Alvida, short for telephone, which basically is a word for talking long distances. Although I think I'll name these the D-phones, Luffy said with a laugh, as if he was the only one knowing the joke. It was about 3 days later that Luffy decided to contact Shanks, feeling that it would be best for them to get access to armament Haki as soon as possible, with them entering the Grand Line in about 2 to 3 days. So he made his way on deck early in the morning with the commanders and vice commanders. What I'm about to do is a way you can get a message from me even if the phone isn't working. This spell's results are unique to each person and only changes when a person has gone through a life-changing event, Luffy said before pulling out the wand. Expecto Patronum, Luffy intoned, swishing the wand. Everyone watched as an ethereal majestic tiger, the size of a small house, came out of the wand and prowled around before nuzzling Luffy's hand. Go to Shanks and tell him this. Yo, Shanks, this is Luffy, as you probably can tell by the giant mother-freaking tiger. Anyways, I need you to contact me via Den Den Mushi as soon as possible via frequency 707.1. It's rather important, Luffy said, the tiger running into the distance after he finished. Luffy quickly grabbed the Den Den Mushi they had on board and sat down to wait for Shanks' call. So, Luffy, if each is unique then how is it decided? I bet mine would be Nami Swan. Sanji swooned, getting smacked by Alvida. It probably wouldn't actually. The Patronus charm is casted by thinking of the happiest memory in your life. The happier the stronger the charm is. This results in creating an animal based on that memory. Luffy hummed. So, what's your happiest memory? Nami asked. Luffy smiled at the memory that popped up before speaking. Shi Shi No Mi. Most people wouldn't ask what happy memory they use as it's generally very personal to the person. However, I don't mind. The memory I chose is of when me, Ace, and Sabo became brothers by sharing a cup of sake. It was the first time that I felt like I truly belonged somewhere. Luffy said wistfully. Oh, that's so sweet. So where are your brothers right now? Carmen asked. Well, Ace is currently the 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. Sabo, well, I don't know. Me and Ace have a bet though. Whoever finds Sabo first, the other has to join their crew. Luffy said with a smile. Why would you have to find him? Sanji asked. Well, when we were younger, Sabo wanted to start his pirate journey early, so he used the visit of a celestial dragon to escape. However, the celestial dragon saw him and blew up his ship. Luffy said. Then how do you know he's still alive? Carmen asked. Through one of my abilities, I'm able to, for a lack of better terms, call forth a person's spirit, but only if they're dead. Sabo's spirit I could never summon. Luffy said. Suddenly though, the Den Den Mushi began to ring, so Luffy quickly picked it up. Luffy told everyone he needed to take this privately, so he made his way to his room. When he put the receiver to his ear, he was met with a shout. What the hell was that for, brat? Were you trying to give me a heart attack? Shanks yelled. Shi Shi. Not at all. It was the fastest way I knew of contacting you, Luffy said. Before Shanks continued, they could hear him shout to the background for his crew to shut up. Ugh, well, try not to do that early in the morning. You had half my crew panicking over a giant ghost tiger coming to attack the ship. What did you need? Shanks asked. Well, you know how I can divine a bit of the future, right? Luffy asked. Yeah, that arithmancy stuff I never understood. Shanks said. Well, I divined something pretty big that could be really bad too. There's going to be a world-changing event in a few months, Luffy said. There was a pause on the other end before Shanks spoke up. Do you know what the event is? Shanks asked. No, all I really know, and I haven't even told the one person I told what I just said to about this, is that it seems to be taking place at Marineford. Luffy said. I can understand why you wouldn't want to tell him. Marineford's part of the Marine main base and is their execution site. That would mean that part of the event involves the entirety of the Marines, Shanks said with a sigh. Yeah, Usopp already has enough on his mind with what little I told him, Luffy said. Shanks' voice seemed to perk up when Usopp was mentioned. Usopp? You picked up Usopp's boy? Shanks asked, intrigued. Yeah, he's a great sniper and strategist, despite his weird habit of telling exaggerated stories, Luffy said with a smile. Well, the exaggerated stories were decreasing day by day thanks to Kaya, but they still were there. Kaya actually encouraged him to tell the stories as actual fictional stories because it seemed to make everyone happy. Usopp will be proud. So what do you need? Shanks asked. Well, first and foremost I need to get an item to you, Luffy said. We have a bird that can transport anything really fast. Where are you guys right now? Shanks asked. We're just about to enter the Grand Line in 2 days, Luffy said. So, the bird should arrive in about a day and return in 2 days. Shanks mused. Good. The second and last thing we need for now are instructions on how to use armament hacking, Luffy said. Oh, that shouldn't be too hard to do. But learning it is a bit more difficult. It may take you guys a month or so to see any combat use, Shanks said. It's fine. We need to learn it before the upcoming event or we may end up losing a lot, Luffy said. Alright, then I'll start explaining. Got a paper and pen? Shanks asked. The next hour or so was spent with Shanks explaining the process of learning how to use armament hacking. By the time Shanks was done explaining, Luffy had like 5 pages full of information. Luffy then bid farewell to Shanks and hung up. The next day, the bird that Shanks had sent had arrived with a pouch attached to its neck. Luffy put a note that explained how to use the D-phone and the D-phone itself in the pouch before sending off the note. It was the day that they were to ride up Reverse Mountain that the day got a little weird. The day started out normal with the lookout letting them know that it was in sight and they'd be arriving in a few minutes. Nami was on the Going Merry, running navigation drills with her subordinates while Sanji was tending to the crops on Kerberos with the reluctant help of Zoro. Everyone else, however, was on the Goddess Sticks, starting armament training with Luffy instructing and learning alongside them. It was interesting to say the least, especially since the lesson was on the deck. So, Shanks said that the first step of learning armament hacking was meditation in order to feel your will, Luffy said, looking at the notepad. With that, everyone got into a meditation position and began focusing. With Luffy it felt a bit weird. Now, in order to start learning wandless magic, one had to meditate in order to be able to sense their magic core, so to speak. So Luffy, who had never really had to do that this time around, was surprised to find a glowing ball of fire right next to his magical core. Furious, he tugged out it, and seconds later he was shaken out of his meditation by his commanders, who seemed to be trying hard to stay awake. Around him on the deck, those seemed to be his crew members, passed out. Luffy instantly realized what this was. Oops, I think I accidentally used Conqueror's Haki, Luffy said. That's Conqueror's Haki, Usopp asked in disbelief. Yeah, it seems I wasn't supposed to pull on that flame I saw, Luffy muttered. Flame? Alvida asked, curious. Well, I've done this before to be able to use magic without a wand, but I never noticed this ball of flame there. I guess that's the wool that Shanks was talking about, Luffy said. Kaya, always the logical one, spoke up. Maybe you're not supposed to pull on it like you're pulling it out of your body. Maybe you're supposed to, I don't know, thread it through your body, she guessed. That could always work. But reverse mountain's right in front of us now. Can you guys help me wake everyone up? Luffy said, starting to wake the individual members up. By the time that they woke everyone up, they were starting their way up the mountain. The process was really fast, which made sense since according to Nami, reverse mountain was the result of 4 currents merging into each other. Soon enough they were at the top and heading down. However, Luffy saw a problem. At the bottom of the stream was a giant whale. It seemed to open its mouth to yawn, and Luffy saw that it'd be too late for the goddess sticks, but he could prevent the others from ending up in the whale. So Luffy launched himself off the ship and onto the back of the whale, all the while using Wingardium Leviosa to levitate the Going Merry and the Kerberos over the whale. After that was done, he was getting a 3-way conference call from Nami and Zoro, which he promptly answered. What the hell just happened? Nami yelled in panic. Sheesh, calm down, Nami. But yeah, what happened, Captain? Zoro asked. Apparently a whale swallowed the ship. But, wait, what the hell is this? Luffy stated before he noticed something resembling a hatch. Okay, so there's a hatch on the whale. I'm going to see what's happening. Stay here and Nami prevent Zoro and Sanji from fighting, Luffy said before hanging up and heading into the whale. Luffy ended up landing on a fleshy walkway that had a water path in the middle big enough for a ship. As he was wandering around, he heard 2 people down a passage talking about killing the whale for its meat. Luffy quickly attacked the people, a man wearing a crown and a girl with blue hair wearing a blue tank top and green jacket, and threw them in the water, which he was pretty sure was stomach acid. But they'd be alright. They were wearing clothing, and as far as he knew, stomach acid took a while to digest stuff. Straw Hat Armada says no to the killing of innocent animals, Luffy said before walking off, whistling. Soon though, he reunited with his crew, who seemed to be talking to a bald man who was wearing petals on his head. Kaya waved Luffy over to introduce the man to him. Big brother, this is Crocus, and he takes care of Laboon here. He told us a story about how Laboon has been waiting 50 years for his friends to return, Kaya said. But like I said, they're probably dead. They had promised to come back but never returned. Ever since then, Laboon's been ramming the mountain, trying to get back over to find his friends. He can't take much more damage, even with all the help I've been giving him, Crocus said with a sigh. I mean, anything's possible. One of them could still be alive, just in a position unable to visit, Luffy said. It could be that, but I worry for Laboon. Anyhow, let me show you the way out. No use staying in here when I'm sure Laboon's about to start ramming the mountain again, Crocus said. Crocus led the ship through some passageways before they were at the mouth. He then opened up a path out of the mouth, where he followed out using a path that led up. Luffy saw the 2 people he ran into earlier floating around in the water, but he ignored them for now. He turned to Laboon and began to speak. He wanted to prevent the whale from ramming the wall. Laboon, I'll find your nakama for you. If I can't find them, though, we'll visit you every year, Luffy said, causing Laboon to look at him and let out a sound of happiness. Luffy then had Usopp paint their flag symbol on Laboon's scar, since Usopp was the better artist of the whole crew. Now, that's part of our promise. If you ram into the mountain, it'll wash off, so don't, okay? Luffy said. Laboon made some more sounds of happiness before he swam to the side of the stream. Crocus then gave Kaya a few medical books, saying that she'll need them later, and then waved them off as they started their way forward. However, as they started to leave, the 2 people from earlier climbed onto their ship and assumed a begging position. Please take us back to our hometown. We were supposed to get meat, and the whale would have lasted us a long time, they begged. First of all, who are you 2, and where is your hometown? Luffy asked. I'm Mr. 9, the man with the crown said. And I'm Miss Wednesday. Our hometown's called Whiskey Peak. It should be the island that your log pose is pointing to, the blue-haired girl said, giving his commanders a look. He sighed before speaking up. Fine, but don't do anything funny. If you do, we're throwing you overboard and you can swim, Luffy said with a stern look. We promise we won't do anything, the crowned man said. Yeah, we promise, Miss Wednesday replied. Luffy definitely was going to keep an eye on the 2. especially the Miss Wednesday woman, because Luffy could definitely swear that he had seen her before, somewhere in a newspaper or something along those lines. Anyways, Luffy dragged each one of his commanders and vice commanders to the back of the ship with a large crate. "Hey, what are we here for, Captain?" Alvida asked. Luffy chuckled at that before answering. "We've entered the Grand Line, after all. It's a good time for us to reaffirm our ideals," Luffy said cheerfully. Everyone nodded at that. In fact, Sanji decided to go first and put his left heel on the crate to find the all blue. Sanji shouted. Carmen smirked and placed her heel next. "To become the best chef in the world," she shouted. Following her was Alvida, who put her hands on her hips as she placed her heel. "To be known as the most beautiful and dangerous woman in the world," Alvida yelled. Next was Kaya, who giggled and placed her heel. "To become the best doctor in the world," Kaya shouted with a laugh. Usopp followed her and placed his heel. "To become the best sharpshooter in the world," Usopp said with a smirk. Nami rolled her eyes but did it as well. "To map the Grand Line," she said. Zoro was next to put his heel on the crate. "To become the world's greatest swordsman," he shouted. Next was Jin, who gave a bark of laughter before placing his heel on the crate. "To make it through the Grand Line," he yelled. Last and most important of all was Luffy. "To become Pirate King and take down the world government," Luffy said. Normally that would shock the commanders, but Luffy had already told him that part of his dream. They all just smiled and cheered. Their ships on the way to Whiskey Peak. Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday let them know that it would take them about 4 days to get to Whiskey Peak, as it wasn't that far from the entrance of the Grand Line. Despite the fact that he had beat them up back at Reverse Mountain, Luffy had the crew treat them like guests. That seemed to make the two smile and become more friendly. About a day later, though, Luffy's phone rang and on the screen was the name Shanks. Instantly he picked it up and answered. Instantly saw Shanks' face. "Whoa, this thing's cool. Video Den Den Mushi are huge, but this thing fits into the palm of your hand," Shanks said, acting like a little kid who got a brand new toy. "Shi Shi, is that why you picked video call instead of regular call?" Luffy asked, laughing. "Of course. I mean, it's so amazing. I can't believe a piece of technology exists like this," Shanks said. "Well, I had a second motive for giving you that other than keeping in touch," Luffy said. "Oh, what's that?" Shanks asked, causing Luffy to roll his eyes. "You really don't know? It's so Usopp can finally fucking talk to his son," Luffy cursed. "Well, where did you pick up that kind of language?" Shanks said with a smile. "Pirates, Shanks, pirates, and primarily your crew. Also, Ace liked to cuss a lot as a kid," Luffy said. "You know, I'm sad to have never met the kid, but hey, we'll meet one day. Anyways, I guess that does make sense. Usopp's probably really mad at his father," Shanks said, wincing when he thought about it. Luffy's face held a certain measure of uncertainty to it, primarily regarding what Usopp's reaction to his father would be. "I'm not entirely sure if he's pissed off or not. I mean, from what he's told us, he started lying to make his mom get better, trying to say that Usopp was coming back. So at the very least, I imagine yelling, and when they finally meet, Usopp getting a kick to the balls, or even worse, a rock to the balls," Luffy said, making Shanks grimace. "That hurts just thinking about it, but a rock to the balls?" Shanks asked, unable to rein in his curiosity. Luffy chuckled at that before he spoke, wanting to talk about Usopp's improvements. Though, well, Usopp's been tinkering with his guns, and he's gotten his shotgun to be able to shoot both normal bullets and larger projectiles like rocks. There's this button he presses, and it switches the barrels around, allowing for bigger projectiles. He's pretty proud of it, Luffy said with a smile. When Luffy stopped talking, he saw Shanks was looking at him with a smile as well. "What?" Luffy asked. "It's just, you've seemed to finally find a family. Even though you've only just mentioned Usopp, I can tell you smile whenever you mention any of your crew. It's nice," Shanks said. Luffy let up a nervous smile before he spoke at a slightly faster pace. "Yeah, I know what you mean. Gramps, for all his hard training, was a great grandfather, but it always felt like there was something." Luffy started to ramble. Luffy then sighed, thinking back to Ace and Sabo. "I mean, sure, I felt it with Ace and Sabo, but with Ace it was a bit more, and I'm not even sure about that. On top of that, we lost Sabo early on, so. But that's not to say Den Den and the bandits weren't family, but," Luffy said. Shanks just chuckled at Luffy's ramblings, but understood what he was talking about. "It's different with your crew, right?" Shanks said, with a knowing smile. "Yeah, it feels closer and they all make me happy. We're all siblings," Luffy said. "I understand. Well, I better get going and get this to Usopp so he can finally call his son," Shanks said, Luffy saying goodbye before he hung up. Lo and behold, an hour later, everyone could hear Usopp yelling and shouting from his room. Kaya was looking at Luffy inquisitively. "Ah, it's nothing. He's just finally getting to talk to his father," Luffy said. "That explains why he's cursing even though he normally doesn't," Kaya mused. Thankfully later it seemed to have calmed down and Usopp came out, thanking Luffy for the chance to speak to his father. It seemed to be that they had made up. though Usopp assured him that his father was going to get a rock to the crotch when they met. The next day Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday were very confused. "It's not snowing," Mr. Nine said. "Why should it be snowing?" Alvida asked, having been walking past them. "The Grand Line's weather is crazy. This area always snows." "But it's not," Miss Wednesday said. "Oh, that. Nami's the one doing it," Alvida said. "That girl can control the weather," Mr. Nine asked in shocked. "Yeah, she ate the 10 no mi. She's a weather woman now," Alvida said, before heading off, leaving the two shocked people in peace. The next day, however, Zoro pulled all of the commanders and Luffy into a conference room. He had realized something about their new guests and wanted to relay the information before they entered Whiskey Peak. "What is it that you wanted us for, Murimo?" "I was busy cooking a lovely snack for Alvida Swan and Nami Swan," Sanji said. "Yeah, well, I had to cook the snack for everyone else," Carmen said, rolling her eyes. "Shut up, shitty cook. You know those two people we picked up," Zoro said. "What, are they causing any problems?" Luffy asked. "It's not that. I finally remembered why their names sounded familiar. A few years back I was asked to join a mercenary organization that separated in pairs that complemented each other. The men were named after numbers and the women were named after days of the week or holidays. It was called Baroque Works," Zoro said. "Ah, so there's a chance they might betray us at the island?" Jin offered. "Yes, so we better be wary of anything that happens," Zoro said. "Also, it might be best if some of us stay on the ship so if they do betray us some of us can remain unknown. Anonymity is usually the best defense against these kinds of people," Usopp offered. By now every commander had accepted Usopp's odd ability to strategize very easily, so it wasn't a surprise when everyone agreed with him. "I think it should be Usopp, Sanji, and me. We've gotten some time outside the ship so it'd be fair if the others get some time too," Kaya said. "All right then, me, Zoro, Nami, Alvida, Carmen, and Jin'll be heading out then when it comes time to head onto the island," Luffy said, everyone nodding. The next day couldn't come fast enough for the commanders who had become slightly antsy about what could happen. However, soon enough the lookout yelled that they saw land. As they were approaching the island though the two Baroque Works agents waved goodbye and jumped. "They're definitely up to something," Zoro muttered. When they reached the docks, there were people cheering for the pirates and welcoming them to the Grand Line. That instantly caught the suspicions of the commanders that were present. No island was that nice to pirates, only if it was an island you protected, and the Straw Hat Armada sure as hell didn't have control over this island. Nevertheless, when they stepped onto the docks they were greeted by the mayor who had really curly hair. "Welcome to Whiskey Peak. I'm Nigarapoy, the mayor of the village. We would like to welcome you to the Grand Line with a party," the man said with a smile. Inwardly the Straw Hats were rolling their eyes. This entire thing reeked of a trap and they weren't going to be dumb enough to actually fall for it. They just needed to act their part. "Hey, how long before the log pose finishes resetting?" Nami asked. "The log pose? Oh, I'll tell you then after the party," the man said with a smile. "All right then, let's party," Luffy yelled. As he walked past each of his crew that was with him he slyly tapped them with the Elder Wand, making them immune temporarily to the effects of sleeping drugs. Normally there weren't spells that did this to a person's body but rather what they drank. However, the spell had been an early attempt by Hannah Abbott, Neville's wife, to make healing spells more readily available. It was safe to say it worked very well. Each member felt it and smiled before heading into the bar to join the party. There at the party they were urged to drink and eat as much as they wanted. Of course, a wandless scan of the food proved that Luffy was right to put the charm on his sibling. Each and every single dish and drink was poisoned with a sleeping sedative. As the night moved on each of the crew members began to fake sleep. When all the villagers left the bar, they made their move by sneaking out the back window and positioning themselves on the roofs. "So how are they doing, Mr. 8? Mr. 9 asked. "They're currently on their way to hell," Mr. 8 said. Suddenly a tall woman in a nun outfit came into sight, taking off the habit. "My blue, they drink more than I drink tea. Anyways, do you think it's worth having a party for this crew? I mean they have a lot of ships but..." The woman started. "This Monday," Mr. 9 greeted. The woman nodded at him before she continued to speak. "I mean we can take care of their ship but we're running out of food since you two failed to get the whale meat," Miss Monday said. "Hey, what is that supposed to mean?" Miss Wednesday shouted. "Stop arguing you three. I investigated a lot about the captain and it turns out," Mr. 8 said before putting a piece of paper on the table. 60 million belly. The three shouted. Really, was it shocking that Luffy was worth a lot? Well, the crew guessed that there were times that Luffy didn't act serious. Like when he pranked the entire crew and started a prank war between, surprisingly, him, Nami, Jin, and Carmen. It ended up being Luffy and Nami versus Jin and Carmen. It was safe to say by the end of the prank war, Sirius, Remus, and James would have all outright declared Nami a marauder. That woman had devious prank ideas up the wazoo. Jin still refused to go anywhere near Nami when she had a can of whipped cream. which tended to be every morning because she liked pancakes and whipped cream with Mikan sauce. Shaking their minds away from the distraction, they saw that their targets continued to talk. So, don't underestimate them, Miss Monday, Mr. 8 said. I'm sorry, the woman said. The Baroque Works agents made their way towards the port. Hurry up and get everything from the ship and tie them up. The Marines want them alive so they could publicly execute them, Mr. 8 said. Mr. 8, sir, they're gone, one of the bounty hunters yelled. What? The man yelled. Shi Shi, I mean honestly, Luffy started, sitting at the edge of the roof swinging his legs. Yeah, did you honestly expect us to fall for that awful trap? Alvida continued, standing up on the roof. The pirates you've encountered in the past must have been real dumb, Nami said, rolling her eyes. Seriously, what kind of idiot would think that people would outright be nice to pirates if it wasn't a pirate-protected island? BB, but you ate the drugged food, Miss Monday yelled. Ah, well, our big brother here has something that makes us temporarily immune to such things, you know, Carmen said. Yeah, the only food that we'd willingly eat without safety checks from our captain is Carmen's or our other chefs, Jin said, managing to avoid saying Sanji's name. Plus, at least for me, a swordsman would never drink enough to inhibit themselves in a potentially dangerous situation, Zoro said. They then all suddenly jumped off the roofs and charged their enemies. 100 bounty hunters versus the 6 of us seems so unfair, Zoro said, as he cleaved through 5 of the bounty hunters. Yeah, I mean, clearly we're a lot better than you guys, Alvida said as she used her slipping powers to gain momentum and barrel through 10 of them with her mace. Though to be honest, if one of us were to fight them then they'd still lose, Nami said as she electrocuted 15 of them. Ah, well, it's actually not their fault. If they were trained better, then maybe, Carmen said, dancing and cleaving her way through 15 of her own that had the dumb idea to surround her. They don't seem trained at all, and that's twice as sad, Jin said, smashing into 10 of them. I think we should speed this up, Luffy said, knocking out 20 with his rubber abilities by making a windmill. About 3 minutes later all the bounty hunters were knocked out or dead. The 4 Baroque Works agents seemed entirely shocked at that. They beat all the millions, Miss Wednesday said in shock. That doesn't matter, get them, Mr. 8 said, his hair suddenly shooting guns at them. Guns? In your hair? What the hell, man? Zoro said as he charged forward to attack Mr. 8. However, Zoro was intercepted by Miss Monday, whose punch sent Zoro flying. Wow, she's strong, Alvida muttered before she charged forward with her mace. Each of her strikes with the mace were met with blocks of equal strength. That was of course until Alvida slipped in between the woman's legs and slammed her mace on the woman's head, knocking her out. That prompted Miss Wednesday to blow a whistle, causing a duck to come out of nowhere and for it to hold out its left wing. I didn't ask to hold your hand, damn it, Miss Wednesday shouted. Soon though she managed to get on the duck who was running towards them. Come on, let's show them your ultimate technique, Miss Wednesday yelled. Suddenly the duck sat on the ground, causing everyone to sweat drop. Who told you to sit? Was her next response. Mr. 9 was about to attack Nami from behind with a steel weapon. Nami, however, yawned and pointed her finger at the man while still facing away from him. Ask Chalk, she said lazily, causing a bolt of lightning to dart from her finger to the man, which was enhanced by the steel, thus frying him and knocking him unconscious. Nami then rolled her eyes at the man. Honestly, did you even read my wanted poster? What kind of idiot attacks someone who can use lightning with a conductor? Nami asked. Nami then faced Mr. 8, who had brought out a saxophone that he blew into. Killing sound, he yelled, shooting bullets out of the saxophone. Frist Frammer, she said, gesturing quickly. Immediately after she did so, the temperature dropped real fast to the point it started to snow and the bullets turned into ice and dropped to the ground, right at her feet. That was close. Too close, Nami said with a deep breath. We gotta work on your reflex timing, Nami, Luffy said as he charged at the man, swinging his rubbery fist at the man, sending him flying. About a few minutes later, though, there was a new voice. What a shame, you lost to these people, a snarky female voice said. They all turned to the sound of the voice and saw 2 people, a man and a woman. The woman was wearing a small sundress and wielding a parasol. The man had black dreads and was wearing a black coat that had the number 5 plastered in random places. Miss Valentine, Mr. 8 shouted. Mr. 5, was Miss Wednesday's response. Well, it was kind of obvious now that these newcomers were Baroque Works agents. Don't you feel ashamed of yourselves at all? Mr. 5 asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, that's the difference between weaklings like you and us, Miss Valentine sneered. Why are you here? Are you here to help us? Mr. 8 asked, causing Miss Valentine to laugh nasally. Luffy was starting to really dislike this woman. She reminded him of Bella, to a severely lesser degree. Help you? Why would we help you? Miss Valentine said. Yeah, do you really think we came to the Grand Line just to help you? Mr. 5 asked. Then what are you here for? Mr. 9, who just woke up, asked. It's simple, we're here for the highest offense, Miss Valentine said. Yes, Mr. 0 said someone here knows his secret but doesn't know what exactly they know. Mr. 5 said. In the background, the six were looking at each other before Nami whispered to Luffy, "Why are we letting them monologue?" She whispered, "Because monologuing usually presents information." Luffy said, shushing her, "Really, villains had a sad tendency to monologue everything about their plan. However, the principle of our organization is everything remains a secret. None of us are to know each other's past or identity." Mr. 5 said, "So what did we do? We investigated, and lo and behold we found out that there are certain people from Alabasta in our organization." Miss Wednesday said. Mr. 9 started panicking and saying it wasn't him, saying his crown was fake, but the other two ignored him, clearly already knowing that. "These two are the people who disappeared from Alabasta," Mr. 5 said. Suddenly, Mr. 8 attacked Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine, shooting bullets at them. But as soon as they touched Mr. 5, they exploded and Miss Valentine went soaring into the air with her parasol. "That's not going to work at all," Miss Valentine said, before she suddenly started descending fast, slamming into Miss Wednesday and making her go flying. "Yes, the traitors are Igaram, the captain of the Alabastan Royal Guard," Mr. 5 said, looking at Mr. 8. "And the missing princess of Alabasta, Princess Nefeltari Vivi," Miss Valentine said. Suddenly Mr. 9 was bowing to the now revealed Vivi, making everyone their sweat drop. "Miss Wednesday's a princess," he said, sounding overjoyed. "Stop doing weird things, Mr. 9. Vivi yelled, clearly used to this. "Boss has ordered us to kill you both," Mr. 5 said. Vivi started to swing her weapon, seeming angry that she was being underestimated. However, what she didn't expect was Mr. 9 to jump in front of her. "I have no clue what's going on, but because of my long friendship with you, Miss Wednesday, please escape from here," he said before running for Mr. 9. "No," she yelled. Suddenly Mr. 5 seemed to flick a booger of all things at Mr. 9. Everyone was surprised when it suddenly exploded. Then Vivi attempted to get on her duck, Karu, and run away. As that was happening, Mr. 8, who was on the ground, tried to get their attention. Luffy asked, noticing the man. "I beg of you, please. Those two are devil fruit users. The princess cannot defeat them on her own. Please save the princess. Please take her to the country of Alabasta and help save her country," Mr. 8 said, causing everyone but Luffy to groan. He said the words save and country. Zoro said with a facepalm. "Of course we'll help," Luffy said cheerfully. "And there we go, on a new adventure to save a country. What's next? The world," Nami muttered. With that they took off after the two. Soon enough they reached Vivi, who ended up getting cornered. "You have nowhere to," Mr. 5 started before he was hit by a Gomu Gomu pistol, sending him flying into a building, shocking Miss Valentine. "Hello, we are here to save a princess. Please step away from her or Nami here may have to electrocute you," Luffy said, with Nami creating sparks at her fingers for dramatic effect. "You have to be kidding me. We're office agents of Baroque Works. We can't be defeated this easily," the woman shouted. "I'm sorry, but it doesn't help that you rely too much on your devil fruit powers and have no defense whatsoever," Luffy said, waving her off. "I'll show you no defense," she yelled as she floated in the air and then started plummeting downward at them. "Alvida, baseball time," Luffy said with a grin. Aye, Captain," she said with her own grin as she readied herself. Alvida started to spin on the spot with her mace, swinging it faster and faster. Suddenly she swung the mace at Miss Valentine, who didn't expect it at all when she suddenly was flung into the wall. "That was 500 kilos. How the hell did you knock away that much weight?" the woman yelled. Alvida was about to say something, but Nami stopped her before saying something of her own. "Physics, dear, you'd know that if you actually read, something you clearly didn't do," Nami said, pissing the woman off even further. Mr. 5 had finally come out of the hole that he made and was looking ready to fight again when something slammed into both of them, knocking them both out. The source of said something was Jin, spinning around and then launching his weapons at them, who was now whistling innocently. "What? I wanted it over with," Jin said. "Why did you save me?" Vivi asked. "Well, Igaram, I think that's his name, asked us too," Luffy said with a smile. "And Cap here has a people-saving thing, so he can't resist helping a person in need," Alvida said. "That too? Hey, wait. I don't have a people-saving thing," Luffy yelled. Why did everyone say that? Even when he was Harry, people said that. Hell, Hermione and Ron had made it a point to mention it to him every other day back then. Even Ace had said it at one point, and he was the reckless one. "Luffy, admit it. You met a lot of us by saving us one way or another," Nami said. "Ugh, fine," Luffy said with a pout. He didn't have a saving people thing. Vivi then led them into a building where she sat down and began to explain her situation to them. The country of Alabasta used to be a wonderful, peaceful country. In fact, it was the most peaceful country in all of the Grand Line. However, about 2 to 3 years ago a civil war started and I found out that our citizens were being influenced by these people. Vivi started. "So you decided to join?" Jin asked. "Yeah, since we didn't know much we couldn't do anything, so I asked Igaram to join me in going undercover. It was there that we learned that the main purpose was to build a dream country," she said with a mournful sigh. "But it was far from the truth, wasn't it?" Luffy said, thinking about the 20 Kingdoms' reasons for attacking magicals. Yes, the leader of Baroque Works' true goal is to conquer Alabasta. If I can't get back home and warn everyone, then it'll be too late, she said with a sigh. So who's the boss? Luffy asked, causing Vivi to panic. You can't know. It'll put you in danger, she shouted. We don't mind. We're usually in danger every other week, Nami said, waving it off. Really? But if I were to tell you, you'd be put on the hit list, she said, still trying to warn them off. We still don't mind. We planned for it, Luffy said, thinking of Usopp's idea. All right, the name of the leader is Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, Vivi said. Suddenly they saw a bird and an otter-like creature fly away, causing Vivi to sigh. Those were the unluckies. They're scouts and messengers for Mr. Zero, Vivi said. Don't worry, it's completely fine, Zoro said, reassuring her. Don't worry, Igaram said, suddenly appearing, out of breath. When they took a second look at him, they saw that he was in an outfit that matched Vivi's Miss Wednesday outfit. What's with that outfit? Luffy asked. If the unluckies have seen you, that means Crocodile will send more of the higher-ranking members after you. Thankfully, the Mr. Five Pair is still unconscious. Princess, please give me the eternal pose to Alabasta. I will let you guys escape and meet up with you at Alabasta. That means you should take the regular route, which should take 4 to 5 days, Igaram said. Oh, okay, Vivi said, handing Igaram a log pose similar to the one the Straw Hats had found long ago in Arlong Park. The only difference, however, between this one and the one that they found at Arlong Park was that in bold letters was the word Alabasta. From there they departed to the port where they said their goodbyes. Igaram turned to Luffy and bowed. I thank you for accepting my request. Please take care of the princess for me. I will see you in Alabasta, the man said, setting sail afterwards. Everyone was shocked, however, when the ship suddenly exploded in a sea of flames. Igaram, Vivi screamed, Nami grabbing her and running with her to the ship, everyone following. Don't worry, we'll get you to Alabasta, Nami said. Soon enough they were on the ship, but Vivi was panicking because she couldn't find Karu at all. She has to use the whistle to call him, Nami said. Oh, you mean this duck? He was here before all of us, Zoro asked, pointing at the duck sitting right next to him. What the hell, Karu? You were already here, Vivi shouted. They quickly set sail, but soon after they heard a female voice coming from the railing. I'm so glad I found you. Please watch out for those rocks. I wouldn't wish for you guys to crash, the voice said. They turned and saw it was a black-haired woman wearing a cowboy hat and outfit. Vivi seemed utterly shocked to see the woman. These are some really good ships. So, I just met Mr. 8 over there, Miss Wednesday, the woman said with a smile. What are you doing here, Miss All Sunday? Did you kill Igaram? Vivi shouted. Miss All Sunday? Who's her partner? Nami asked. She's Mr. Zero's partner and the only one who's allowed to know his true identity. I had followed her to learn his identity, Vivi said. Actually, I let you follow me, Miss All Sunday said. I know that. I'm betting you're the one who let the boss know about me too, Vivi said. Yup, I let you know Mr. Zero's true name because I felt you deserved a reward. However, becoming Baroque Works' enemy is a very bad idea. Of course, deciding to help the princess that became their enemy is bad too. The worst, however, is your next idea, Little Garden, the woman said. Why is that bad? Luffy asked. Well, let's just say the magnetic pull of the island is much different than most islands on the Grand Line. So, I have something for you, Miss All Sunday said, throwing Luffy an eternal log pose. That log pose leads to an island who doesn't have that much of a pull to begin with. In fact, it's unique to the point that it only takes an hour for the normal log pose to reset, she said. Luffy looked at it for a second before shaking his head. Even if your offer is genuine, I can't accept. I personally feel as if Little Garden has something that we need, Luffy said. I like decisive people like you. Well, let's see where you go from here, the woman said before she hopped off the ship and onto a turtle that swam away. Luffy then had Nami set course for Little Garden while he pulled Vivi off to the side. Do you want to know whether Igaram's really dead or not? Luffy asked. How can you do that? She asked. One of my abilities gives me access to an item that lets me pull a spirit from the afterlife. If they aren't dead, then they won't appear, Luffy said. Can you? Vivi asked hesitantly. Luffy let the resurrection stone appear in his hand and spun it 3 times. When nothing happened, Luffy let out a sigh of relief. Is that good? Vivi asked. Yeah, nothing happened. It means that somewhere Igaram is still alive, Luffy said. Suddenly Vivi hugged Luffy, repeating the words thank you over and over again. No problem, you're with us now, so you're part of the family. Whether you leave us at the end of this journey or not doesn't matter, you'll still be family, Luffy said with a smile. Vivi followed by smiling back, feeling a warm feeling inside that, much later, she would realize what it had meant. She had found a wonderful family. Vivi's insertion into the lives of the Straw Hats was rather smooth, to be completely honest. Everyone on the crew rather liked her instantly, and it didn't help that Sanji swooned over her as well. Of course, because she was being considered part of the crew, she was also thrown into the training sessions with everyone. At first she complained, not because she didn't like training, but rather because Luffy's methods were rather extreme. But that came from the fact that said training came from someone like Garp. After a while though, Vivi started to enjoy the training. She said that it helped distract her from the stress of the rebellion. It also helped that Luffy had demanded that she get a new weapon and she absolutely loved it. The weapon he had personally picked for her were a pair of chakrams that Luffy had enchanted to return to her no matter what. They took the whole day to learn, but it was worth it in her mind. A few days later though, Nami had a question for Vivi. What exactly did Igaram mean by regular route that it'd take only 4 days? She asked. Oh, I think Igaram had forgotten that not all log poses point to the same path usually. The islands around Alabasta tend to rotate, and I guess this time around it's Little Garden. Vivi said. You don't seem worried though. Nami said. Well, I am, but I understand worrying isn't going to get us there faster. Vivi said. That's a mature lookout on things. Nami said. Well, going undercover forced me to mature, I guess. As a mercenary, you have to kill your targets or Mr. Zero would get mad, so I just soldiered through it. Vivi said. I guess I understand. I was the same way when I was part of Arlong's crew. Nami said, causing Vivi to raise an eyebrow. So you weren't part of Luffy's crew to begin with? Vivi asked. Nope, in fact I only happened by him by accident. I was stealing a map from a pirate when he found me and ended up saving me later from Arlong, who held my village hostage. Nami said. Wow, he must be a great guy, able to accept all kinds of people. Vivi said, remembering the few fishmen she saw. Yup, he's great. Though sometimes it feels as if he's holding the world on his shoulders even though there's no reason he should. Well, he said he'd tell us later in the Grand Line. Nami mused. Tell you what? Vivi asked. Nothing much, just some secrets he's been keeping. He promised to tell us later. Nami said. They decided then to just lay on the grass the rest of the day. About 2 days later they managed to finally reach Little Garden. However, seeing it was a complete shock, for the place wasn't little at all. Little Garden was actually rather large, as it had giant trees, dinosaurs, and what seemed to be 2 giant sea king skulls. With a sigh, Nami began directing the ship into the river leading into the island so they could at least not be out in the open while they wait for the log pose to reset. When they got to a safe position, Luffy got an idea. Hey, we should explore, Luffy said, Vivi nodding. Yeah, I wonder what we can find around here. I mean, this island's been preserved in prehistoric time. Vivi said. Well, I think I want to hunt some of the dinosaurs here, Zoro said, sparking Sanji's attention. How about you me have a competition, Marimo? Let's see who can get the most dinosaur meat, Sanji said, egging Zoro on. You're on, shitty cook, Zoro roared. So, who's going with who? And don't forget that we need people to stay on the ships, Carmen said. Well, I'm staying on the ship this time. I want to relax rather than end up in a fight again, Nami said. Me and Jin Bro need to run our people through a few drills, so we'll stay as well, Alvida said. I guess I'll head with Vivi and Big Brother. I really want to look for some plants here to experiment with, Kaya said. I'll go with Zoro and Sanji to make sure they don't get lost or kill each other, Carmen said, heading in to change her outfit into something more forest-worthy. I'll stay on deck with Nami. I have some things that I'm working on for my guns and I want to get them done before we reach Alabasta, Usopp said. Alright then, let's split up, Luffy said, taking Vivi and Kaya in one direction while Sanji, Zoro, and Carmen went in another. Luffy's group's journey into the forest started out as interesting for all 3 of them. Despite Kaya being the only one wanting to look for plants, they all decided to help. Vivi because she wanted to assist Kaya, and Luffy because he was interested in what each plant could do as well. It was when Luffy heard 3 voices arguing that he turned around and looked down. Are you fucking kidding me? Luffy swore, getting the other 2's attention. Sitting on the floor was a 3-headed orange snake about 6 feet long. Kaya and Vivi were staring at it in fear, having never seen the type of snake before. That quickly passed as they heard Luffy muttering to himself. Of course you are still a parcel myth. Why wouldn't you be one? He muttered to himself. Luffy then sank to his knees, causing the 2 to freak out, that is until Luffy started hissing at the snake. Hey there, why are you 3 arguing? Luffy hissed, scaring the living daylights out of the snake. A speaker, but we haven't seen one in a year. Not at all. The 3 heads hissed. You've seen a speaker before? Luffy asked. The heads looked at each other before seemingly selecting one head as a speaker, which so happened to be the middle one. Yes, speaker, sir. These 3 human ladies visit us every so often, although we're not entirely sure that 2 of them are human. The snake hissed. What makes you think that? Luffy asked, causing the one on the left to speak up. Well, they can turn into snakes. One of them turned into an anaconda and the other turned into a king cobra. The third one, well, she just seemed to turn random animals into stone and talk about how beautiful she was. The snake said. That was interesting. He'd never heard of these 3 women before, although he was pretty sure that the women were devil fruit users. He'd keep an eye out for the women. They're humans, of course. There are these things called devil fruits, which are weird-looking fruits that grant humans special powers. Luffy said. Strange-looking fruit. We think we know what you're talking about, the runespur said before slithering away. Luffy, why can you talk to snakes and what was that? Kaya asked. Shi Shi, it's part of my abilities. I honestly didn't expect to have it, as you can clearly tell. As for what that was a runespur, a magical animal with sentience. Luffy said. Magical animal? Kaya asked, suddenly interested. Yeah, each head of a runespur fulfills a purpose. The left head is the planner and decides what it's to do next. The middle is the dreamer where it thinks of things it can do. And the right is the critic who judges what the other two do to make sure they stay alive. Sadly though, most runespurs don't live long because the middle and left heads usually kill the right out of irritation. Though that one seems to be rather old. Luffy mused. Suddenly though the snake came out with something wrapped in its tail that caused the three to gasp. In its tail was a weird blue-looking fruit that had yellow dragons wrapped around the fruit and seemed to be glowing red. Gee, that's a devil fruit, Kaya shouted, having remembered seeing Sanji's fruit Luffy had given him. It's not just any devil fruit, it's a mythical Zoan fruit, Luffy said. How can you tell that? Vivi asked. Well, for one, the dragons that wrap around the fruit. Mythical Zoan fruits are generally rather obvious in what power they give you. Also, it's glowing. Only mythical Zoan fruits glow, Luffy said. He then gently grabbed the fruit from the snake and smiled at it. Thank you for the fruit. What's your name? Luffy asked. We don't have individual names if that's what you're asking. But we were named Tiger by the three women. The left head said. Alright then Tiger, I'll promise to visit again one day and maybe bring those women. Luffy said. That'd be great. It was nice seeing you, Speaker. Keep an eye out for the two giants. The snake said as it slithered away. It just told me to keep an eye out for two giants, Luffy said. Quickly after that the trees parted to reveal, lo and behold, a giant. Ooh, I thought I heard voices. My name's Dory, the giant said with a smile. Nice to meet you, Dory. Luffy, Kaya and Vivi said together. For a second thought though that it was those three sisters. They usually visit here every year to visit the snakes here. Dory said. Oh no, that hissing was me, Luffy said, sheepishly rubbing the back of his head. Oh, that's cool. You can speak to snakes like them. Come, you must join me back at my camp, Dory said. Soon enough they reached Dory's camp where he was roasting a giant piece of dinosaur meat. So Dory, who are the three women who visit here? Luffy asked. Well, I never caught their name as they're not that fond of men, but they were civil while they were here. All I really know is that their ship is pulled by a pair of sea kings, Dory said. Oh well, so what are you doing here on this island? Luffy asked, unaware that currently Nami and Usopp were having this conversation with a different giant. Well, I'm a warrior from Elbaf and have been fighting my rival for the past 100 years, Dory said. 100 years? That's a long time, Vivi said. To humans maybe, but we giants live for 300 years, so it's not that long to us. As of yet I have to win. We've tied in every single battle, Dory said. Suddenly the volcano on the island exploded, causing Dory to get up. Well, it's time for our fight, Dory said, heading north, the Straw Hats following. When they reached their destination they saw Nami and Usopp sitting over by another giant who was just standing up. Usopp, Nami, what are you guys doing here? Kaya asked. Oh, well this giant, his name is Buggy by the way, found us and invited us to his place. He talked about how he was a warrior from Elbaf and was currently in a 100-year battle with his rival. Nami said. Yeah, he's inspired me to be even better at my skills, Usopp said. Soon after that the two giants picked up their weapons and swung them at each other. What they did not seem to expect was the sudden explosion coming from both of the weapons, throwing the giants back and leaving the weapons in brittle condition. Laughing and walking out of the forest were four people. Luffy and Nami recognized two of them as Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine. The other two Vivi recognized. Mr. 3, Miss Goldenweek. I see you've come, Vivi said. Miss Wednesday, or should I say Princess Vivi. It's nice to see you. We're just here to collect the bounties on all your heads, Mr. 3 said with a laugh. He however sweat dropped when he saw what Miss Goldenweek was doing. She was currently sitting on a picnic blanket drinking tea. Why aren't you joining us? He asked, exasperated. Because they're not weak-willed. My skills won't work on them, she said lazily. Luffy walked over to the girl and sat down next to her. What kinds of tea do you have? Luffy asked, making everyone but his crew faceplant and Miss Goldenweek look as if it was her birthday. Well, I have Earl Grey, some green tea, and this black tea, she said, gesturing to her various boxes of tea. Have you ever had oolong tea? Luffy asked, pulling a box out of the pouch that he always wore. Well, actually that each commander had. Miss Goldenweek's eyes shone as if there were stars in her eyes as she gladly accepted the box and began making the tea. Mr. 5 however got mad and tried to attack her and Luffy by flicking a booger at them, causing her to sigh. Light blue is the color of protection, she said as a shield shimmered into place, protecting them from the explosion. When the smoke cleared it was revealed that the picnic area was surrounded by a light blue circle. That's real neat. How do you do that? Luffy asked. I'm a realist painter. Somehow the colors I paint can influence the environment or what people do, she said, finally finishing the tea and serving it. That's very nice. You're good at making tea, Luffy commented, sipping the tea and sighing in satisfaction. Luffy, when he acquired Harry's memories, ended up acquiring the British man's love for tea. So with him being here and having tea that seemed to be made by someone who knew just how to make it was heaven. Curious. Why aren't you helping your friends? Better yet, why aren't my, not sure if I can call them that, friends attacking? She said. Well, to the first one it's because I know my friends can handle themselves on their own. I believe in them. As for the second, well, maybe your friends are having a brain fart, Luffy said, causing the little girl to giggle. That actually prompted the 3 remaining Baroque Works agents to attack the others since they clearly couldn't attack Luffy or Miss Goldenweek. Mr. 3 seemed to create a giant spinning candle on top of the giant, Buggy, with Usopp, Nami, and Vivi on it. Your orange-haired friend doesn't seem amused, Miss Goldenweek said. That's cause Mr. 3 clearly hasn't read Nami's wanted posted. Question, does the barrier stop rain? Luffy asked. Yeah, it should. Why? She asked. Luffy pointed up and Miss Goldenweek looked in awe as a rain cloud was rapidly forming. Suddenly it started to downpour, and just as the girl said, the barrier popped into place when the rain started getting close to the 2. Mr. 3 seemed to be panicking as the rain caused the candles to fizzle out and become soggy and start falling apart, freeing the 3. Seriously, does anyone read the wanted posters nowadays? Nami yelled before running up to Mr. 3 and slamming her bow staff on his head, knocking him out. She, however, had to quickly jump back before Mr. 5 could cause an explosion by touching her. Elsewhere, Miss Valentine was trying to attack Usopp by sitting on him. He, however, quickly whipped out his shotgun. You would shoot a woman? Miss Valentine asked, shocked. Who said this would kill you? Usopp said, closing his eyes and firing off his new pepper spray bomb. He felt the liquid hit his face and Miss Valentine screams and quickly rolled away, then wiped the spray off his face with a cloth. My eyes. What did you do to my eyes? She screamed. It's my brand new pepper spray bomb. Guaranteed to keep perverts and women trying to kill you away from you, Usopp said, as if he was showing off a brand new product. Luffy heard Kaya giggling right by them and saw that she was having tea as well with them. When did you get here? Luffy asked. She got here after Mr. 5 got angry, Miss Goldenweek said. Well, it looks like there's one left. Luffy mused. Said person left. Aka Mr. 5 was throwing explosive boogers at Nami and Usopp, who were dodging them left and right. Usopp was also shooting explosives at the man, but it wasn't working for obvious reason. You think explosions are going to hurt me? I'm immune to them thanks to my devil fruit, the man yelled, in clear arrogance. Yeah, well, take this. Explosive star shot, Usopp yelled, shooting his shotgun at Mr. 5, a projectile flying at the man who promptly ate the object. By the way, I lied. That was my Tabasco hellshot, Usopp said with a smile. Instantly the man began screaming in pain as his insides began to burn from the intense heat of the hot sauce. He ended up slamming his head into a tree and knocking himself out. Usopp and Nami suddenly heard clapping and turned to the source. They saw Kaya, Miss Goldenweek, and Luffy all clapping for them, causing them to blush. See, told you I had faith in them, Luffy said. You were right. By the way, what are you going to do with me? The girl asked, starting to pack up the teacups and pot. How can we keep her big brother? Kaya squealed. Guess. Actually, that'd be perfect. We do need an artist for the ship. No offense, Usopp, but your skills only work for Jolly Rogers, Luffy said. It's true, Usopp said. Wait, you're inviting me to join your crew? She asked, confused. We're inviting you to join our family. Our crew is one big family after all, Luffy said. But what about my name? I don't even know what my old name was. I've been in Baroque Works for that long. I mean, I've liked the name Goldenweek, the girl said. How about this? Miss Goldie and Week. First name Goldie, second name Week. That way you get to keep the name, Luffy said with a smile. The girl's eyes brightened up again and she hugged Luffy. So, does that mean I call you Big Brother? She asked. Well, if you want. You'll be a leader of your own group, a group of artists, so any of the crew members not a vice commander or commander will call you Big Sis, Luffy said. Wait, I can teach people my art. Does that mean I can teach them how I fight? She asked, really interested. If you want. Why? He asked. Because I've always wanted more people who could do what I do. I mean, I do think it's doable, she said with a smile. All right then, I also might have a gift for you when we get back to the ship, he said, smiling when he saw her eyes light up again. Suddenly though, Carmen, Sanji, and Zoro came tumbling through the trees with Zoro dragging a giant sled box filled to the brim with dinosaur meat. Sanji also seemed to have something in his hands. So we had an eventful evening. What about you? Oh, I see you fought some Baroque Works agents and met giants, Carmen asked. Yes, on both parts, Luffy said. Hey, meet your new sister, the commander of the artist division, Miss Goldie and Week, Kaya said cheerfully. Goldie was very bashful when they all greeted her with smiles and hugs, blushing the entire time. So what happened to you guys? Usopp asked. Well, first these two idiots went rampaging through the entire forest, killing every dinosaur they could find without any regards to how they'd carry it all. Carmen huffed, glaring at the two who gave sheepish laughs and winces. So I beat them up and forced them to think of an idea. Hence the sled box. Then Sanji manages to find a weird wax house in the middle of nowhere with a Den Den Mushi in it. He wouldn't believe who called. Carmen said, "Mr. Zero?" Goldie asked, shocking Carmen. "Yes. Oh wait, you were probably the one supposed to receive the call." Well, anyways, Sanji answers it, and it turns out that Crocodile is calling back all the agents to Alabasta for the final stages of the plan. He then asks if we've been killed, and Sanji answers yes, having been impersonating Mr. 3 here during the whole conversation. Carmen said, "Nice on the spot thinking, Sanji." Nami said, instantly regretting it the next second. "Thank you, my lovely Nami Swan," he shouted. Anyways, Crocodile tells him that the Unluckies were on the way to deliver an eternal log pose to Alabasta. Lo and behold, they arrive and we beat them up and get the log pose. Carmen said, having Sanji presenting the log pose with the word Alabasta written on it. "That's great. We can actually get there a bit faster now, as there would be 2 more islands after this," Vivi said. Suddenly they heard a booming voice that turned out to be coming from one of the giants. "Dory, Luffy, remember, it's a good thing you found that then," Dory said, prompting the other giant to respond, seeing as both of them were up now. "Yeah, it takes a year for the normal log pose to reset on this island. This way you can get to that place and it'll reset there much faster," Buggy said. "That's great." Nami cheered. The 2 giants thanked them for saving them, and as thanks they killed the giant goldfish that would have ate them when they attempted to leave, using the last bit of strength their weapons had. The giants then waved goodbye to them as they set off. The commanders were all in the meeting room, wondering what this meeting was for, having already met their new sister. Luffy, however, walked forward and put down the devil fruit box. When he opened it, they saw that there were 2 in there. Kaya and Vivi explained how Luffy got the second. The crew members were shocked but not afraid. Luffy, however, pulled out the Nuru No Mi and gave it to Goldie. "Here you go, Goldie. A fruit perfect for you. The Nuru No Mi, or the paint fruit. It's a Loja-type fruit that allows you to turn into and control paint," Luffy said. Goldie instantly grabbed it with stars in her eyes and willingly ate it, showing how much she trusted Luffy. She grimaced at the taste before speaking. "I don't feel any," she started before she collapsed. Everyone started panicking, but Kaya, the doctor of the ship, quickly ran over to her and began examining her. "She's running a fever." Was she already a devil fruit user? Kaya said, "No, it can't be that. The result of a person eating 2 devil fruits is much more violent. She'd be in minutes from burning inside out rather than running a fever." Luffy said, "I'll have to research her condition," Kaya quickly said to herself. The next day Kaya had found out what it was. Goldie was infected with a deadly disease that had been extinct for a long time. Kaya had no clue how to cure it, so she gave a doctor's order. They had to find another doctor. Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.